Chapter 785. The chaotic fight at the Zhou residence ended with Yushu being captured. The Jinwu guards and the Yu family's guards were all injured. Fortunately, their injuries weren't serious and they only suffered superficial wounds. The ground was covered in blood and it looked a bit frightening. A good wedding event brought about a bloody disaster. The bride ran away and the groom was so scared that he peed his pants. The guests who came to drink the wedding wine were all frightened. When the scene calmed down, they hurriedly took their leave, afraid that they would fight again and hurt the innocent. Zhou Yeta insisted that Yushu abused her power and allowed slaves to commit murder. He arrested her and the dozen people she brought and threw them into the Ministry of Justice's prison. He personally escorted them there and then turned around to go to the Prime Minister's residence. As soon as he saw Xue Lingnan, he complained. Prime Minister only said that someone would come to kidnap the bride today and wanted me to arrest them. Why didn't you tell me who was the one who started the trouble? That crazy girl is too daring. She actually brought people to fight with my Jinwu guards. Not only did she injure many of my subordinates, but I also lost all my face. Xue Lingnan was trimming a beautiful orchid and didn't know where to start with the scissors in his hands. He didn't turn his head and said, "I know, you can go back." Zhou Yeta hesitated. Jinshuan was kidnapped. I have already sent people to search all over the capital. If we find her, Xue Lingnan cut the flower with a snap and a beautiful orchid fell at his feet. No need to trouble yourself. Didn't you arrest her? Interrogate her properly and make her speak. Zhou Yeta felt that he was asking for trouble. He didn't even care about his own granddaughter, let alone his daughter-in-law. You mean you want to use torture on her? That's not very good. After all, she is an official of the Celestial Commissioner. No matter how big a mistake she makes, it's not the Ministry of Justice's turn to punish her. How will we explain when the minister investigates? The former emperor abolished the position of Minister of the Six Ministries and appointed two new Prime Ministers. Prime Minister Yin controlled the Ministry of Civil Affairs, Ministry of Revenue and Ministry of Works. The Ministry of Justice and Ministry of War followed Prime Minister Xue's lead. The Celestial Commissioner was Zhu Muzhao's word. Xue Lingnan put down the scissors and turned around. The affairs of the Ministry of Justice are not for the Celestial Commissioner to meddle in. Zhu Muzhao's hand has stretched too far. This time, I want to punish the chicken to warn the monkey. If you are afraid, you don't have to worry about it anymore. Go back and train your Jinwu guards well. If a motley crew can make you so miserable, how can you take on great responsibilities in the future? Zhou Yeta's face turned red, but he had no words to refute. In the end, he could only leave resentfully. It was already summer in the 5th month of the lunar calendar. The wind during the day was hot, and there was only a slight coolness after the sun set. However, the inside of the prison cell was a different world. During the day it was like staying in a steamer with sweat flowing out freely. At night, it became gloomy and cold, making people stiff. The prison of the Ministry of Justice had not been renovated for 20 years. Usually it was not cleaned diligently. Even with the skylight open for ventilation, there was still a sour and rotten smell. Yushu was brought here during the day and locked up alone in a cell, separated from her guards and servants. The cell was surrounded by 3 stone walls and one by a fence. Yushu leaned against the wall and sat on a pile of hay. She was still wearing the grayish-blue robe that she had casually put on in the morning, but her hair was messily draped over her shoulders. Her hairpin had fallen off when she was escorted by the Jinwu guards. As the sun set, the entire cell slowly fell into darkness. A gust of cold wind poured in from the skylight above her, waking her up from her sleep. When she opened her eyes, she saw someone holding a bright lantern outside the fence. She did not know when he had stood there. She squinted her eyes and raised her head to see the other person's face. Unsurprisingly, she revealed a cold smile. I was wondering who wanted to deal with me. It turns out to be you. Xue Lingnan did not respond. Turning his head, he had the jailer open the cell door and carry her out. Taking her to the torture room at the end of the corridor, he tied her hands and feet to the rack. From beginning to end, Yushu did not resist. She knew that the Ministry of Justice was Xue Lingnan's territory. Even if she screamed her lungs out, no one would come to save her. She might as well save her energy and think about how to survive. The Crown Prince had held her back in Huajin Garden. Right now, no one could save her from the hands of Xue Lingnan. Xue Lingnan sat on a chair 10 feet away from the rack. The jailer with a knife scar on the left side of his face lit the torches on the 2 walls and added charcoal to the brazier on the tripod. Next to him was a row of torture instruments with all kinds of whips, hooks, knives and cudgels hanging from them. The stone bricks under the rack had been soaked in blood all year round and had a rotten reddish-brown color. Yu Shu coldly watched the scar-faced man pick and choose from the torture instruments. He picked up a small iron hammer that was half a foot long. The head of the hammer was small and nimble. It didn't seem to have any killing power. He bent down and grabbed a handful of iron nails from a box on the ground. The scar-faced man walked to her side and pinched the bones in her arm. He grinned at her and introduced the torture instruments in his hands to her in a low voice. This is called the bone-breaking hammer. It's specially used to deal with those prisoners with hard bones. Like your small bones, it only takes a few light knocks to break them. Yu Shu did not look at the weapon in his hands. She turned her head and asked Shui Lingnan, "If I didn't kidnap the bride today, would you really have married Jinshuan to the Zhou family?" At this point there was nothing she couldn't understand. The official marriage document between the Shui family and the Zhou family was fake. If Shui Lingnan only wanted to marry into the Zhou family, he should have secretly held the marriage 2 days before the ancestral worship ceremony. He shouldn't have waited until she returned to the capital and then had someone instigate Feng Xiaomiao to find her. Just like this, he didn't even show his face and let her walk into the trap. As for why Shui Lingnan wanted to catch her, it was because he knew that she was the one who broke his life. He either wanted to kill her or dig out some secrets from her mouth. Marriage is a big matter, how can it be a child's play? Shui Lingnan expressionlessly looked at her. His attitude was very clear. He had already planned to give up a useless granddaughter to win over Zhou Yeta. He wouldn't change his mind just because of whether or not Yu Shu kidnapped the bride. Even a vicious tiger doesn't eat its cubs. You really make me look at you in a new light. Yu Shu ridiculed him, but she didn't regret it. Even if she could do it again, even if she knew it was a trap, she would still choose to kidnap the bride. Because she didn't want to see Shui Rui's disappointed appearance when she reunited with him one day. Shui Lingnan shook his head. You still want to use your tongue to win? This old man said last time that it would be easy to deal with you. You really won't shed tears until you see the coffin. A young, first teach her to be obedient. The scar-faced man put a handful of nails in his mouth and held a 2-inch long nail in his hand. He rubbed it against her sleeve and aimed the nail at her arm. First, he used the hammer to knock it twice, and then he suddenly slammed it down with all his might. Yu Shu suddenly twitched and opened her 5 fingers. She looked at the nail halfway into her flesh and into her bone. Blood flowed out and instantly dyed her sleeve red. Her mind went blank for a moment and the sudden pain made her suck in a breath of cold air. She clenched her teeth and didn't make a sound. The scarred man did the same thing and hit 3 nails into her left arm. Her forehead was covered in sweat and she was trembling from head to toe. Just as the scarred man spat out the 4th nail, Shui Lingnan called for him to stop. His cold gaze rested on her pale face as he slowly said, "Answer whatever this old man asks. If you answer a question incorrectly, there will be another nail in your body." Yu Shu stiffly raised her head, a bitter smile on her lips. She said in a trembling voice, "Then can you first tell me one thing? The 2 murders in Taisher Library, the 2 female students who died, did you send people to kill them?" Shui Lingnan was silent for a moment and said, "You are talking about Zhan Shuiyuan and Chao Yuling." Yu Shu closed her eyes. "It really was you." This way Shui Rui's guess about the murderer was confirmed. As long as Emperor Zhao Qing died and the crown prince ascended the throne, the position of the celestial commissioner would be replaced. At that time, wouldn't the one who would monopolize power in the court be Shui Lingnan, who had helped Lu Tan ascend the throne? Shui Rui said that whoever monopolized power was the traitor who tried to kill the life breaker and stop the celestial commissioner from opening the book of Mystery Woman's 6 rens. The 2 of them died unjustly. Shui Lingnan had been seen through by her, so he no longer hid it. This old man originally wanted to kill the life breaker. So, when Jing Chen was plotted against on the way to the capital, it was also you who sent people to do it. It was Governor Su, right? The more Yu Shu thought about it, the more she understood. The pain made her thinking abnormally quick. You already knew that Shui Rui's biological father was Yun Hua. When Shui Zhao brought back a child from the south, he couldn't hide it from you. Later, Shui Rui's father died unexpectedly. You investigated that it was the Celestial Commissioner who killed him, but you endured it because you knew that you couldn't fight against the Celestial Commissioner alone, and you couldn't fight against the Celestial Commissioner who was tied to the Emperor. So, you endured for more than 10 years until Jing Chen, the calamity of Mystery Woman's 6 rens, was born. Although the secret of the Book of Mystery Woman's 6 rens could only be known by the Emperors and the Celestial Commissioner, there was no such thing as an impenetrable wall in the world. After 200 years, there would always be people who explored these secrets. Shui Lingnan was a successful example. He knew very well that the inseparable relationship between the Emperor and the Celestial Commissioner was built on the Book of Mystery Woman's 6 Wrens. Only when the Celestial Commissioner lost his omniscient ability, the Imperial power could get rid of the puppet of the Celestial Commissioner. But there were also things he didn't know. For example, the existence of the calamity of Mystery Woman and the Lifebreaker was to nurture the Destiny Tie Bone. Without the Destiny Tie Bone, the Celestial Commissioner couldn't open the Book of Mystery Woman's 6 Wrens. But I don't understand. Why didn't you just get someone to kill Jing Chen and end it once and for all? Instead, you used the tricks of the pugilistic world to make him lose his memory. You didn't kill him because you were soft-hearted. That means that you can still make use of him. Let me think. I got it. Jing Chen and Shui Rui have one thing in common. They are both Yun Hua's biological sons. You kept Jing Chen alive just like how you raised Shui Rui. It was all to lure Yun Hua to show up. Am I right? You talk too much nonsense. Shui Lingnan interrupted her talking to herself and said coldly, "Let me ask you, who has the Book of Mystery Woman's 6 Wrens now?" Yu Shu's eyes flickered. In the blink of an eye, she decided to lie. Of course, the Book of Mystery Woman's 6 Wrens is in the hands of the Celestial Commissioner now. Otherwise, why do you think my big brother was able to leave the capital city alive? It was because Yun Hua used the Book of Mystery Woman in exchange for his life. Shui Lingnan frowned. He did not know whether he believed her words or not. He asked again, "Have you seen the Book of Mystery Woman's 6 Wrens?" "Of course I have seen it. Let me tell you, I know more than you think." Yu Shu suddenly smiled at him. If one ignored her sweaty face, one would not be able to see that there were 3 2-inch-long iron nails in her bones at this moment. Shui Lingnan narrowed his eyes and stared at her. "I don't mean to underestimate you. You are a little girl with no one to rely on. In less than 2 years after you entered the capital city, you were able to fight for a place in the Celestial Commissioner's office. You are doing very well. It is not only because of your identity as a life breaker but also because of your shrewdness. It is far beyond your age. If you praise me like this, should I feel honored?" It was not that Yu Shu wanted to talk glibly, but she was in great pain. If she did not say a few more words, she was afraid that she would not be able to endure it. "You should feel lucky. If you don't know anything, I will simply kill you." Shui Lingnan sneered. "Let me ask you again. Zhu Muzhao let you marry Jing Chen. What does it have to do with the Book of Mystery Woman's 6 Wrens in his hands?" "Jing Chen and I got married so that I could give him his life," Yu Shu told him half-truthfully. "He is the scourge of Dan. He is related to the fate of the country. Unfortunately, he is entangled with the Kata star and brings disaster to the world. Only me, a life breaker, and him can change his fate." Shui Lingnan shook his head. "It seems that if I don't let you suffer a little, you will not be willing to tell the truth, Ah Yong." Yu Shu's gaze turned. She saw the scarred man stick out his tongue to lick the 4th nail on his hand. He moved it around her arm and finally stopped at her wrist. With a light press, her entire body stiffened. "Wait," she couldn't help but shout for him to stop. She bared her teeth at Shui Lingnan. "I can tell you the truth, but you have to answer my questions. Otherwise, even if you kill me, I will not say another word to you. If you don't believe me, you can try. My bones are hard." Shui Lingnan waved his hand, indicating for the scarred man to move to the side. His gaze examined her as he asked, "What else do you want to know?" Yu Shu took the chance to ask. Before Chao Yuling died, it was Ji Xingxuan who lured her to the observatory. "Isn't she Ning Wang's person? Why would she listen to your orders?" Shui Lingnan replied, "Aren't you very smart? Why don't you guess?" Yu Shu didn't guess but threw out question after question. Jing Chen going down the mountain to enter the world should have been a secret, but you knew his whereabouts like the back of your hand. You used my De Ji's marriage as a smokescreen to send Governor Su to Yiyang City to discuss the marriage with the Ji family, setting up an ambush along the way. Then who was the one that informed you? A while ago, the court was debating the choice of the crown prince. More than half of the people supported Jing Wang to be the crown prince. I heard that among those people there were Ning Wang's henchmen. How did you do it?" Shui Lingnan frowned and said impatiently, "You have too many questions." Hee. Yu Shu gave a hurried laugh. Her eyes were like torches as she stared at his face. She asked, "It was Xiang Wang, wasn't it? You and Xiang Wang have been in cahoots for a long time. The two of you, in order to remove the foundation of the Celestial Commissioner and not let the major tipping point control the next crown prince, joined hands to deal with the major tipping point. Let me guess, 20 years ago the Xian Huang hadn't decided on the crown prince. Xiang Wang was more popular than the current emperor, but it was the interference of the Celestial Commissioner that caused him to miss out on the throne. He wasn't satisfied, so he conspired with you. Am I right? Shui Lingnan didn't answer, but his sharp eyes already told Yu Shu the answer. Are you finished? I've asked everything that needs to be asked. Yu Shu raised an eyebrow at him. She said without fear, I know so many of your secrets. I guess that you won't let me go out alive, right? Shui Lingnan's face instantly darkened. He could see that she didn't intend to answer his questions honestly. Kill me, I won't tell you any secrets about the fairy woman Lu Ren book. Yu Shu closed her mouth and lowered her head. Her heart was like a mirror. If she wanted to live, she definitely couldn't speak. Because once she no longer had any value, this old thief wouldn't hesitate to take her life. With Shui Rui gone, there was no one in Jing City that could protect her. It was laughable that she had always been conceited. Now that she was a sheep in a tiger's mouth, she could only hope that the major tipping point would receive news of her accident and send someone to save her. You're seeking death. Shui Lingnan was finally angered by her. He sat up from the chair and coldly looked at her. He turned around and left, only leaving behind a sentence, Ayong, make her speak. Receiving the order, the scar-faced man's eyes flashed with excitement. Licking his lips, he turned around and went to the torture rack to pick out a suitable tool. After picking and choosing, he finally chose a palm-sized awl. He burned it on the brazier for a while before walking back in front of Yu Shu. He pulled her hair to make her raise her head, letting her see the thing in his hand. This little thing is called the soul-stealing awl. Do you see the barbs on it? It said that people have 3 souls and 7 spirits, all in the head. Tell me, if I were to make a hole in your head, would your soul be sucked out? Yu Shu smelled the burnt smell of rust. She didn't look at the red-hot awl and closed her eyes, hiding the fear in the depths of her heart. In the next moment, she felt the hot awl piercing the center of her forehead. She couldn't help twisting her neck, wanting to avoid it. However, her scalp was firmly grabbed, holding her head in place. The awl was slowly pierced between her eyebrows, pulled out and fiercely pierced back in. She couldn't bear it anymore and let out a string of miserable screams. She struggled with all her might, but it affected the bone-shattering nails in her arm. The blood flowed out and quickly seeped into half of her sleeves. Her face was pinched by someone, and then there was a fishy smell. A sticky thing slid back and forth on the bloody hole between her eyebrows, making her hair stand on end. She suddenly opened her eyes. Her eyes were bloodshot as she vaguely stared at the scarred face that was filled with excitement because of bloodthirst. Her throat trembled as she shouted, I, Yu Shu, have a grudge. I will definitely take revenge. Chapter 786. The Grand Commissioner accompanied the Crown Prince to stay in Huajin Garden to take care of the critically ill Emperor Zhaoqing, but had Junior Supervisor Ren take the Celestial Commissioner back to the capital. Before he left, he specifically told him to return to the capital to take care of Yu Shu. He seemed to have expected that something would happen to her. In the afternoon, Ren Qiming heard that Yu Shu had brought people to the Zhou family to kidnap the bride, but had been arrested by Zhou Yeda and thrown into the Ministry of Justice prison. The black-robed guards responsible for secretly protecting Yu Shu could not appear in broad daylight, so they came to ask Ren Qiming if they should wait until the night to rescue her. Ren Qiming refused. He said to the black-robed guards, the Grand Secretary only asked you to protect her life, not to help the evildoer. She dared to ruin someone's marriage, allowed slaves to commit murder on the street, and injured the Jinwu guards. Shouldn't she be arrested? Don't worry, the Ministry of Justice will only lock her up for a few days. They won't do anything to her. The black-robed guards listened to the Grand Commissioner and could not act on their own. Now that the Grand Commissioner was not here and Ren Qiming was not willing to say anything, they could only wait quietly. They waited like this until the afternoon of the 3rd day. Zhu Muzhao came back from Huajin Garden without a word. Ren Qiming was reading files in Taishi Tower when he heard a series of footsteps outside. He raised his head and saw the travel-worn Grand Commissioner walk in. He froze for a moment before standing up to greet. Why did the Grand Secretary come back at this time? Is it the Emperor? He thought that Zhu Muzhao would stay in Huajin Garden until Emperor Zhaoqing passed away. The Emperor is fine. Zhu Muzhao walked to the window and sat down. He leaned his upper body against the backrest and let out a long sigh of relief. It was unknown what he thought of, but the corners of his mouth curled up happily. He closed his eyes to rest for a while. He raised his eyelids to look at Ren Qiming standing to the side and said, What do you want to say? Say it. Ren Qiming wanted to say something but stopped. Zhu Muzhao stared at him for a moment and suddenly frowned. Where is Yu Shu now? Ren Qiming lowered his head and said, In the Ministry of Justice prison. Hearing this, Zhu Muzhao's expression changed and his voice sank. What's going on? Ren Qiming then recounted how Yu Shu had brought men to the Zhou family to kidnap the bride, and how she had been captured by Zhou Yeta. In the end, he explained why he had stopped the blackguard from rescuing Yu Shu. I know you have high hopes for her, but she cannot appreciate your good intentions. This is a good opportunity for her to see the reality. Without your protection, she is nothing. After he finished speaking, he did not dare to raise his head to look at his face. After a few breaths, he sighed. You're confused. His disappointed tone made Ren Qiming suddenly feel ashamed. Grand Secretary, Zhu Muzhao sat up from the reclining chair and raised his hand to interrupt his words. He glanced at him with a serious expression and said, Summon the blackguard to follow me to the Ministry of Justice to get him. I hope she's still breathing. Otherwise, Celestial Commissioner's only chance of survival will be lost in my hands. After Feng Zhaomiao sent Shui Jinshuan to Wangji restaurant, he single-handedly killed his way back to the Zhou family. When he found out that Yu Shu had been locked up in prison, he ran home in one breath to beg his father to save her. General Feng scolded him and ordered people to tie him up and lock him up in the woodshed in the backyard. Who knew that Lady Feng loved her son and quietly let him go the next night. Once Feng Zhaomiao was free, he immediately ran out and went to the Yu residence to beg for forgiveness. At that time, everyone in the Yu residence was as anxious as ants on a hot pan. Yesterday, Yu Shu had gone out with a group of guards and had not returned. Pei Jing went out to inquire, and the family only found out that she had been locked up. Zhao Hui and He Fangji had both been in prison and knew that it was a place of torture. They were afraid that something would happen to Yu Shu, so they ran to the Ministry of Justice's prison to see her. However, they were refused entry. At this critical juncture, Feng Zhaomiao came to beg for forgiveness. The family didn't have the energy to blame him and were thinking about how to save Yu Shu from prison first. Thus, Feng Zhaomiao gritted his teeth and brought He Fangji and Pei Jing to the Prime Minister's residence to beg Shui Lingnan to be merciful. He hoped that he would ask the Ministry of Justice to release Yu Shu for the sake of Shui Rui. In the end, they didn't even get to see Shui Lingnan's face and were chased out. Feng Zhaomiao settled for the next best thing and brought them to Prince Xiang's heir, Lu Jiong. He thought that Lu Jiong and Shui Rui used to be so close that they could wear the same pants, so he wouldn't leave her in the lurch. However, he didn't expect that Prince Xiang's residence would also be refused entry. He had nowhere else to go. In the end, he begged Count Zhongyong's mansion. Rui Lin, who had always been Shui Rui's brother, allowed him to enter the mansion. However, when he saw Feng Zhaomiao, he said these words, In the past that Yu Lianfang used Shui Rui's power to bully others. She ruined my sister's reputation at the Hibiscus Gentleman's banquet. Why didn't she think of leaving a way out? I think she only has herself to blame for this. I advise you not to meddle in other people's business. In the end, you will only get yourself into trouble. Seeing his face, Feng Zhaomiao spat on his face and pointed at his nose and scolded, You damn fatty, don't forget when you met a kidnapper when you were young who chased you for more than 10 li and saved you from the hands of the human traffickers. Although Lianfang is a woman, she is much more loyal than you men. She won't leave you in the lurch and she won't be ungrateful. Rui Lin's face turned red and said angrily, If you have the ability, go and save her yourself. Don't come and beg me. I'm blind to come and find you. Feng Zhaomiao turned and left. But when he left the Count of Zhongyong's residence and faced He Fangji and Pei Jing waiting outside the door, he couldn't be tough anymore. He Fangji and Pei Jing knew the result when they saw his face. They sighed and went home to think of a solution. Before sunset, Zhu Muzhao brought people to the Ministry of Justice's prison to ask for Yu Lianfang. The head of the prison had been instructed by the higher-ups in advance. Without the written order of the disciplinary officer, he wouldn't let them go. He shut the door tightly and didn't let them in. He sent a long-legged prison guard to quietly leave through the back door and run to deliver the letter. Zhu Muzhao didn't have the patience to wait for long. He directly let the black-robed guards climb over the wall and subdue the group of prison guards before opening the door from the inside. The black-robed guards found 2 keys on the head of the prison guard and ran to the front to open the way. Zhu Muzhao walked in the middle and Ren Qiming followed closely behind him. They entered the dark and stuffy cell. The black-robed guards took a torch from the wall and lit it up. They searched through the bars one by one. The prisoners were frightened and shrank into the corners like mice. They searched the entire cell but didn't find Yu Shu. Search again. If she's alive, I want to see her. If she's dead, I want to see her body. Zhu Muzhao ordered in a deep voice. He stood at the end of the cell with his hands behind his back, suppressing his anger. Ren Qiming knew that Yu Shu was probably dead, but he didn't dare to say it in front of him. After searching for about half an hour, a black-robed guard suddenly shouted, "There's a tunnel here. Someone who's been here before, help." A group of people gathered around and pried open the tunnel. They found a dungeon hidden below. Zhu Muzhao ignored Ren Qiming's advice and followed the black-robed guards into the dungeon. At the end of the smelly tunnel, he found a bright torture room. The leader of the black-robed guards kicked open the door and several people rushed in. They saw the bloody person tied to the torture rack with her head hanging down. They didn't know whether she was dead or alive. They looked at each other and didn't know what to do. Zhu Muzhao then walked in and looked up. His eyelids suddenly twitched. He strode forward and parted the bloody person's hair. He saw that there was a hole in the middle of her forehead and a lump of rotten flesh had already solidified. It was as if she had a third eye. Her face was covered in blood and he could not see her face clearly. His hand trembled and he carefully reached out with 2 fingers to check her breath. Ren Qiming stared at his movements without blinking until he put down his fingers and let out a sigh of relief. He turned around and ordered, "She's still breathing. Put her down carefully and send someone to the Imperial Hospital to find Qing Ju. Ask him to come to the Celestial Commissioner as soon as possible." Ren Qiming also let out a sigh of relief, but he didn't know whether he was more relieved or disappointed. The group of people came out of the prison. It was already dark outside but the door was blocked. Xue Lingnan rushed over when he received the news and stopped them. "Who broke the prison?" Xue Lingnan sat high on the back of the horse and searched for Zhu Muzhao in the crowd. He asked knowingly. Zhu Muzhao came out surrounded by black-robed guards. He looked up at the old but vigorous Prime Minister Xue and said sternly, "If I didn't come, I wouldn't have known that the Ministry of Justice was so bold. They built a dungeon without authorization and privately tortured officials of the imperial court." Xue Lingnan was full of regret. He didn't expect Zhu Muzhao to return to the capital so quickly. He didn't know what happened to the crown prince and there was no news. He originally planned to interrogate Yushu tonight and then dispose of her. But Zhu Muzhao rushed to save her first. He saw from afar that Zhu Muzhao's subordinate was carrying a prisoner covered in blood. Who else could it be but Yushu? This person is involved in a murder case. Even an official of the Celestial Commissioner can't bend the law for personal gain. Don't twist words and force logic. A prison break is a prison break. I advise you to put the prisoner down as soon as possible. Don't make mistakes again. Zhu Muzhao laughed coldly. Even if an official of the Celestial Commissioner commits a capital crime, he has to get my approval before he can be executed. I think you've gone senile and meddled in other people's business. Xue Lingnan and Zhu Muzhao had been enemies for a long time. Today was the first time they had fallen out in public. Good. I will report everything that happened today to His Majesty and ask for his judgment. Get out of the way. Zhu Muzhao was aggressive. Xue Lingnan knew that his black-robed guards were powerful and didn't want to fight with him here. He waved his hand and let them pass. In this confrontation, it seemed like Zhu Muzhao had the upper hand. But if they investigated, Xue Lingnan didn't lose out. Yushu had been tortured in his hands for 2 days and 2 nights. She was a young girl. Even if she could survive, her personality would change greatly. She would never forget what she had experienced in the torture room. Fear would always accompany her. Even if she didn't die, she would be crippled. Xue Lingnan wasn't afraid that Yushu would expose him in front of Zhu Muzhao. Emperor Zhao Qing was critically ill and didn't have many days left to live. His grandson would be the crown prince and the future emperor. He would be the first emperor who wasn't controlled by the Celestial Commissioner. He watched as the Celestial Commissioner's men ran away into the night. Zhu Muzhao brought Yushu back to Taishi Tower and had people carefully send her to her bedroom upstairs. He first found 2 maids to clean her wounds and the others left to avoid arousing suspicion. Basin after basin of clean water was sent upstairs. When they were brought down, Zhu Muzhao's frown deepened. Not long after, Zhu Qingjue rushed in. Zhu Muzhao led him to the 2nd floor and briefly explained the situation. He warned him worriedly, "Save her at all costs." Zhu Qingjue nodded. Although he was mentally prepared, he was still shocked to see Yushu covered in wounds when he entered the room. He didn't care about the etiquette between a man and a woman. After cleaning his hands, he went to check her wounds. After the time it took to drink a cup of tea, he came out of the room with an ugly expression. He wiped his sweat with a handkerchief and said to his father, "There are 5 iron nails in her left arm. The bone is cracked. There are many burns and pus on her back. In addition, one of her ankles was broken. The most serious injury is her forehead. I don't know if it hurt her brain. The torture is quite vicious. He used no less than 5 kinds of torture on a woman. I don't know how she survived these 2 days. Even a man would bite his tongue and commit suicide. Zhu Muzhao looked in the direction of the bedroom with a strange gaze and asked in a low voice, "Can she be saved?" "She can be saved." Zhu Qingjue hesitantly told him, "I'm afraid that even if she is saved, she will want to die." "What are you saying?" "The skin outside her forehead is completely necrotic. It will leave a scar for the rest of her life. I can't help her even if I have magic hands. A woman's face is disfigured. Isn't that forcing her to die?" Zhu Qingjue shook his head and said helplessly, "It's already a blessing to be able to keep her life. I hope she can get over it." After that, he hurried to write a prescription and dispensed the medicine. Zhu Muzhao stopped at the door of the bedroom. He was deep in thought. Suddenly he heard footsteps coming from the stairs. He turned to look at Ren Qiming, who had a guilty expression. He pointed at the study across from him. The 2 of them changed places to talk. "Taishu, I know I was wrong." Ren Qiming took the initiative to admit his mistake. "You know you were wrong?" Zhu Muzhao asked him, "Tell me, what did you do wrong?" Ren Qiming secretly clenched his fists and said, "I shouldn't have disobeyed you on the surface. I shouldn't have listened to your orders. It's all my fault for standing by the side and almost causing the death of the life destroyer. In your eyes, Yu Shu is only a life destroyer?" Zhu Muzhao saw through his thoughts at a glance. He said to him earnestly, "I know that you have always been loyal to me. My position was originally prepared to be passed to you. However, the affairs of the world are unpredictable. None of us expected that so many unforeseen events would happen in the middle. I couldn't find the Book of Mystic Fairy 6 Rens, and I let Yun Hua and his son go. In the end, Jing Chen also rebelled and left. These are all my mistakes. Originally, it had nothing to do with you. However, you also know that we, the Celestial Commissioner, are bound together for good or bad. My position is related to the rise and fall of the world's Book of Changes. As the Grand Instructor, if I can't become the Emperor's top confidant, it will be equivalent to an empty title. Now that the position of the Imperial Astronomer is in imminent danger, you are no longer suitable to take my position. I am not passing it to you because I do not want you to become a sinner for all eternity and bear countless curses after your death." Ren Qiming had long passed the age of being swayed by his emotions. He was 30 years old. After following Zhu Muzhao for so many years, his biggest gain was learning to think. After listening to Zhu Muzhao's earnest persuasion, he was not in a hurry to fight for the position that originally belonged to him. Instead, he asked seriously, "I am not suitable, why is she suitable?" Chapter 787. A few days after the ancestral worship ceremony, a big event suddenly broke out in the court. Zheng Minji, the imperial envoy sent to Ningdong City 2 months ago, returned to the capital. But what he brought back was not Prince of Dongjing, who had come to the capital to plead guilty. Instead, he brought back the news that Prince of Dongjing was training soldiers and stockpiling food and plotting a rebellion. At this time, the crown prince was attending to his sick mother in Huajin Garden and was unable to rush back to the capital. Yin Tianho was acting as regent and convened a court meeting to discuss this matter. Who would have thought that on the next day the assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice, Zheng Minji, would publicly accuse Right Minister Xue Lingnan of colluding with Prince of Dongjing to usurp the throne, causing an uproar. Someone from the Crown Prince Society immediately stepped forward to defend Xue Lingnan. "Lord Zheng, don't slander us. Xue Xiangyuan is in the capital, how did he get involved with Prince of Dongjing?" Zheng Minji tearfully recounted his experiences. When he arrived at Ningdong City, he did not immediately reveal his identity as an imperial envoy. Instead, he made a secret visit and discovered that 10 li away from the city was filled with military camps. Every day they trained without rest and large amounts of rations and fodder were transported into the city. He suspected that the Lord of Dongjing had ill intentions, so he disguised himself and snuck into the Castellan manor. One night, during a banquet, he eavesdropped on Jiang Huaying and the generals discussing the war, and he saw through the Jiang family's ambitions. While he was shocked, he accidentally exposed himself and narrowly escaped from the city lord's mansion. The dozen or so guards he brought with him all died on the way to protect him. That day at the banquet, I hid in the dark and saw with my own eyes that there was a military counselor under the throne of King Dongjing. He looked exactly like the eldest son of the Xue family who disappeared at the beginning of the year. May I ask Prime Minister Xue, where is the eldest son of your family now? Weren't you the one who sent him to the northeast to support the king of Dongjing's provisions so that he could command his army? Otherwise, in the barren lands of the north, how could he, a marquis with a different surname, have the military funds to support 200,000 soldiers and horses? Zheng Mingji was the head of the Ministry of Justice and had been Xue Lingnan's subordinate for more than a decade. Now he had stepped forward to accuse Xue Lingnan of participating in Prince Dongjing's rebellion. Regardless of whether or not the evidence was sufficient, people would still be inclined to believe him. Instantly, the voices of the Crown Prince Society began to die down. Only a few diehard loyalists continued to cry out for Xue Lingnan's innocence. Nonsense. Prime Minister Xue is the maternal ancestor of the Crown Prince and is already an extremely high official. Why would he collude with a prince with a different surname to rebel? What benefit does this bring to him? That's right, Zheng Mingji. Are your eyes deceiving you? You've seen someone who looks like young Master Xue, and yet you're trying to misrepresent him. Zheng Mingji did not bother to argue with them. He turned around and bowed to Yin Tianho, shouting loudly, "Grand Tutor is perceptive, everything this lowly official has said is the truth. Prince Minister of the Wang Xian Officer, XT, the most important thing now is to thoroughly investigate the collusion between the Xue family and the Jiang family. Otherwise, when the Prince of Dongjing sends his troops to the south, there will be people in the imperial court working together with him from the inside. By then the world will be in chaos and it will be too late. Xia, the emperor, Qin Wang for Wang, after." The officials looked. And looked. Wang and the officials. Yin Tianho folded his sleeves and looked around the imperial court. His eyes stopped on Xue Lingnan's stiff face. He said in a loud voice, "Now that the Prince of Dongjing has raised his own army, Prime Minister Xue is suspicious. Immediately send him to the Supreme Court to await trial. Before this matter is fully investigated, you are not allowed to participate in court affairs." When Emperor Zhaoqing conferred the title of Crown Prince, he promoted Yin Tianho to be the Crown Prince's tutor. Even the Crown Prince had to listen to Yin Tianho's advice. So as soon as Yin Tianho spoke, the court fell silent. Even Guo Huaiyan, the minister of the Supreme Court who had a good relationship with Xue Lingnan, did not stand up for him. The Prime Minister stood quietly in front of the officials. He did not say a word from beginning to end. So, after the court meeting, Xue Lingnan was sent to the Supreme Court by Yin Tianho and temporarily detained. In the evening, Zhu Muzhao returned to Taishi Tower. Zhu Qingjue was also there. Because of Yu Shu, the father and son met each other every day. "How is she? Has she woken up yet?" "No." Zhu Qingjue's tone was slightly helpless. "I gave her the best medicine. I even fed her the 9 transformations mind restoration pill that my master, the king of medicine, gave me before we parted. I endured the pain and fed it to her, but she still doesn't wake up. There's nothing I can do." Zhu Muzhao frowned and sat down. His headache was not only because of Yu Shu's coma, but also because of Prince of Dongjing's rebellion. In today's court meeting, half of what Zheng Mingji said was instigated by him, but the other half was made true. It turned out that Yun Hua had really brought Xue Rui to seek refuge with the Jiang family. This made him think of the prophecy about the birth of the Minister of the Left that he had predicted a few months ago. One of Yun Hua's sons was a great calamity, and the other was actually the Minister of the Left who could reverse the situation. Prince of Dongjing had met his destined benefactor, and he had the great fortune to seize the world. His original plan was to use the Prince of Dongjing's rebellion to uproot the Xue family before the Crown Prince ascended to the throne. In this way, the Crown Prince had no choice but to rely on the Celestial Commissioner. But now he had to consider whether Yu Shu had already known the whereabouts of Yun Hua and Xue Rui. Did she know that they had escaped to Ningdong City to help Prince of Dongjing in his rebellion? Would he be able to leave the imperial astronomer in her hands without any worries? "Father, you look so pale. Did something big happen in the court again?" Zhu Qingjue hesitated and went behind him. She pressed her hands on his shoulders and neck and massaged him evenly. Zhu Muzhao leaned against the back of the chair comfortably and said slowly, "I still remember that year when you ran away from home. I was so angry. Your mother blamed me for being too strict with you. I wanted you to inherit my legacy, but you never listened to me. But after you left, I regretted it in less than 3 months. To be honest, your temperament is not suitable for you to stay in the officialdom for long. I don't want to turn you into another me. After I thought it through, I will no longer care about you. Even if you only want to be a doctor who treats illnesses and doesn't have much of a future, I will not stop you. Because I can't follow my heart in this life, at least my son can live freely." "Father," Zhu Muzhao patted the back of his hand on his shoulder and said sincerely, "If one day I step down from this position, the Zhu family will no longer be prosperous. If you want to live freely, you will have to rely on yourself. Zhu Qingjue asked with mixed feelings. Your Majesty doesn't have much time left. In the future, when the Crown Prince ascends to the throne, you will have to step down from your position. At that time, who will be the Celestial Commissioner? Will it be Junior Supervisor Rin? Zhu Muzhao said, I still need to think about it. When Yu Shu wakes up, he must ask her first. It would be best if she was willing to tell him. If she still wants to cover up the whereabouts of Yun Hua and his son, he can't hand over the Celestial Commissioner to her. The father and son were talking downstairs. The bedroom on the second floor was quiet. Yu Shu was lying motionlessly on the bed. There was a lamp hanging on the head of the bed. It was hot in the summer. Her body was only covered with a thin blanket. Her exposed hands and feet were tightly bandaged. Her forehead was covered with a fine and soft white gauze. A purplish-red ointment was seeping out. Her cheeks were sunken and her skin was pale. Her eyes were closed. At first glance, she looked like a dead person. A clear cry of a crane came from outside the window. It was a celestial bird that was raised on the Nine Bends Bridge. It always came and went when it was happy. The crane's cry rang out 3 times, and Yu Shu, who was sleeping soundly, suddenly opened her eyes. Her black and white eyes were empty. After a moment of blankness, her eyes became gloomy. Except for her eyes, she could not feel her body. Numbness was often more frightening than pain. However, her eyes were very calm. An hour later, the maid who was responsible for taking care of her went upstairs to feed her rice. When she realized that her eyes were open, she quickly put down the food and ran downstairs to call for help. After a while, Zhu Muzhao walked into the room in big strides. He stood beside the bed and looked down at her. Yu Shu. He was most afraid that she would hurt her brain, so he called her name. Yu Shu turned her eyes and looked at him. Her lips moved slowly and made a subtle sound. He bent down to listen and heard clearly that she said, You saved me. He could not tell if she was confused or just awake. He comforted her. It's okay. It's all over. You are in Taishi Tower now. With me here, no one can touch you. Yu Shu's mind was in a daze. Many voices came out of her mind, and many images flashed past her mind. The silhouettes in front of her eyes overlapped, and Diane's face suddenly turned into Shui Rui's. He looked at her with a gentle gaze and told her, Ah Shu, your big brother will always be by your side and protect you. Then Shui Rui's face turned into Jing Chen's. He looked at her guiltily and said, Xiaoyu, don't be afraid. I won't let anyone hurt you anymore. In the end, Jing Chen's appearance changed back to that of Taoist Qing Zheng. He glared at her angrily and questioned her, Why did you learn the things in the Book of Mystic Maiden's 6 Rens? Didn't you swear to your master that you would destroy it? Look, you're getting your retribution now. In a flash, Qing Zheng's face disappeared. An ugly scarred face appeared in front of her. He licked his lips and smiled at her. He held an awl in his hand and stabbed it between her eyebrows. Yu Shu's breathing became chaotic. She closed her eyes tightly and her lips trembled. Her pale face suddenly turned purple. Seeing this, Zhu Muzhao hurriedly shouted, Go and call Qingjue back. Go. At this time, Zhu Qingjue was taking a nap at Tianyuan Terrace near Taishi Tower. When he heard that Yu Shu was awake, he immediately ran over. Seeing that she was crazy, he stuffed a pill into her mouth and poured water down her throat without saying anything. After taking the pill, Yu Shu quickly calmed down. She panted slightly and opened her eyes to look at Zhu Muzhao. She breathed in and out and tried hard to speak. Shui Ling Nan he. Zhu Qingjue could not bear it and interrupted her. Don't talk. Have a good rest. Yu Shu's lips trembled and she stubbornly said, He Xiang? Shui Ling Nan colluded with Prince Xiang. Zhu Muzhao gently pushed his son aside and leaned forward to listen. Jing Chen. Jing Chen was ambushed on his way to the capital. It was Prince Xiang who leaked his whereabouts. Don't kill, it's... Shui Ling Nan did not kill Jing Chen because he wanted to lure Yun Hua out. He did not expect Jing Chen to be saved by her. Taisha Academy. The murder case in Taisha Academy was committed by Shui Ling Nan and Prince Xiang was an accomplice. With every sentence she said, Zhu Muzhao's expression became more solemn. Although he suspected these things before, he could not confirm it. Now that she said it, it became the truth. I know. You should rest. He raised his hand in the air and gently patted her shoulder. However, he saw her squinting her eyes and drooping eyelids. She slowly told him another thing. Yunhua, Shuirui, Ningdong City. Yunhua and Shuirui went to Ningdong City to seek refuge with King of Dongjing, Jiang Huaying. After listening to this last sentence, when Zhu Muzhao raised his head again, the way he looked at her was immediately different. She seemed to have exhausted all the strength in her body. She closed her eyes again and fell into a deep sleep. Zhu Qingjue did not understand. He squatted down and felt her pulse. He was amazed. I thought that even if she woke up, she would become a madwoman. I really did not expect that she did not cry or make a fuss. Father, don't worry. I don't think she will seek death. Zhu Muzhao nodded. He got up and walked out. You stay here tonight and watch her. Don't let anything happen to her. If she wakes up, talk to her and comfort her. Don't ask her about what happened in the prison. Father. Zhu Qingjue raised his hand. He wanted to say that he had not slept for 2 days. She was not in danger and did not need him to accompany her. However, Zhu Muzhao left in a flash and did not give him a chance to protest. Chapter 788. Yu Shu lay in Supreme Dawn Tavern for half a month, completely unaware of what was happening in the outside world. Zhu Muzhao sent someone to the Yu residence to report that she was safe, but he did not allow her family to visit. Zhu Qingjue would come to take her pulse every day, but after she woke up, the matter of changing her dressing was handed over to the maidservant. He followed his father's instructions. Every time he came to visit her, as long as she was awake, he would accompany her and talk to her to relieve her boredom. Zhu Qingjue felt that his father's actions were superfluous because she did not need anyone to accompany her. No matter what he said, she did not respond. At first, he thought that she was stimulated by being in prison, but later he found that she was simply too lazy to talk to him. Just like now. Ahem, how are you today? Did you take the medicine? Raise your hand and try. Do your bones still hurt? Yu Shu was sitting on the bed, wearing a loose robe. One of her arms was exposed and had just been changed. She looked at the green trees outside the window. When she heard his words, she just raised her hand. She did not say anything, nor did she cry out in pain. What about your foot? She stretched out one of her legs from the quilt to show him. The splint on her ankle had just been removed yesterday. Zhu Qingjue's secret, bone-breaking ointment, was very effective. It should be known that her ankle was completely twisted, but he was able to put it back. It had only been half a month and her bones had already grown back. Do you have a headache? Yu Shu shook her head, silently indicating that she did not feel any pain. Zhu Qingjue rolled his eyes and stretched out his hand to remove the white gauze on her forehead. As soon as he moved, she immediately reacted and pushed his hand away, not letting him touch. Since she looked in the mirror 10 days ago, she refused to let anyone see her forehead again. He tried to sneak up on her when she was asleep. As soon as he touched her head a little, she immediately woke up. He still remembered how terrifying her eyes were at that time. He knew that this was her weakness, so he patiently tried to reason with her. I just want to take a look to see how the wound is healing. What are you afraid of? I don't think you are ugly. Yu Shu turned around, coldly glanced at him and spat out 2 words, no. Zhu Qingjue gritted his teeth. He couldn't help but say, it's just a disfigurement. What's there not to see? Are you going to cover your head for the rest of your life? Yu Shu was neither embarrassed nor angry. She just turned her head and ignored him. Zhu Qingjue was amused by her. He stood up and walked to the window and sat down, blocking her view. Unexpectedly, she simply closed her eyes. He pretended to be asleep. The house was quiet for a while. Only the chirping of cicadas could be heard in the trees outside, and the sunlight pierced through. Zhu Qingjue looked at her translucent and glowing profile and abruptly opened her mouth to tell her. Last night, the emperor passed away in Huajin Garden. The grievous news reached the capital overnight. Early that morning, the funeral bell was rung at the Meridian Gate. Outside the imperial palace, the streets were hung with white banners. Yu Shu looked at him in a daze. His Majesty passed away? Zhu Qingjue nodded. Taking advantage of the fact that she was willing to speak, he said a few more words. There are some things that my father doesn't allow others to tell you. He's afraid that it will affect your recovery, but I think you should know about it. Don't be too surprised when I tell you. She gently nodded, indicating that she was listening. The Prince of Dongjing wanted to rebel. Someone saw the long-lost Shui Rui next to him. The court accused Prime Minister Shui of colluding with the rebels and secretly sending money to Ningdong City. Prime Minister Shui was imprisoned in the Supreme Court and was personally tried by Grand Tutor Yin. Who would have thought that he would be implicated in the 2 murder cases of the Grand Historian's Library last year? Now, we're just waiting for the Crown Prince to return to the capital to make a decision. After he finished speaking, he quietly observed her expression. He saw that her expression was cold, as if she was unmoved. He recalled that she and Shui Rui had once treated each other with sincerity and called each other brother and sister. Moreover, he heard that the reason she suffered so much hardship this time was also because of Shui Rui's younger sister. "Hey, are you all right?" Yushu lowered her eyes and softly said, "I'm fine." She paused and then said, "What can happen to me? I know that the person who harmed me will not have a good ending, so I can't be happier." Zhu Qingjue couldn't see that she was happy at all. The atmosphere in the room was strange. He couldn't stay any longer, so he casually found an excuse to leave. Without a noisy voice in the room, no one would disturb Yushu's thoughts. She sat quietly for a while and then lifted the quilt. She slowly walked to the window and sat down. She turned her head and looked at her slightly hazy face in the bronze mirror. She raised her hand to touch the scarf on her forehead and gently pulled it down. In the middle of her eyebrows, there was a flesh scar that was half an inch long. It was a deep red color and looked like a tightly closed eye. It was indescribably demonic. When she looked at this scar, she could clearly remember the torture she experienced in those 2 days and 2 nights. But strangely, she didn't feel fear at all. Instead, she felt her blood boil and there was some kind of desire that was about to come out of her body. She quickly reached out and covered her reflection in the mirror. She slowly adjusted her breathing and regained her calmness. She was distracted by a thought. Emperor Zhaoqing had passed away. The great promotion point would soon need her. When Zhu Muzhao walked in from outside, he saw her sitting in front of the mirror in a daze. He stopped at the door and frowned. "Why did you get out of bed? Didn't I tell you to rest well?" Yushu calmly picked up the scarf that had fallen to the ground and tied it back around her forehead. She turned around and said, "I've slept for more than 10 days. I've slept enough. When do you plan on letting me go home?" Zhu Muzhao walked in with his hands behind his back. He stood by the window and looked at the Celestial Commissioner. "The Emperor passed away last night. I've already heard. When the Crown Prince returns to the capital tomorrow, I want you to testify against Shui Lingnan. Are you willing?" He turned around to look at her, waiting for her to make the right choice. Would she stand on the side of the Celestial Commissioner or against him? Yushu gently fluttered her eyelashes and sarcastically raised the corner of her mouth. "What do you want me to testify against him? That he harmed Jing Qin, that he indiscriminately killed the innocent, or that he spied on the secrets of the imperial family? I can testify to all of these." He doesn't really need her to be a witness. He wants to take this opportunity to make a clean break with the past. He hands her the sharpened knife and asks her to stab the Shui family for the last time and never waver from then on. Half a month ago, she woke up from a nightmare. Her mind was unprecedentedly clear. The heavy fog that shrouded her eyes was pushed away. She suddenly seemed to be enlightened and saw everything clearly. She knew that Detidian wanted to pass his position to her not just because she was the one who broke his life. More importantly, he saw that she and Yunhua's 2 sons were bound together. It was difficult to get rid of the karma. He thought that she could find the Book of Mystery Maiden Lu Ren for him. What's more, one day she would be willing to give birth to the Tai Bone of Destiny and ascend to the peak of power. Have you thought about it? Zhu Muzhao stared at her calm eyes, but he did not see any hesitation. What is there to think about? Yushu stood up with the support of the table and walked to his side. She looked at the Celestial Commissioner through the window lattice with him. It was like a maze of 9 palaces. On the other hand, the Crown Prince. Aren't you afraid that he will protect the Shui family and refuse to punish them? Zhu Muzhao smiled with satisfaction and said, "I have talked to the Crown Prince privately. The Celestial Commissioner will protect his throne. Throw away the abandoned Shui Lingnan. There is no pity." Yushu thought for a moment and guessed the whole story. "Did you deliberately stay in Huajin Garden to discuss terms with the Crown Prince? Why would he agree? The Crown Prince and the Shui family were tied in the same boat. If it wasn't for Shui Lingnan and Xiang Wang, he would not have become the Crown Prince. How do you think I convinced him?" Yushu closed her eyes and said, "The Crown Prince is a very suspicious person and is also a fickle person. You only need to tell him that Shui Lingnan and the Prince of Xiang are secretly colluding. Even if he becomes the emperor in the future, I'm afraid that it will be a wedding dress for someone else. Other than that, you must have told him the secret of the Fairy Maiden Lu Ren book." Zhu Muzhao gave her a look of approval and said, "Shui Lingnan and Xiang Wang made a mistake. They both hid the existence of the Fairy Maiden Lu Ren book from the Crown Prince. I told the Crown Prince that the Celestial Commissioner found the lost Fairy Maiden Lu Ren book, and lied to him that on the day of the ancestor worship, I led the next Grand Master to perform a divination and divine that he is the Son of Heaven. So even without the Shui family he can still sit on the throne." He believed it? Why not? Even if it was a lie, as long as it was mutually beneficial, no one would try to expose it. Lotus Room. Zhu Muzhao called her by her name. He turned around with his back to the window and said in a drawn-out tone, "I've already paved the road for you. What's next? Don't disappoint me." With that, he patted her shoulder and strode away. Yushu stood in front of the window and watched his figure walk down the Nine Turns Bridge. Her eyes flashed and she muttered, "I hope that your heart is like mine. It is best that we do not betray each other." Yushu was carried into the Supreme Court in a palanquin. In fact, she could already walk, but the Grand Supervisor wanted her to pretend to be seriously injured and deliberately put on a show for others. For this reason, Zhu Qingjue bandaged her from head to toe. On such a hot day, people would feel short of breath just by looking at her. However, Yushu did not need to deliberately pretend to be weak. Her face was so pale that it was not like a normal person's. Anyone could see that she had encountered a great disaster. The Xue family's case was not heard in public. Yesterday, the Crown Prince had escorted the Emperor's body back to the capital. Before the national funeral, he had taken the time to come to the hearing. However, Xue Lingnan was his maternal grandfather. In order to avoid suspicion, he retreated to the side and did not interfere with Yin Tianho and Guo Huayan's trial. In fact, Yushu was only there to go through the motions. It was unknown when the Grand Supervisor had gathered evidence. It turned out that an old servant who did odd jobs in the Taisha Library was a vanguard of Xue Lingnan's army 20 years ago. Later, he was reported to the court to have died in battle. However, he was secretly sent to the Taisha Library to be an informant and killed 2 innocent female students, Zhan Shuiyuan and Chao Yuling. Xue Lingnan probably knew that he had lost his power. In the face of witnesses and material evidence, he stood proudly in front of people and showed disdain. Why would this old man want to kill 2 unrelated young girls? If you want to convict someone, you can always find a pretext. Yin Tianho sat behind the official table with a confession in his hand. He turned to look at Yushu sitting at the end of the table and said, "Celestial Commissioner Yushu, in your confession, you said that on the night of the 11th of May, you were arrested and taken to the Ministry of Justice's prison. Xue Lingnan privately set up a torture room and tortured you. Is this true?" "Yes." Yushu asked someone to help her stand up. She pointed at Xue Lingnan and said, "He personally told me that he had ordered people to kill the students of the Taisha Library." As the Prime Minister, Xue Lingnan was dissatisfied that the Celestial Commissioner's power was greater than the 6 ministries. He wholeheartedly wanted to provoke a dispute between the Yishue family and the Celestial Commissioner, so he started from the Taisha Library. The murdered Chao Yuling was the daughter of the Chao family of the 12 prefectures in the capital. Zhan Shuiyuan was from the Jiangxi Yishue family of the Zhan family. Xue Lingnan wanted to shift the blame for their deaths to the Celestial Commissioner but had not found a suitable opportunity. The existence of the Book of Mystery Maiden Lu Ren could not be made public. He could only find another excuse. Just as Xue Lingnan said, if you want to convict someone, you can always find a pretext. Xue Lingnan turned around and stared sharply at Yushu. However, he refrained from refuting. He knew that if he told the secret of the Book of Mystery Maiden Lu Ren in public, not only would Prince Xiang have nowhere to hide, but also his family would die without a complete corpse. "As far as I know, the reason why you were put in the prison of the Ministry of Justice was because you destroyed someone's marriage. You let slaves hurt people on the street. Is this true?" Guo Huayan couldn't blatantly exonerate Xue Lingnan. He could only change the topic and force Yushu to expose herself. "The Xue family and the Zhou family bribed my subordinate Chao Renjia of the Kunling Bureau. They stole the seal of the former Right Commander Jing Qin and forged the official marriage document. It was a private marriage. I received the news and went to catch the criminal." "What's wrong with that?" Yushu asked. Guo Huayan wasn't in a hurry to summon other witnesses. He held on to her and said, "You said in your testimony that Prime Minister Xue tortured you in prison. Wasn't it because you kidnapped the bride and hid her? You insisted on not telling where she was, so he tortured you?" Yushu smiled coldly and said, "Xue Lingnan tortured me not to find out the whereabouts of his granddaughter. He didn't know how he found out that I have the evidence of the Xue family colluding with Prince of Dongjing. So he tortured me to force me to hand it over." In just a few sentences, she had linked the case to the crime of the Xue family's rebellion. Her words were flawless. Xue Lingnan finally couldn't hold back and scolded her in a low voice, "Don't slander me. I have nothing to do with the rebel Jiang family. Your Highness." He turned to look at the Crown Prince and said with a sad expression, "My Xue family has evil intentions. Doesn't your Highness know it?" Without waiting for the crown prince to answer, Yu Shu said, "Now you don't have to win the crown prince's sympathy. Whether you are loyal or not, the crown prince already knows." Shui Lingnan stared at the crown prince, unwilling to give up. The crown prince let out a long sigh and turned his head to avoid his gaze. In a heavy and disappointed tone he said, "I have already read the letter between you and the traitor Jiang Huaying. I really did not expect that my maternal grandfather would be delusional enough to usurp the throne. I have nothing to say." He said that he had nothing to say, but he had already made his attitude clear. Shui Lingnan's shoulders suddenly slumped. His face instantly aged 10 years. His hands trembled as he clutched his chest and hung his head. Even now, he could not believe that the crown prince he had single-handedly raised would bite back at him before he ascended to the throne. Seeing this scene, Yu Shu didn't feel the pleasure of revenge. Prime Minister Shui, who was once unattainable to her, was just an old man after losing his power. The reality made her realize one truth again. In this world, people without power were worse than dogs. To be continued. Chapter 789. May this year was destined to be a turbulent month. First, there was the news of Prince of Dongjing rebelling after the ancestral worship ceremony. Then there was the death of Emperor Zhaoqing. Finally, Prime Minister Shui was accused of colluding with Prince of Dongjing and was imprisoned. The whole court was in turmoil. Yu Shu stayed in Taishi Building to recuperate for more than half a month. When she returned home, she saw the tears of two women. Zhao Hui and Aunt Chui sat in front of her and cried for 2 hours. After this sudden change, the two of them unconsciously became close. Yu Shu could be said to be the pillar of the family. Since the news that she was imprisoned more than 10 days ago, the Yu residence seemed to have collapsed. Zhao Hui touched her from head to toe and said with tears, "Half a month ago, someone from the Celestial Commissioner came to pass a message. They said that you were seriously injured and it was inconvenient to move back home. They also didn't allow us to go to see you. Your mother had a dream that night. She dreamed that you were covered in blood. It was so scary. She was afraid that something bad would happen to you." Aunt Chui nodded in agreement. Yu Xiaoxiu blinked his eyes and looked at her. Yu Shu stretched out her arms and legs for them to see. She smiled and said, "It's not that serious. I just got beaten and couldn't get up. The weather was hot. There was a cool place in the Celestial Commissioner's residence that was suitable for recuperation, so I didn't come back." She wouldn't tell them about her nightmarish experience in the Ministry of Justice's prison for 2 days and 2 nights. It would only make them sad. Thanks to Zhu Qingjue's elixir, although her injury didn't recover, it didn't look serious when she was wearing clothes. At this moment, if Zhao Hui rolled up her sleeves to take a look, it was hard to guarantee that she wouldn't faint from the hole in her arm, not to mention the ugly flesh scar on her forehead. "It's good that you're back, it's good that you're back," Yifangji and Pei Jing said in unison. Yu Shu first comforted them and then asked, "Did anything happen at home while I was away?" She wasn't afraid of anything else, but she was afraid that someone would bully her family because they couldn't take it out on her. Everyone in the room instantly fell silent. Zhao Hui forced a smile and said, it's okay. What can happen? I just feel worried that I can't see you." Yu Shu immediately guessed that something had happened in the Fu when she was not at home, and it was not a small matter. Seeing that the elders were not willing to tell her, she turned her head and waved at Yu Xiaoxiu. "Xiaoxiu, come here. Tell me the truth. What happened to our family?" Yu Xiaoxiu was still young, so he couldn't hide his thoughts. After being coaxed by her, he told her the truth with red eyes. "Sister, after you went out that day, you didn't come back. Godfather and uncle heard the news that you were arrested and put in prison. In order to save you, they begged people everywhere, but they couldn't even see you. Less than 2 days later, a group of soldiers suddenly broke into our house. The fat leader said that you kidnapped his bride and said that they wanted to find her, so they searched the Fu. They couldn't find her, so they took a lot of valuable things at home. Even the birds in the garden were hurt. The most annoying thing was that they bullied several maidservants in the backyard. If I ran and I didn't stop them, Sister Akui would have been dragged away by them." It turned out that during the 2 days when she was put in prison, He Fangji and Pei Jing went out to find a way out. There were a group of old and weak women and children left at home. Zhou Yeda's youngest son, Zhou Nye, came with a group of Jinwu guards to collect debts. They smashed and robbed, and also molested several beautiful maidservants of the Yu mansion. Especially Akui Abe was very beautiful. Zhou Nye had evil thoughts when he saw her and immediately wanted to rob her. There were only 2 men left at home, Yu Xiaoxiu and Bai Ran. At this time they stood up to stop him, so they were inevitably beaten. After hearing this, Yu Shu's face suddenly lit up. Only then did she find that there was a fist-sized bruise on Yu Xiaoxiu's chin near his neck. At first glance, she knew that he was beaten. She narrowed her eyes, held his chin and looked at it and asked, "Where did they hit you?" Yu Xiaoxiu shook his head and said, "I just suffered a few punches, it doesn't matter. Arant's injuries are much more serious than mine. He was stabbed by a knife and is still lying in bed recuperating." Yu Shu frowned. Then she heard He Fangji sighed and said, "That child Bairan is also unyielding." When he saw that he couldn't stop that group of thieves, he hit the leader of the knife and saw blood on the spot. Fortunately, he was clever and knew that he was lying on the ground pretending to be dead. Everyone thought that someone was killed, so they left in a panic. When your uncle and I came back at night, we found the house in a mess. When we heard about it, we were also very angry, but there was nothing we could do. Fortunately, Bairan's injury wasn't very serious. There was a cut on his waist, so I stitched it up. You will be fine after a month of rest. His tone was full of helplessness, while Yu Xiaoxiu looked like he was holding back his grievance. Yu Shu took a deep breath. She didn't get angry, nor did she say anything about revenge. Instead, she apologized, "It's all my fault for being impulsive. I didn't think it through and implicated you." "We are a family, what are you talking about?" Zhao Hui glared at He Fangji. She was dissatisfied with him talking too much just now. She pinched Yu Shu's palm and said softly, "You just came back, don't be too tired. Lie down and rest. I will go to the kitchen and have a look. Tonight I will cook something delicious for you. You see, you have become thin these days and your face doesn't have any color. You really need to nourish yourself." As she spoke, she stood up and tugged at Aunt Shui. He Fangji and Pei Jing were all sent out, leaving only Yu Xiaoxiu to accompany her. Yu Shu lay flat on the bed. Yu Xiaoxiu obediently moved a small stool and sat by the bed. In his hand, he fanned her with a sandalwood fan. After a while, he reached out and gently touched her forehead. In a small voice he asked, "Jia, why do you have a scarf wrapped around your head? Isn't it hot?" Yu Shu didn't push his hand away. She closed her eyes and said, "I have a headache. It's comfortable to wear it." Then she praised him, "Xiaoxiu has grown up. You really are my younger brother. You should be like this. When someone bullies our family, it is useless to hide. You and Bairan can stand out to protect those servant girls. That's what a man should be like." Yu Xiaoxiu embarrassedly scratched his head, but in his heart he was happy. As the two were talking, they suddenly heard a series of GG sounds. Kim Bao came out of nowhere and climbed onto the bed. He rolled to the side of Yu Shu's pillow. He gently wagged his fluffy little tail, as if he was acting like a spoiled child. "GG." Yu Xiaoxiu stretched out his index finger and poked its forehead. He said sourly, "I feed you every day, clean your cage, and when you get into trouble, I have to take a scolding for you. When have I ever seen you so intimate with me? Little white-eyed wolf." Yu Shu didn't need to open her eyes to feel the small softness near her neck. When she heard Yu Xiaoxiu's last scolding, she was slightly absent-minded. In her memory, Shui Rui also helplessly and indulgently said that she was a white-eyed wolf. At that time they weren't together yet. He tried his best to treat her, but she pretended to be stupid. Thinking of the past, her expression softened. She smiled at Yu Xiaoxiu and said, "No matter how good you are to her, it is useless if she doesn't appreciate it. If she has you in her heart, even if you don't see her, she will not forget you." She didn't know whether this "she" was referring to Kim Bao or herself. After chatting for a while, Yu Xiaoxiu started to yawn. He hadn't been able to sleep well these past few days. Seeing this, Yu Shu sent him back to his room to sleep and called a maidservant to serve him. Yun Do brought the desserts that had just been steamed in the kitchen into the room. When she put them down, she heard Yu Shu ask her, "Where is little Kuei?" "She is in the kitchen boiling medicine for Bairan." Yun Do was afraid that she would be angry, so she said a good word for Akiko Abe. "There is no diligent servant in the young master's yard. She is grateful to Bairan for saving him a few days ago, so she took the initiative to do all the work. I just saw her in the kitchen. She just learned that you are back. She said that she brought medicine to Bairan and then came to kowtow to you. How could Yu Shu be angry?" She shook her head and said, "This time you have been wrong because of me. That day little Kuei must have been scared. Thanks to Bairan's wit, she drove away that group of bad people." Yundo's eyes quietly turned red. She lowered her head and said, "We are not wronged. We are just afraid that if something happened to Miss, no one will care about us. It will be fine in the future. This kind of thing will not happen again." Yu Shu lightly promised. She turned her head and asked her to take the key to the money box to take a bag of golden beans. She gave it to the servant in the backyard. She also called Zhou Hu and asked him to follow Yun Do to the warehouse to take out a box of silver ingots. When she went back, she gave 2 ingots to each of the guards who followed her to the prison that day. Lu Hong and Su Qing also had a share. Her marriage with Jing Chen was not successful. The dowry was brought back intact. This saved her a lot of money. At this time she didn't feel bad about giving it away. In addition, the dowry from the princess's mansion and the Ministry of Rights were sent to her mansion. She was going to return it, but later she learned that it was the money from the palace, so she was asked to keep it. If she didn't take it, it would be a waste for her to not take it. Go and check what was lost or damaged in the mansion. Write it down and show it to me, Yu Shu ordered. The next day she got the list and went to the Celestial Commissioner. First, she borrowed a few black-robed guards from the Celestial Commissioner. Then she asked Lu Hong to take her token to the Zongjingxi to pick 20 soldiers and weapons. Finally, she took Wen Xiao and went to the Zhou mansion. Yu Shu's sedan chair arrived at the gate of Zhou Yeda's house. The soldiers arranged themselves. She sat in the sedan chair and didn't move. She let Wen Xiao call the door. 2 days ago the Supreme Court tried Xue Lingnan's case. The Xue family were all convicted. Zhou Yeda became honest and didn't jump up and down to find a sense of existence. The gate of the Zhou mansion was closed during the day. Wen Xiao called several times before someone answered. The black-robed guards had been instructed by Yu Shu in advance. Seeing that the side door was open, they stepped forward and kicked the door open without saying anything. They took out a servant and threw him in front of Wen Xiao. Wen Xiao looked down at the frightened servant and said with a black face, "The Kunling Bureau is here to arrest the criminal Zhou Ye. Quickly go and report." Chapter 790. When Yu Shu came to the door with great fanfare, Zhou Yeda and his family were having lunch in the backyard. Zhou Ye was also there. The steward ran in a panic and explained the situation outside. Zhou Ye was the first to smash his bowl and chopsticks and scolded, "That female Yeksha still dares to come. I think she hasn't had enough food in prison. Father, you don't have to worry about her. I will go out and teach her a lesson." "Sit down." Zhou Yeda scolded him and said with a straight face, "It's all your fault for looking for trouble. You went to her house to make a fuss and caused a death. Aren't you courting death if you go out now?" "Master," Zhou Furen glared at her son and turned her head to Zhou Yeda, "Our son only accidentally injured a servant. Do you want him to pay with his life? In my opinion this Yunuyu is too insensible. She's just a mere 5th-ranked official, yet she dares to come to our residence to seek trouble. Leoa, you should go see her and send her away." Zhou Yeda also felt that Yu Shu was too arrogant. It was true that the Xue family had collapsed, but he, the one surnamed Zhou, still had the merit of becoming a dragon. Why would he be afraid of a little girl? So he hurried forward, taking a few guards with him. When he arrived at the front gate, Zhou Yeda saw the formation outside and immediately recognized the black-robed guards standing in front. He couldn't help but frown and stare at the soft sedan in the middle of the crowd. He stood on the steps and asked in a loud voice, "I wonder what crime my son has committed that requires the Celestial Commissioner to come and arrest him?" No matter what, he was a dignified 3rd-grade commander of the Imperial Guards of Imperial Insignia. For a 5th-grade female official to bring her soldiers to his door and behave atrociously for whatever reason, it was an act of insubordination and overstepping her authority. Yu Shu sat in the sedan and did not speak. When Shaoan walked forward and bowed to Zhou Yeda saying, "Zhou Darren is too polite. My Darren is here today to arrest the criminal Zhou Ye, who forged official marriage documents and married without permission. He is also the 2nd young master of your residence. We are here to enforce the law. I hope that Darren will not make things difficult and quickly call your son out." Zhou Yeda was so angry that he laughed. He looked at him and said, "Who do you think you are? How dare you point fingers at me?" It was the Xue family who forged the official marriage document, so he wasn't afraid of them. Wen Xiao was neither embarrassed nor annoyed. He lowered his head and replied, "I am an administrator of the Kunling Bureau." As soon as he finished speaking, he saw Zhou Yeda raise his leg and kick him in the waist, sending him tumbling over. Young Master Wen immediately rolled down the steps, clutching the spot where he had been kicked and inhaling air, but he didn't scream or yell. A snort came from the sedan chair. A few black-robed guards pulled out their swords and stepped forward, threatening Zhou Yeda. Zhou Yeda knew that the blackguards were not to be trifled with, so he couldn't help but take 2 steps back, letting the guards protect him in the center. He saw the curtain of the sedan lift, revealing half of Yu Shu's pale face, the other half was in the shadows. "Commander Zhou, Are you trying to protect the criminal and obstruct my Kunling Bureau from handling the case? Her voice was low and slow with the femininity of a woman, but her tone wasn't weak at all. It contained a strong sense of warning. Zhou Yeda sneered, when the Kunling Bureau is handling a case, the right commander should personally handle it. You are just a silly little girl. You are just using a chicken feather as a command arrow, but you dare to come to my door and behave atrociously. You have overstepped your authority. Do you believe that I will call the Jinwu guards here right now and put you in prison again? For the sake of the chief commander's face, get out of the sedan chair now, apologize to me, and I can consider letting you go. Otherwise, don't even think about leaving today. As he spoke, he took the token and sent someone to summon the Jinwu guards from the nearby barracks. Half of it was to scare Yushu, and the other half was to prevent the soldiers outside from colliding. Yushu's hand rested on the windowsill, her slender index finger slowly tapping. She didn't stop them, nor did she show weakness. She waited for Zhou Yeda to send someone over. She sat quietly in the sedan chair and waited. After about the time it took to eat a meal, the servants of the Zhou residence came back with a group of guards. The number of people was more than twice the number of soldiers that Yushu had brought. There were about 40 to 50 people. Zhou Yeda suddenly had confidence and was no longer afraid of the blackguard. He raised 2 fingers and pointed at Yushu in the sedan chair. He said sternly, I will count to 3. If you don't get out by then, don't blame me for being impolite. 3. After the count of 3, Yushu's sedan chair was still in place. Zhou Yeda couldn't back down. Even though he didn't want to make a big deal out of this, if he let her go like this, everyone would think that he was a coward who was afraid of the Celestial Commissioner. If he couldn't even deal with a woman, how could he stay in the officialdom? The Crown Prince was about to ascend the throne, how could he have the face to climb up? Emperor Qing had passed away and his body had to be sent back to the capital. It had to be laid in the palace for 49 days before being sent to the imperial mausoleum for burial. The Crown Prince had to mourn for 3 months before he could ascend the throne. Historically, a new emperor brought a new court. This meant that the position of the Celestial Commissioner's chief commander would be replaced in at most 3 months. Thinking about it this way, the chief commander, who was not far from leaving his position, was no different from a tiger with its teeth pulled out. He didn't need to be as timid as he was in the past. Zhou Yeda thought about it further and his expression became more and more unfriendly. He immediately ordered, take them all down and escort them to the Celestial Commissioner. Today I will seek justice from the chief commander. With this order, the Jinwu guards, who were used to obeying orders, rushed forward without hesitation. The officials brought by Yushu didn't resist and obediently allowed themselves to be captured. The black-robed guards didn't do anything at all. They just guarded the sedan chair and didn't let anyone get close. But Zhou Yeda thought that Yushu was afraid and after gaining the upper hand, she forced them to turn the sedan chair around. He immediately ordered the servants to bring the horses and escorted the group of people to the Imperial Astronomer's office. He led the group to the gate of the Celestial Commissioner and was stopped by the guards at the side of the gate. Zhou Yeda didn't force his way in. He dismounted and said, send someone in to inform the chief commander that the Jinwu guards, Zhou Yeda, is here to punish you. There was no turning back. With the scorching sun over his head, he looked up at the tall plaque of the Celestial Commissioner. Surprisingly, he didn't feel any fear. If this was half a month ago and the old emperor was still alive, he didn't believe that he would be able to stand at the gate of the Celestial Commissioner and curse. After waiting for a moment, the main gate of the Celestial Commissioner was slowly pushed open from the inside. Zhu Muzhao, who was wearing a plain mourning, walked out of the gate. Only Rin Qiming and 2 armed guards followed behind him. He walked slowly to the sun and looked around the gate that was blocked by the Jinwu guards. His eyes fell on Zhou Yeda, who looked like he was going to punish him. He said coldly, Commander Zhou, why are you shouting in front of the Celestial Commissioner's gate? Zhou Yeda swallowed his saliva and tried his best to keep a straight face. He hurriedly bowed to him and stood up to complain, Chief Commander, you may not know this. This morning, a female imperial official from the Kunling Bureau brought her soldiers to my mansion to pick a fight. She slandered my son as a criminal. Without any evidence, she insisted on arresting him. May I ask, Chief Commander, is this how the Celestial Commissioner allows her subordinates to handle the case? He had already thought it through. If the Chief Commander was covering up for Yushu, he would make a scene in front of the Crown Prince and let the Crown Prince see how arrogant the Celestial Commissioner was. He didn't believe that the Chief Commander could cover up the truth with one hand. Zhu Muzhao didn't respond to his words and asked to the side, Lian Feng, you speak. Zhou Yeta turned his head and saw that Yu Shu had gotten off the sedan chair at some point. Her hair was disheveled and there was a scarf tied around her forehead. Her loose robe made her look skinny, as if a gust of wind could blow her over. Replying to Grand Secretary, Yu Shu replied unhurriedly, "Previously, the young miss of the rebellious official Shuelingnan's residence and Commander Zhou's son were engaged. The official marriage document that Commander Zhou took out that day was forged. It was a brush supervisor of my Kunling Bureau who was bribed and stole the previous Reich commander's seal to issue the document." She glanced at Zhou Yeta and said, "That brush supervisor who stole the seal has already admitted that he was first threatened by Shuelingnan and then received a bribe of 500 taels from Zhounie. The law states that forging an official marriage document is an additional crime compared to adultery without a matchmaker. Both the man and the woman should be arrested. The light punishment is 30 strokes of the stick. The heavy punishment is that the man will have to serve and the woman will be sent to a nunnery to cultivate. I acted according to the law and went to arrest Zhounie today. What crime did I commit? On the contrary, Commander Zhou was unforgiving and sent the Jin Wu guards to arrest me. He looked down on the Celestial Commissioner and publicly used force during the period of national mourning. Such treason and heresy should be punished with death." What was a national mourning? It was when the Emperor and Empress held a funeral and the entire country mourned. Marriages, banquets, and wars were forbidden. Inside and outside the capital, even the military camps stopped training. Fighting and using force were even more forbidden within the city. Zhou Yeta's expression changed slightly when a big hat was put on his head. He rushed to say, "It was clearly you who offended your superior and overstepped your authority first. How can you blame me for using force without authorization? Don't you know that the Jinwu guards are the imperial army of the capital and have the right to enforce the law?" Yu Shu shook her head and turned to Zhu Muzhao, saying, "The Grand Secretary has heard it. This lowly official has nothing to say against Commander Zhou's sophistry. I hope you can make the decision." Zhu Muzhao looked coldly at the self-righteous Zhou Yeta and waved his hand. A group of Yulin royal guards in light armor suddenly rushed out from the opposite street corner. There were about 100 of them and they surrounded the Jin Wu guards outside the Celestial Commissioner's door. Zhou Yeta turned pale with fright. He turned to look around and saw the left commander of the Yulin royal guards, Yin Yuanrong, standing out like a crane among chickens. Yin Yuanrong rode on a horse and passed through the parted crowd. He stopped a few steps away and lowered his head to look at Zhou Yeta. He raised his eyebrows slightly and teased, "I have long heard that the Jin Wu guards are tyrannical. Now that I have finally seen them, they really live up to their reputation." Although the Yulin royal guards and the Jin Wu guards were both part of the imperial army, the former was the emperor's personal guard. Their military strength was more than twice that of the Jin Wu guards and their authority was even higher than the Jin Wu guards. The two groups of people usually did not see eye to eye with each other. Some time ago, Zhou Yeta defected to the crown prince and even the Jin Wu guards became arrogant. Yin Yuanrong had been swallowing his anger these days and had long wanted to teach them a lesson. Zhou Yeta forced himself to be calm and questioned him, "Yin Yuanrong, what are you trying to do?" Yin Yuanrong sneered, "I am on duty today and happened to pass by here. I saw someone abusing his military power during the national mourning period and threatening the Celestial Commissioner. What do you think I am trying to do? Yulin royal guards, listen to my order. Capture all these rebels and bring them away." Seeing the Yulin royal guards swarming forward, the Jin Wu guards were no match for them. In the blink of an eye, more than a dozen of them were taken down. Zhou Yeta did not have time to escape and was kicked down by Yin Yuanrong. He rolled on the ground twice and just happened to be lying at the feet of Yu Shu. Lu Hong and Su Qing, who were guarding behind her, pressed down on his shoulders. He was completely stunned. This scene was so familiar. More than half a month ago, this was how Yu Shu was lured to the gates of the Zhou residence and was caught like a turtle in a jar. Yu Shu lifted the hem of her robe and squatted in front of Zhou Yeta. She lowered her eyes and looked down at him. In a gentle and slow voice she said, "I forgot to inform Commander Zhou that I am now the right commander of the Kunling Bureau. You are of the 3rd rank and I am also of the 3rd rank. How can I be insubordinate and overstep my authority?" After being hit on the head, Zhou Yeta finally came to his senses. He had fallen into a trap and would most likely not be able to return today. Cold sweat broke out and he struggled with all his might to shout, "Yin Yunrong, you and the Celestial Commissioner colluded to frame me. I want to see the Crown Prince. I want to sue you for forming a clique to eradicate dissidents. I want to see the Crown Prince." Yin Yuanrong ignored him and directly had someone stuff a sweat towel into his mouth to stop him from talking nonsense. Lu Hong and Su Qing picked Zhou Yeta up from the ground. Shu brushed the dust off Zhou Yeda's shoulder and said softly, "Have a safe journey, Commander Zhou. When we meet again in the future, you must remember to be more polite to me. I'm not the kind of person who likes to hold grudges." After saying this, she stepped aside and handed him over to the Yulin royal guards. She walked back behind Zhu Muzhao. Ren Qiming glanced at her with a complicated gaze and then looked at the carefree De Tiao. He knew that the other had already made a decision and could only sigh at his bad luck. Yin Yuanrong took Zhou Yeda away while Zhu Muzhao took Yu Shu into the palace to see the crown prince. A little later, the crown prince listened to him narrate the process of Zhou Yeda abusing his military power. He didn't even frown as he said, "This one has heard more than once that Zhou Yeda is arrogant. Earlier, he suppressed the rebellion of Ning Wang's subordinates and thought that he had made a great contribution. He became even more disgraceful and dared to lead troops to surround the Celestial Commissioner. Fu Wang's corpse hasn't even turned cold yet and he has such rebellious behavior. He really deserves to be killed. Pass on this one's decree to remove Zhou Yeda from his position as the commander of the Jinwu Guards and send him to the Supreme Court to be imprisoned. He will be punished after Fu Huang's burial." Zhou Yeda being removed from his position meant that the position of commander of the Jinwu Guards was now empty. The crown prince could have sent a more obedient person to fill it. He didn't need to act personally to take care of a troublemaker who was proud of his achievements. Killing a chicken to warn the monkey would not bring about a bad reputation. Why not? Yu Shu was used to seeing the crown prince kill the donkey when it was no longer of use. She didn't feel any sympathy for the death of the rabbit. Zhu Muzhao had long set an example for her. What she was going to walk in the future was the dead end of being a puppet of imperial power. "Many thanks to Your Highness the Crown Prince for helping this subject." Zhu Muzhao respectfully thanked the Crown Prince. He turned to the side to reveal Yu Shu behind him. He said, "Previously, Lian Feng was meritorious in exposing the Xue family. This subject has made an exception to promote her to the position of Right Commander of the Celestial Commissioner, in charge of the matters of Kunling Bureau." He was reporting to the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince's gaze turned to Yu Shu. He first noticed her snow-white complexion and then saw the scarf on her head. He remembered her other identity and asked in an unusually gentle tone, "Have your injuries not healed yet?" Yu Shu touched her forehead and answered, "Replying to Your Highness, this subject suffered a disaster earlier and left a scar on my face. I was afraid that I would startle you, so I used this to cover my disgrace." The Crown Prince suspiciously reached out to touch her forehead. "Let me see." Yu Shu's fingers trembled, but she didn't stop him. She let him take off the scarf. Seeing his shocked expression as he stared at her forehead, she quickly lowered her head. The Crown Prince was stunned for a moment before he moved his gaze from her face to the side. He thought it was a pity, but he comforted her. "It doesn't matter. I saw that the scar is between your eyebrows. If I didn't look carefully, it would look like a flower that was deliberately drawn between your eyebrows. You don't have to care too much about other people's opinions." Zhu Muzhao heard this and looked at Yu Shu's forehead. He felt that the Crown Prince wasn't lying. Her half-inch-long scar was between her eyebrows. The scar was dark red and was a long and thin diamond shape. It didn't look ugly, but it looked out of place. "Thank you, Your Highness," Yu Shu softly said. The Crown Prince handed the scarf to her, but she didn't tie it back. Instead, she revealed the scar until she followed the Grand Commissioner out of the palace. The two of them walked on the official road outside the Meridian Gate and whispered to each other. "This time, the Crown Prince won't have the idea of taking you into the harem." Yu Shu touched the bump between her eyebrows and smiled. "The Crown Prince wants to imitate the Holy Ancestor. Unfortunately, I'm a disfigured person. The harem can't accommodate me." Chapter 791. The short 3-month national mourning was only a few days for the common people, but for the officials in the court, a day felt like a year. In June, the once illustrious Xue family was convicted. For the sake of noble consort Xue, the Crown Prince gave them a way out and didn't execute their entire family. After the confiscation, Xue Lingnan was imprisoned in the heavenly prison. The rest of the male members of the Xue family were banished to the army. The female members of the family were sent to the clean water nunnery on Mount Amei to shave their hair and become nuns. The housekeepers and servants were sent to the House of Offerings to be sold. In early July, Emperor Zhaoqing was buried in the imperial mausoleum. Crown Prince Lu Tan proclaimed himself emperor and dismissed the former emperor's harem. The former Empress Rui Shi became the Empress Dowager and moved into the Palace of Compassionate and Peaceful. Her birth mother Shui became the Empress Dowager of the West and was granted a residence in Ziwei Palace. The ascension ceremony was scheduled to be held in September. On the first day of the new emperor's reign, Grand Tutor Yin took the initiative to hand over the military seal in his hands, requesting to retire. The new emperor was grateful for his hard work and contributions. Although he took over his military power, he did not allow him to leave the capital and return home. Instead, he was conferred the title of Marquis Rong-en, allowing him to retire in the capital. He did not blame the Yin family because of Ning Wang's earlier struggle for power. This action earned the new emperor a reputation of benevolence. Emperor Zhaoqing left behind many children. The older ones like Lu Si and Lu Du were conferred the title of prefectural prince and were given the title of feudal official. The younger ones, Lu Chan and Lu Qi, were given royal residences in Anling City and moved out of the palace. In the 8th month of the Mid-Autumn Festival, the emperor was about to leave the country for his funeral. The new emperor went out of the palace to make a private visit, but he encountered an assassin in the marketplace. Fortunately, the Celestial Commissioner had foreseen this disaster. The bodyguards hidden in the dark caught the assassin on the spot and sent him to the Ministry of Penalty for interrogation. The next day he confessed that it was the Prince of Xiang who instigated it. Soon after, someone exposed that the Prince of Xiang was raising assassins in the courtyard. The Yulin Royal Guards led troops to investigate and unexpectedly found a large amount of weapons and gunpowder. It was like poking a hornet's nest, causing many officials to fall from their positions. Duke Xiang was taken away by the Yulin Royal Guards at the Dinghua Hall and sent to the imperial court to be locked up. Under the Celestial Commissioner office was the Clan Administrative Department, which was in charge of the royal family's genealogy, salary, rewards and punishments, sacrifices and other affairs. This place had always been a place where the relatives of the royal family would tremble in fear at the mere mention of it. Countless descendants of the royal family had gone there and never returned. From the moment Prince Xiang was captured to the time he was locked up, he only said one sentence: "I want to see the great advisor." The next afternoon, Zhu Muzhao brought Yu Shu to the clan official prison and saw Prince Xiang, who was at the end of his rope. The prison cell that had been used to detain many important people was very spacious. There were beds and chairs and there was even a tea set on the table. The bucket at the corner of the wall was washed by the prison guards every day. Even so, to Prince Xiang, who was used to living in luxury, it was still too simple and crude. In just one night, he looked haggard, but his demeanor was undamaged. When they came in, he was sitting at the table making tea. The water was boiled by the jailer from the well, and the tea leaves were ordinary biluakan. His hands were very steady. When he heard their footsteps, he looked up and saw Zhu Muzhao standing outside the cell door. He did not show any sign of bitterness or hatred. "Did Prince sleep well last night?" Zhu Muzhao took the initiative to greet him. Even though the evidence of Prince Xiang's treason was conclusive, he did not show any signs of neglect. Prince Xiang smiled faintly and told him the truth: "Slightly hot and stuffy, I did not sleep well." Yu Shu stood silently at one side. She knew that there was no room for her to interfere in the game between the two of them. She was only here today to be a witness, to witness this man who was once one step away from the throne. How did he endure until today? Zhu Muzhao asked the jailer to open the cell door and walked in alone. He sat opposite Prince Xiang and picked up the tea that he had just brewed. He lowered his head and sniffed. His eyes squinted from the smell of the tea and he praised, "Prince Xiang is still the same. No matter what you do, you are always meticulous." Prince Xiang said self-deprecatingly, "It is a pity that no matter how hard I work and how hard I try, I will not be able to get what I should not get." 20 years ago he originally thought that the throne should be his. Even though Emperor Zhaoqing was older than him, he was mediocre in nature and did not have his talents nor his reputation. But in the end, Imperial Father passed the throne to his mediocre elder brother and betrothed the girl he liked to someone else. Why is Prince Xiang doing this? Zhu Muzhao advised kindly, "Isn't it good to know your place and be an idle prince? His Majesty feels that he owes you and has never wronged you all these years. You used the Ministry of Provision to raise spies and manipulated the merchants to amass wealth. Do you think that His Majesty does not know about it? He only did not want to fight with your brother, so he turned a blind eye to it. Who said that Emperor Zhaoqing was muddle-headed? No matter how lacking he was, he could not be compared to the previous emperors who would go down in history, but he had one thing that surpassed Prince Xiang, and that was that he had a magnanimous heart." Prince Xiang became silent and gripped the teacup in his hand tightly. Scenes of the past flashed through his mind, but he had no words to refute his words. Because his imperial brother was indeed magnanimous towards him. He was not willing to become a vassal state, so he granted him the prince's residence to stay in the capital. He opened the Ministry of Provision and was allowed to buy and sell sinful slaves. He loved to have fun, so he built the Dingbo Hall for him to have fun every night. It was not that he did not have feelings for all these, but he just could not swallow it and was not willing to be a carefree, idle prince. The winner is the king and the loser is the thief. I have nothing to regret. Prince Xiang shook his head and smiled bitterly. I did not lose to my imperial brother, nor did I lose to Lu Tan. I lost to the Celestial Commissioner and lost to that volume of the Book of Mysterious Maiden Lu Ren. As he said that, he suddenly asked, "How is my imperial nephew going to deal with me?" Zhu Muzhao's eyes flashed and he said in a low voice, "His Majesty is not as benevolent as the late emperor." Prince Xiang instantly understood that the new emperor would not let him live. However, his expression was calm and he did not panic. He turned his head and looked at Yushu, who was standing outside the door. A sly smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He leaned forward slightly and whispered to Zhu Muzhao, "With only the Book of Mysterious Maiden Lu Ren and no Destiny Tai Bone, can the Celestial Commissioner really stand tall and not fall?" Zhu Muzhao furrowed his brows suddenly. "There is no need to be so surprised. The secrets that Shui Lingnan knows were all leaked to him by me." Prince Xiang blinked his eyes and said happily, "Tell me, how can I not leave a way out for myself?" Zhu Muzhao looked at him in disbelief and realized that he had always underestimated the man in front of him. "You have been in charge of the Celestial Commissioner for so many years and know so many secrets. Have you thought about it carefully? Since the Destiny Tai Bone was born from the Great and Disaster and the Fate Breaker, then at the beginning of the country, Empress Ningzhen had the Book of Mysterious Maiden Lu Ren. Where did she get the Destiny Tai Bone?" Zhu Muzhao's expression became solemn. He had thought of this question long ago, but he had never been able to dig out the truth. "Haha, let me tell you. The Destiny Tai Bone in Empress Ningzhen's hands is the combination of her and Emperor Anwu's blood. Did you not realize that the two great and disasters were men with the blood of the imperial family, and the Fate Breaker was an extraordinary woman who was like Empress Ningzhen? Do you believe it? It doesn't have to be the great and calamity and the Fate Breaker to be able to give birth to the Destiny Grand Bone. If we can find the bloodline of the previous Fate Breaker and make peace with the descendants of the imperial family, we might not be able to give birth to a perfect Destiny Grand Bone, but it might have a similar effect." After listening to Prince Xiang's words, Zhu Muzhao's heart was like a stone thrown into a calm lake rippling. He restrained himself and waited for Prince Xiang to unravel the mystery. 100 years ago, the Fate Breaker was the female general Gong Sun Jing. She had a son with Prince Yuan Zheng, and he fell into the hands of the Celestial Commissioner. Later, Gong Sun Jing died and Prince Yuan Zheng disappeared. The entire Gong Sun family was executed, and only Gong Sun Jing's younger brother escaped. He was sent out of the capital by a loyal servant, and lived in seclusion. I have spent a lot of manpower over the years, and finally found the descendant of the Gong Sun family. Duke Xiang slowly got up and walked to the back of Zhu Muzhao. He leaned over and whispered into his ear, "I picked a girl who has the blood of the Life Destroyer and let her give birth to my imperial brother's flesh and blood. Do you want that child?" Zhu Muzhao suddenly opened his eyes and turned his head, his sharp gaze piercing the person behind him. Prince Xiang raised his hand and pressed on his shoulder and said in a light tone, "You should know that what I said is the truth. I can give that girl and the child to you, but you have to promise me something first." "What do you want?" Zhu Muzhao asked without thinking and did not laugh at his fantasy. "What if what I want is the throne?" "Impossible." "Ah, I am joking with you. What I want is a way to live. I believe you have a way to hide from my imperial nephew's eyes and ears, and send my family of 3 far away from the capital." Zhu Muzhao closed his eyes and thought for a moment. He nodded slightly and considered to have agreed to his request. Prince Xiang relaxed and sat back down and raised the teapot to refill his cup. Zhu Muzhao was not in the mood to stay and taste the tea. He looked deeply at him and left. Yushu stood outside the prison cell and waited for him to come out. She followed and returned to Tai Shilu without a word. Taishu really wants to let Prince Xiang leave the capital? She had heard it clearly from outside the prison cell. Prince Xiang could be said to not judge a book by its cover. He knew the secrets of the Da dynasty better than the emperor. He had eyes and ears but did not succeed in his rebellion. It could only be said that he was a bit unlucky. If what he said is true, then what's the harm in letting him go? Zhu Muzhao's emotions were not as calm as he appeared. Even if the Destiny Grand Bone that Prince Xiang had created in his wildest dreams might not be useful, he still had to obtain it. Prince Xiang is not a problem. Zhu Muzhao rubbed the space between his brows, his face showing tiredness. I am worried about Prince Dongjing. According to my divination, the war in the north is coming. After the mourning of the country, Jiang Huaying will make a move. He has 200,000 men under him. If they all move out, with the help of Yun Hua and the left auxiliary star, the rebel army will attack the capital one day. The emperor is still too young. Even with the help of the Celestial Commissioner, he may not be able to suppress Prince Dongjing. He raised his head to look at Yushu and solemnly said to her, I will not force you to find Jing Qin, but if you have the chance you must get the Fairy Maiden Lu Ren book. You must always remember, Celestial Commissioner lives and dies with Da, and Yushu knelt by his feet. I will not disappoint you. Zhu Muzhao nodded, his tired body leaning against the back of the chair. Go, I will rest for a while. Yushu nodded, excused herself and walked out of Supreme Dawn Tower. She stood alone on the Nine Turns Bridge that was shrouded in mist, narrowing her eyes as she gazed at the red sun setting in the west. The sunset glow reflected on her face, rendering the cinnabar mark between her eyebrows bright red and enchanting. At the beginning of the 9th month, the new emperor ascended the throne. In the same year he changed his title to Chongzhen, and the empress was Xiajiang. After the coronation, Emperor Chongzhen granted amnesty to the world, amended the 32 laws, reduced corvée and taxes and implemented benevolent policies. The next month, the Celestial Commissioner Zhu Muzhao resigned from his position and recommended the right commander Yushu to take over. Emperor Chongzhen approved. In the 13th year of Zhao Qing, the female oracle Yushu became the youngest great commissioner in the history of Daen and was recorded in the annals of history. Almost at the same time, an urgent report came from the north, saying that Prince Dongjing had formed his own army in Ningdong City, separated the 5 counties in the northeast, and proclaimed himself as the Great Yan. Since the founding of the divine ancestor, peace had been maintained for 300 years, and the Yan dynasty was divided. After that, the Great Yan dynasty and the Great Yan fought against each other, and the war lasted for 3 years. In the 4th year of Emperor Chongzhen, the soldiers of Daen were defeated on the battlefield, and 100,000 Yan soldiers knocked on the gate of Baoding Prefecture, and with irresistible force, they arrived at the capital. Within the Celestial Commissioner, in the afterglow of the setting sun, a few Celestial Commissioners ran to the 9 zigzag bridge in a panic, and came to the door of the Taishi Tower, but were stopped by the guards. They were so anxious that they were sweating profusely and could only shout outside the door. The rebel army has reached the outskirts of Enling City, and His Majesty refused to leave the capital to seek refuge. He brought 3,000 imperial guards and personally went to the gate of Sky Bearing. The bamboo curtain on the door was lifted, and 2 pretty maids dressed in white walked out with their heads bowed. The people waiting outside the door made way for them, unconsciously revealing looks of awe and respect in their eyes. A moment later, a wisp of purple smoke leaped into view. Layers of clothes fluttered on the ground, and the rings on her waist jingled. A slender and tall figure slowly walked out of the Taishi Tower. Did you find out who the commander of the Yan army outside the city is? Immediately someone came forward and answered, it is said that it is the sworn brother of the Yan Emperor, Prince of Chongping Lu Shining. He is known as the #1 military advisor of the Great Yan, and rumor has it that he is an expert in military strategy, and he is the son of the imperial advisor of the Great Yan, Lu Yan. Imperial Secretary, I'm afraid that His Majesty will be in danger this time. It is chaotic outside, and many officials in the capital have packed their belongings and are preparing to flee for their lives. What should we do now? The setting sun was glaring and Yushu closed her eyes. She could hear her own strong heartbeat and she took a deep breath. Where are the black-robed guards? As soon as she finished speaking, a few black-robed guards appeared from both sides of the Taishi Tower, and they knelt down with their swords. Your subordinates are here. Quickly gather the troops of the Celestial Commissioner, and follow me to the gate of Sky Bearing to save His Majesty. 2 hours later, Yushu led 500 elites from the Imperial Astronomer to the gate of Sky Bearing, but they were too late. Emperor Chongzhen had already been captured alive by the Yan army, and the city gates had been breached by the cannons. The pungent smell of gunpowder filled the air. The Yan army had occupied the city gates, and a large number of them swarmed into the city. There were still many defeated soldiers who were putting up a futile resistance. The 200 black-robed guards led the charge, and the closer they got to the city gate, the faster Yushu's heart beat. Just when she thought that there was no end to the road, the horse carriage suddenly stopped, and the sounds of fighting stopped. A loud voice could be heard. Who are you? Report your name. If she were to open the curtains, she would be able to see two black cannons pointing at the direction of her horse carriage. If they were to take another step forward, they would be blown into pieces. Yu Shu sat in the carriage without moving and replied in a clear voice, "The Celestial Commissioner of the Dan dynasty has given me some advice." The surroundings suddenly quietened down, and Yu Shu waited quietly. She suddenly felt a little anxious, and not long after, there was a commotion on top of the city gate. She straightened her back and heard a deep and powerful male voice coming from the sky, piercing through her eardrums. "Is the Celestial Commissioner giving me some advice? I am Prince Chongping Lu Shining." Yu Shu's hands trembled as she pushed open the two doors and looked up. In the dusk, the city gate was crowded with people, but there was a man dressed in bright armor. He took off his hat and looked down. His bright black eyes pierced through the sea of people and stared straight at her. His lips opened and closed and no sound came out, but she could read what he was saying. Chapter 792. Friendly note. This is a flashback starting from after Yu Shu was promoted to the right commander. Those who don't like the fake ending of the previous chapter can ignore the previous chapter and start from this one. There are at least 50,000 words in this chapter, and it will explain the hidden lines clearly. That's it, moi. After Jing Qin ran away from the marriage, the position of the right commander of the Celestial Commissioner was once again vacant. This position seemed to be cursed, no one could hold it for long. Before Jing Qin, the right commander was Lady Lu from one of the 12 prefectures. Less than 3 months after she took office, she was transferred to the Taisher Library to teach because she was involved in the struggle of the harem. The previous one also resigned after a few days. Even so, this vacancy was enough to make a group of people fight over it, especially those from the 12 prefectures who didn't have anyone in the Celestial Commissioner. Whether it was asking for favors or spending money, they didn't hesitate at all, wishing they could put down their pride and run to the Great Commissioner to recommend themselves. In the end, it was all in vain. Amidst the bad news of Emperor Zhaoqing's death and the uproar of the Shui family's collusion with the Prince of Dongjing's rebellion, the prefect quietly promoted the female imperial officer of the Kunling Bureau to take over the position of right commander. Many people, including those in the Directorate of Celestials, were rather dissatisfied with the appointment of the great supervisor. It was none other than because Yu Shu had climbed up too fast. Zhaoqing was a female oracle for 13 years, and in just 2 years she became a high-ranking Celestial Commissioner official. This kind of promotion speed was unbelievably fast. But thinking about it carefully, other than being young and inexperienced, people were surprised to find that they couldn't find any other fault with her. First of all, she was a female oracle who came out of the Dian examination, a once-in-a-decade double role. Moreover, she was once a guest at the Double Sons meeting on the day the Crown Prince entered the palace, and helped the Crown Prince gain power, which could be considered as a merit. Moreover, she was the Miaoling female envoy who was bestowed a title by Emperor Zhaoqing when he was alive. Finally, there was a major event that happened recently. She was an important witness who had exposed the treacherous Prime Minister Xuelingnan's various crimes. Moreover, she had rendered meritorious service and should have been rewarded. With this argument, the officials and aristocratic families who were originally dissatisfied with Yu Shu's promotion to the right commander became mute. No matter what other people thought of her promotion, Yu Shu did not feel guilty at all. When she was still a female official, she had shouldered all the responsibilities of the Kunling Bureau. Now she was just officially taking over. On the second day after receiving the letter of appointment, she used lightning speed to lure the commander of the Jinwu Guards, Zhou Yeta, to the door of the Celestial Commissioner's office, catching a turtle in a jar and giving him a taste of his own medicine. The Crown Prince had long wanted to punish Zhou Yeta as an example to others, and it was a good match for her. Zhou Yeta had only been in the Supreme Court for 3 days, and he had been exposed to a pile of scandals and evil deeds that could not see the light of day. Every one of them was enough to dismiss him from his post and investigate him. In the beginning he had relied on Xuelingnan to build his family business. Now that the entire Shui family had collapsed, people would give a push to a wall when it was down. How could he be alone? The Zhou family had met with misfortune. When the Supreme Court sent the news that Zhou Yeta had been dismissed from his post and investigated, it was as if the sky had fallen for the family. Misfortune never came alone. Just as Zhou Yeta was in prison, several officials from the Kunling Bureau came to arrest Zhou Nye. Madame Zhou cried her heart out and refused to hand over Zhou Nye. Unfortunately, there were no Jinwu guards to stop them this time. The officials directly entered the Zhou mansion to search for Zhou Nye. They caught Zhou Nye at the back door and brought him back to the Kunling Bureau. Reporting to the right commander, the criminal Zhou Nye has been brought here. Yu Shu's office and study had been moved upstairs. The entire second floor was dedicated to her use. The place was not only more spacious than before, but the view from the window was better and the environment was quieter. Wen Xiao and replaced Ren Renjia's position that had been stolen previously. Now he was a 6th-ranked official. As for the position of the female imperial official, it was vacant. Although the Great Commissioner had asked Yu Shu to recommend someone, she had not thought of a suitable candidate. When Yu Shu heard that Zhou Nye had been arrested, she did not get up to see. Coincidentally, Wen Xiao and was in front of her. She flipped through the table and found the crime report that she had previously written. She handed it to him and said, "Make a trip and send this person to the Ministry of Justice. Help me tell Zheng Darren that he must be severely punished." Yes, this official will do it now. Wen Xiao and put down the things in his hands and first followed Yu Shu's instructions. The Celestial Commissioner had 3 departments and 2 bureaus. Only the Imperial Commissioner had his own prison. The Kunling Bureau did not have a place to detain criminals. He could only be sent to the Ministry of Justice to be punished. The Ministry of Justice was no longer under Shueling Nan's control. The Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Justice, Zheng Minji, was the Great Commissioner, so it was not difficult to ask him for a small favor. As a result, the unlucky Zhou Nye was dragged all the way to the Celestial Commissioner on such a hot day. He fainted twice and was just woken up by a basin of cold water when he was dragged away again. That day he led the troops to break into the Yu residence's backyard and bullied the women. He robbed them of their wealth and injured them. Who would have thought that retribution would come so quickly? Wen Xiao and sent Zhou Nye to the Ministry of Justice. Zheng Minji gave him face and ordered his subordinates to give him 30 strokes of the board before throwing him into a cell. The jailer understood the intentions of the higher-ups and gave him a smelly and dirty cell. He was not even allowed to drink water and was tormented until he was hovering between life and death. He was locked up for half a month. The Zhou family sent people over several times, but they didn't even see his face. They didn't know whether he was dead or alive. Madame Zhou and the eldest young master of the Zhou family bitterly begged but couldn't find a way out. They ran into walls everywhere. Finally, it was an elder of the Zhou family who pointed them in the right direction and told them to go beg Yu Shu. Madame Zhou hated Yu Shu, the main culprit, but for the sake of her youngest son, she had no choice but to carefully prepare a cart full of gifts and go with her eldest son to the Yu residence to apologize. In the end, Yu Shu didn't even show her face. She only asked the gatekeeper to accept their gifts and had Zhou Hu bring a list of items to give to Madame Zhou. These were the items that Zhou Nye had destroyed and taken away on the day he led the troops into the Yu residence. There were a lot of rare things that were given by Shui Rui. For example, there was a pair of jadeite glass bottles that were half the height of a person in front of the entrance to the reception pavilion in the front courtyard. They couldn't be bought outside. Madame Zhou looked at the list and went back dizzily. She returned 2 days later and this time she brought another cart full of things. Some of the items were returned to the original owners, while the other part was painfully subsidized by her. If she really couldn't find or buy anything, she simply used money to make up for the missing items. Zhou Hu took people to count the number and then went to the rear courtyard to report to Yu Shu. When he returned, he brought a message to Madame Zhou. "My master said that your family's second young master originally committed a crime and should have been sent to serve in the hardship areas. Being locked up for 2 months is already a light punishment. You should go home and wait. When the time comes, the Ministry of Justice will naturally release him." This meant that the Zhou family didn't intend to make an exception at all. This time, the Zhou family's apology was for nothing. Madame Zhou was so angry that her whole body trembled. If it weren't for the timid eldest young master Zhou holding her back, she would have caused a scene on the spot. The mother and son were asked to leave the Yu residence. Sitting in the carriage on the way home, Madame Zhou looked at her timid eldest son. When she thought of her husband and youngest son who were still in prison, she couldn't help but wail. Emperor Anwu's body had been resting in the palace for 49 days. Every few days, officials of the 5th rank and above had to enter the palace to cry. There was no lack of people who, in order to show their loyalty, went to the palace every day to cry. After Yu Shu's injuries healed, she followed Zhu Muzhao to the palace. In the dog days of summer, the sun was scorching hot, but everywhere in the palace was snow white. Outside the palace, there was a crowd of people kneeling. Some were howling, some were sobbing, some were mumbling, and some were shaking their shoulders and wiping their tears. The atmosphere was heavy and sorrowful, but it was unknown how many people were truly sad. Amidst the rising and falling sounds of crying from time to time, there would be low cries of, "So and so official has fainted." Then eunuchs would run over and help the person down to rest. Yushu felt that this was a very good move. If she really couldn't cry anymore, she could pretend to faint. It was better than actually fainting from the sun. Zhu Muzhao brought her into the palace and kowtowed a few times in front of the tall coffin. Then he went to the side hall to see the crown prince. Yushu secretly rejoiced that Zhu Muzhao wasn't a pretentious person. Otherwise, if he really wanted her to cry, she could only rub chili powder into her eyes. The crown prince had to keep watch over the coffin and learn how to handle court politics, so he had moved all the memorials for the past few months to the side hall. As the Grand Tutor, Yin Tianho would enter the palace every day to give him pointers on national politics. Although he was Ning Wang's maternal grandfather, he didn't hide anything from the crown prince. He taught him everything he could and never used his position as the Qing Emperor's Grand Tutor to suppress the crown prince. Thus, at least on the surface, the crown prince treated Yin Tianho with great respect. "You've come at the right time. I was just talking with the Grand Tutor about the Wuxia bandits. There are some areas that I don't understand and need your opinion." The crown prince was slightly closer to Zhu Muzhao and less respectful. It was probably because he wasn't far from becoming emperor. He exuded a confident aura that made Yushu unable to remember the quiet ninth prince of the past. The crown prince saw that Yushu was also present and didn't hurry to speak of proper matters. He smiled slightly at her and his gaze flashed across the scarf on her forehead. "The crown princess has been grieving too much and has not been well these past few days. Since you have come, why don't you go to the Eastern Palace to keep her company and help me console her?" He called over a chief eunuch and had him take her to the Eastern Palace. Before Emperor Zhaoqing's burial, the Hogong had not been dismissed. The crown prince still lived in the Eastern Palace. He was a progressive person and didn't lust after women. In the Eastern Palace, other than Xia Jiangmin the crown princess, there was only the crown princes Liangdi, Rui Zizhu and Mei Baolin. Rui Zizhu didn't have much to say, but this little Baolin had originally been one of Xia Jiangmin's maids. For some reason, she had entered the crown prince's eyes. After one night of favor, she had gained status. Her surname wasn't originally Mei, but the crown prince said that she had the fragrance of plums on her, so he gave her this name. Xia Jiangmin was very happy to see Yushu. She didn't bother to take a nap on the bed. She had a palace maid set up a tea table in the pavilion and pulled her to the little garden to cool off. Yushu looked at her expression and asked, "His Highness the Crown Prince was worried that you weren't feeling well and had me come to keep you company. Where are you feeling unwell?" Xia Jiangmin's face flushed red. She shook her head and pulled her hand to place against her stomach. She bit her lip and looked shyly at her. Her expression didn't need to be said. Yushu's eyes widened. She didn't dare to believe that what was slightly bulging under her palm was a small life. "You're pregnant?" "Yes." Xia Jiangmin pursed her lips and smiled. "The child is more than 3 months old. Counting the days, I only got pregnant after you and I went for a walk in the suburbs during the flower festival." Yushu was happy for her, but she was also a bit worried. She glanced at the nearby palace maids and reminded her in a low voice, "We are in troubled times right now. The crown prince's ascension to the throne is imminent. Many eyes are staring at the Eastern Palace. You must be careful and protect the child. Protect yourself. Don't let others plot against you." Xia Jiangmin deeply agreed. She waved her hand to let the palace maids leave. Only in private did she show a spoiled look to her. She held her arm and said, "I feel that this child ran into my stomach because of you. If you hadn't blocked the disaster for me, I don't know what would have happened to me. Ashu, when the child is safely born, I will secretly let him recognize you as his godmother, okay?" Yushu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Her cold eyes swept over and a warm color appeared. She shook her head and said, "The crown prince is the future emperor. You have a prince in your stomach. Have you ever heard of a prince recognizing a godmother?" Xia Jiangmin snorted and no longer said childish words. Her eyes turned and landed on Yushu's forehead. She put away her smile and carefully said to her, "The crown prince told me that you injured your forehead and left a scar. Can I see it?" In fact, she wanted to ask her as soon as she saw her, but she was afraid of making her unhappy, so she held it in until now. Yushu hesitated for a moment. She raised her hand and took off the gauze to wipe her forehead, revealing the cinnabar-colored scar between her eyebrows. Xia Jiangmin was stunned. She subconsciously covered her mouth and didn't scream. She couldn't pretend that nothing had happened. How did it become like this? I have a top-grade jade face cream. It's very effective for removing scars. I'll have someone go get it. Yu Shu stopped her and said, "There's no need to trouble yourself, this scar won't go away. Jiske, why do you have a bitter face?" "I'm not sad. Take a closer look. With this scar on my forehead, doesn't it make me look more dignified? If I wasn't afraid of scaring others, I wouldn't have covered it." Xia Jiangmin wanted to cry and laugh, but she couldn't say anything. She stared at the scar between her eyebrows a few more times and didn't think it was scary. To be honest, this scar wasn't ugly at all. Instead, it added a bright color to Yu Shu's delicate features. She knit her brows and thought about it. Her eyes suddenly lit up and she called a palace maid to take a box of rouge from her dresser drawer. She held it in her hand and said to Yu Shu, "I have an idea. Don't move." Yu Shu obediently didn't move. She saw her use a mink hairbrush to dip in the rouge on the jade plate and adjust the color on the back of her hand. She used one hand to hold her chin and the other hand to draw between her eyebrows. In a moment it was done. Xia Jiangmin put down the brush and took a step back to look at her. Her eyes quickly became strange. She muttered, "Too beautiful." Then she handed the mirror to Yu Shu and said, "Look at it yourself." Yu Shu didn't understand what was going on. She raised the mirror and was stunned. She saw the face of the person in the mirror was white and there was a gorgeous flame between her eyebrows. Her eyes seemed to be dyed with fire. Looking at it would make people feel hot. The protrusion of the scar made the flame look more lively. It was as if it could drill out from between her eyebrows and burn everything. However, with a little embellishment and a change of shape, the originally scary scar could glow with such a beautiful appearance. "Ashu, you don't need to wear a headscarf. Look at how beautiful you look. Even I want to draw one." Xia Jiangmin excitedly took the mirror in her hand. She dipped the brush in some rouge and drew a flame flower on her forehead. However, it was not as stunning as the one between Yu Shu's eyebrows. She could only resentfully give up and give the whole box of rouge to her. "This is the rouge my mother taught me to make. It won't fade easily even if it's washed. You have to use wine to wipe it off. You can use it first. Later I'll make a few more boxes and send them to you." Yu Shu came back to her senses and suddenly understood a lot. She couldn't stop the corners of her mouth from curling up. She put her arm around Xia Jiangmin's shoulder and hugged her tightly. "Mingming, thank you." Chapter 793. On the day that the Xue family's property was confiscated, Yu Shu accompanied the left commander of the Yulin Royal Guards Yin Yuanrong to the Prime Minister's mansion. To the side of the main gate, Yu Shu sat on horseback, wearing a curtain hat to block out the sun. She watched as the soldiers carried out one large sealed box after another from the mansion, loaded them onto the mule cart, and sent them to the Ministry of Revenue for inventory. The servants and maids were all tied up, their hands tied to a rope. They wept as they lined up and walked out of the main gate. Last was the master of the family. Yu Shu had never seen Shui Rui's adoptive mother, so she stared in the direction of the main gate for fear of missing her. Then she saw a seemingly blind middle-aged woman being supported out by two maids with disheveled hair. She was pushed by the soldiers towards the prison cart. She hurriedly dismounted and walked forward. Before they could enter the prison cart, she stopped them. She waved her hand at the soldiers and said, "All of you go to the side. I'll say a few words before I send them away." The soldiers knew who she was. They looked at each other in dismay, and then they all walked away. "Auntie Xue," Yu Shu called out in a low voice. She carefully examined Madame Xue's sickly face and could vaguely see similarities between her eyebrows and Xue Jinshuan's. In truth, the Xue family was not good at producing handsome men and beautiful women. Xue Jinshuan's appearance was ordinary, and he had not inherited the beauty of his parents. However, Shui Rui, a dragon and phoenix among men, had inherited the good looks of Yun Hua. Madame Xue could not see who was in front of her. She took half a step back in panic and grabbed her maid's arm tightly. "Auntie, don't be afraid. I am Brother Xue's friend." Yu Shu did not reveal her family name. This was because in the eyes of the Xue family, she was a shameless villain who had caused their entire family to wander from place to place. She shot a glance at the Yulin Royal Guard standing nearby and held Madame Xue's arm. Lowering her head, she whispered, "There is no need for Madame to worry about your trip to Mount Amei. I will send people to escort you along the way. When you arrive at the Clean Water Nunnery, the old nun there will naturally treat you and your daughter well. For the time being you can rest easy. After 1 or 2 years, when the storm has passed, I will think of a way to get you out." Shui Jinshuan was previously hidden by her. She had just personally sent him to the Ministry of Justice yesterday. She had arranged for everyone to not make things difficult for them along the way. As for the clean water nunnery on Mount Amay, she had also found a way to get them there. She would never let them suffer there. After Madame Shui heard this, her expression became perplexed. She hesitantly groped for Yu Shu's hand and grabbed it. In a small voice she asked, "Miss, who are you?" The Shui family had fallen into such a situation today. Their relatives and friends had already hidden away for fear that they would be affected. How could there be anyone to help them in their time of need? If this girl was not deceiving her and was willing to lend a helping hand at a time like this, then she was assuredly one of Qing Beer's close friends. She had heard him mention her. Madame Shui first thought of a person, but she also felt that it was impossible, so she tried to guess. "Your Miss Lotus Room?" She did not receive an answer. That pair of warm hands tightly gripped her hand and then loosened. She only heard that soft and gentle voice turn cold and hard as it ordered the soldiers responsible for escorting them, "Take them to the prison carriage and send them to the Ministry of Justice." The soldiers smiled apologetically. "My lord, be at ease." Madame Shui blankly stretched her hand forward, but it was empty. Miss? Yu Shu retreated to the side and calmly watched as Madame Shui boarded the prison carriage. Only then did she stealthily lead her horse away. Not far away, the well-dressed Yin Yuanrong was leaning against an old tree outside the gate of the Shui estate with his arms crossed. Seeing this scene, he raised his eyebrows in interest and muttered to himself. "The mouth of a green bamboo snake, the sting of a wasp's tail. Neither is poisonous, but the most poisonous is the heart of a woman." If Shui Qingbi knew that the woman he loved for the sake of glory and wealth, personally sent his entire family to prison, how would he feel? ****** In the blazing 7th month, Emperor Zhao Qing was buried in Longchuan's Zhao Mausoleum. As the 14th emperor since the founding of the Great Han dynasty, he had ruled leniently and benevolently during his 15 years on the throne. The officials of the court dared to criticize him directly. Although he had no great achievements or extravagant desires, he could only be considered mediocre. The crown prince returned to the capital from the Zhao Mausoleum. 3 days later he was proclaimed emperor and the reign was changed to Chongzhen. The coronation ceremony was scheduled to take place 2 months later. Emperor Chongzhen dismissed the harem left behind by the previous emperor. All the concubines who had children were sent out of the palace to live out the rest of their lives. Those who had no children were sent to Longquan to guard the mausoleum. In the end they could only die alone. The previous empress, Lady Rui, was promoted to Empress Dowager and moved from Shiwu Palace to Xinang Palace. Emperor Chongzhen's birth mother, Lady Shui, was given the title of Western Empress Dowager and moved from Zhongsui Palace to the quiet and secluded Ziwei Palace, just west of the imperial ancestral temple. It was said that Empress Dowager Shui injured her body when giving birth to the 19th princess and needed to recuperate, so she chose such a remote corner to live in. One day, Yu Shu suddenly received a decree from the palace in the Celestial Commissioner's office. Empress Dowager Shui summoned her to the palace. This was the first time Yu Shu entered the harem after Emperor Chongzhen ascended the throne. Walking on the deserted palace path, her mood was already as calm as water. The eunuchs leading the way turned their heads to peek at her from time to time. When they accidentally met her cold eyes, they were so scared that they shrunk their heads and walked forward, not daring to look back as if she was a man-eating monster. Yu Shu knew that she did not have a good reputation outside. Many people criticized her behind her back, saying that she was unscrupulous, that she relied on exposing the Shui family to gain recognition from the great Tidian, and that she climbed up by stepping on other people's heads. They also used the fact that she and Shui Rui were sworn siblings to accuse her of being heartless. She knew very well who was secretly encouraging these rumors, but she did not care. Now that her reputation was bad or bad, it did not matter to her. With real power in her hands, she had long passed the stage where she needed a reputation to stand. No matter how many people spit on her, she would not drown. After a long walk, she arrived at the gates of the School of the Emperor's Star. The person who welcomed her was the former palace maid of Empress Dowager Shui, Song Lan. "Official, you please come in." Song Lan's head was lowered. Her expression could not be seen, but Yu Shu could feel her coldness. Skipping the step of searching her body and sitting on incense, Yu Shu was quickly brought to Empress Dowager Shui. The School of the Emperor's Star was spacious, but it was not as luxurious as Zhongsui Palace. In the empty room, Empress Dowager Shui with light makeup, leaned on the long couch. She still looked lazy and noble, but now had the bleakness of a beauty past her prime. "Your subject greets Empress Dowager. May your majesty live a long life." Yushu had one hand on her abdomen and the other behind her back. She bowed reservedly but did not make a formal greeting. She was a third-rank official in the court. Other than the emperor, she did not need to kowtow to the concubines in the harem, even if it was the Empress Dowager. Rise. Empress Dowager Shui looked expressionlessly at her as she bowed and raised her head, revealing a snow-white face. In the next moment, her gaze was captured by the crimson flame between her brows. She was slightly dazed. She actually thought of that year at the hibiscus banquet at Dinghua Hall and her short-lived appearance. There was no lack of breathtaking women in this world. There were those who moved people because of their beautiful appearance. There were also those who moved people because of their unique temperament. The former often found it difficult to fight against time, but the latter did not fear the passing of time. May I ask why Empress Dowager has summoned me to the palace? Empress Dowager Shui gathered her thoughts and said with a cold expression, I just want to see with my own eyes the shameless person who framed my Shui family. I'm afraid. Yushu apologized without changing her expression. She met her frosty gaze and looked at her haggard face. She said in a low voice, overthinking is the most harmful to the body. I hope that Empress Dowager will take care of your health for the sake of His Majesty and the little princess. She could read Empress Dowager Shui's mood. Seeing her son become the emperor, he burned the bridge after crossing the river and got rid of her maternal family. She, as the Empress Dowager, was useless. She had worked so hard to get to this stage, but she was not even as powerful as a favored concubine when the previous emperor was alive. She could not hate the son who had become the emperor, so she could only pin her anger and unwillingness on an outsider like her. Yushu had no intention of clearing her name, but Empress Dowager Shui would not let her go. She said sarcastically, Qingbi is really pitiful. I have long seen his deep affection for you. It is a pity that he was blind and mistook a snake for a beauty. He could not see your heart of a wolf and lungs of a dog. After the Shui family's incident, she had no chance to see Shui Lingnan, let alone understand the truth. So she stubbornly believed that the Shui family was slandered and that Shui Rui did not rely on the king of Dongjing at all. In her eyes, Shui Rui was still the flesh and blood of her brother Shui Zhao. He was her beloved nephew, Qingbi. Yushu would rather let her misunderstand and let her make sarcastic remarks. In the end, she asked someone to drive her out. She came and went at her beck and call, completely treating her as a tool to vent her anger. Yushu had suffered once, but she was not kind enough to suffer a second time. To prevent Empress Dowager Shui from calling her into the palace and scolding her for no reason, she mentioned one thing to her before she left. Empress Dowager lives in a secluded place and probably has not heard the news outside. 3 days ago, His Majesty was assassinated when he visited incognito. The assassin confessed that it was Prince Xiang who ordered it. Prince Xiang was arrested the day before yesterday. Unfortunately, I was one of the interrogators appointed by His Majesty. There was no need to say the rest. Empress Dowager Shui's short change in attitude had already told Yushu that she understood the hidden warning in her words. From now on, she would not treat her as a soft persimmon who could only swallow her anger. Empress Dowager, rest in peace. I will take my leave. When Yushu came, she was relaxed. When she left, she was even more carefree. Shui Lingnan and Prince Xiang were caught by the law one after another. She had Empress Dowager Shui's weakness in her hand. In the entire Anling city, there was no one who could threaten her life. She did not have to live in fear anymore. This feeling of being unscrupulous was really good. Yushu walked out of the palace with light footsteps and left the imperial palace to return to the Celestial Commissioner Bureau. It was in the middle of the afternoon. She waved her fan as she entered the courtyard of the Kunling Bureau. She saw a person walking out of the building in front of her. He greeted her with a stiff smile and walked up to her. Official Yu. It was the adjutant of the Astronomy Bureau, Cui Shui. Yushu stopped and the lowly official behind her who was holding an umbrella to shelter her from the sun also stopped. She raised her chin and looked at him. Official Cui, why did you come to my place? Did you save enough money to repay your debts? She once gambled at the Cui family's big exchange shop and won tens of thousands of taels in one game. Cui Shui's daughter, Cui Xian, wanted to renege on the debt, so she went to her father to ask for money. She took the opportunity to blackmail Cui Shui into doing a few things for her. Cui Shui said with an awkward expression, this official will definitely return that money. I came to find official Yu today because I have another request. Yushu glanced at him and guessed what he wanted. The corners of her mouth curled up and she said with a smile, if it's for the position of my female imperial official, don't mention it. I already have a candidate in mind and will recommend her to take the position in a few days. Ah, Shui Shui was greatly disappointed and was stunned for a moment. He wanted to thicken his skin and beg again, but Yushu walked around him and didn't give him a chance to plead. He was too embarrassed to chase after her again and could only walk away unhappily. When Yushu entered the building, Wen Shaoan came forward to take the fan in her hand and brought her a cup of cold plum tea. He looked outside and said to her, "Official Chui left?" Oh, Yushu drank the cold tea and sighed comfortably. She turned back to look at Wen Shaoan and sighed, "If you were a woman, the position of female imperial official would not be given to someone else." Wen Shaoan smiled, "Official, you does not need to comfort me. I'm already very satisfied with what I have today." He then asked her, "What did you say to Official Chui?" Yushu held her chin and lazily said, "What else can I say? He must want me to recommend his precious daughter. I don't have time for him." Chui Xn was indeed a talent, but she was bad because she had a grudge with Yushu. In the past, she often helped Royal Princess Shiwen to deal with her. Although things had changed with the passage of time and Yushu did not care about those people now, she could let bygones be bygones. However, she would not repay evil with good and be stupid enough to raise a tiger. Chapter 794. H2 Sidu Qinglan had never dreamed that such a good thing would happen to her. She thought that the relationship between Yushu and her was not as close as that of Xan Lu. Besides, she was not a member of an aristocratic family. She had no right to be the imperial officer of the Kunling Bureau. Therefore, after hearing the good news that Yushu had been promoted to the right commander, she did not rush to flatter her. Instead, she deliberately avoided arousing suspicion. She did not take the initiative to see her in these months, in case Yushu also regarded her as a snob who fawned on the rich and powerful. This was Situ Qinglan's last year in the Taisha Library. She would graduate in a few months. She would be 20 years old. Her uncle and aunt wanted her to get married. No matter how unwilling she was, she could not stay in the Fang family and not leave. But with her lonely life and her age, what kind of good family could she find? Right now, her grandfather could protect her, but after a few years when the old man passed away, who would look at her in the eye? There would even be malicious people who would say behind her back that she was a jinx to her parents. She had thought that her life was just like that. Who knew that there would be a surprise waiting for her in front? When Xiao and found Situ Qinglan in the Taisha Library. No one said anything. He took her to the Celestial Commissioner to see Yushu. Situ Qinglan was excited all the way. Although when Xiao and did not explain to her, she guessed why Yushu wanted to see her. She did not dare to think too much for fear that it would be a delusion. This was the first time she entered the Kunling Bureau. The clean courtyard and the numerous flowers were not as dignified as the other official offices. The tower shrouded in the shade made her yearn for it. It once again awakened her unwillingness to be mediocre. The officials in the hall looked at her curiously. But they were still busy with their own things. No one came forward to ask. When Xiao and led her to the second floor. There was a balcony on the west side of the flower hall. There were 4 carved doors on the east side. He went forward and knocked on the doors. "Sir, Lady Situ has arrived." Hearing "Come in," when Xiao and pushes open the 2 doors in the middle of the room. Situ Qinglan walks in with her ears empty. She looks up and sees a big red sandalwood desk under the east window. Yushu is sitting on the chair with her back to the light. She can't see her face clearly. The Big Dipper Palace on her shoulders is shining brightly. She is so close to Situ Qinglan, but no one can offend her. Situ Qinglan couldn't help but feel uneasy. She didn't know if she should greet him or not. She saw Yushu put down the file, stood up and walked out. She waved at her and said in a brisk tone, "You're here. Sit here." When Xiao and leaves silently. Situ Qinglan sits at the tea table with her hands and feet tied. Then she looks up and sees Yushu's face clearly. Her eyes are burned by the flame between her eyebrows. She looks down and doesn't dare to look at her. Yushu doesn't seem to notice her cautiousness. She says, "We haven't seen each other for a few months. How is Academician Fang?" Situ Qinglan says, "Grandpa is in good health. It's just that after the death of the late emperor he was a little tired. In fact, Fang Zijing's health is not as good as before. If it weren't for a group of disappointing descendants, he would have resigned from his position and retired home like Academician Xn." Yushu seemed to have learned how to read minds. She said, "Academician Fang is getting on in years. He shouldn't be working too hard. Teaching is tiring. Why don't you persuade him to retire as soon as possible and go home to enjoy his retirement?" Situ Qinglan smiles bitterly. I've persuaded him, but he's stubborn. He won't listen to me. Yu Shu smiles faintly and says, I'm afraid it's not that he's stubborn but that he can't let go. The aristocratic families of the 12 prefectures in the capital seem to be prosperous, but they have reached the point of no succession. The Exan family is better. Exanya is middle-aged and she works as the celestial commissioner. She can make plans for her family. As for the Fang family, it's not that there's no successor. They can't even get into the celestial commissioner. They can only stay in the Dai exchange house to protect the reputation of the aristocratic families. Situ Qinglan's face darkens. She clenches her fingers on her knees. She can't pretend to be calm anymore because of the suffering in her heart. She stands up and stands in front of Yu Shu. She musters up her courage and says, I know you still have the position of the imperial officer of the Kunling Bureau. Can you give me a chance? Let me try? Yu Shu puts her arm on the table. Her slender fingers tap on the lid of the porcelain tea. Every tap seems to knock on people's hearts. She looks at Situ Qinglan and asks her in a slow tone, Are you asking me as a friend or as Situ Qinglan? Situ Qinglan is stunned. Then she understands what Yu Shu means. She hesitates for a moment and then bows down. It's Situ Qinglan today. No one else. She wants to rely on Yu Shu. She can't pretend to be a friend anymore. It seems to be a difficult choice, but it makes her recognize herself. Yu Shu firmly held her elbow and helped her up. She patted her shoulder and said, Tomorrow, I will recommend you to the chief advisor to be the female imperial official. Before it is done, don't mention it to anyone. Situ Qinglan can't hold back her joy. She nods and agrees. She walks out of the door of the celestial commissioner. She turns down Wen Xiaoan's offer and walks back to the Fang family under the scorching sun. As usual, she goes to the upper room to see her grandmother. Facing the sarcasm of her two aunts, she feels unprecedentedly peaceful. Because she knows that soon she won't have to live under someone else's roof. Yu Shu recommends Situ Qinglan. The commissioner only asks about her background and character. Then she makes the decision. Next month is the enthronement ceremony. I will choose a suitable time to let you take over my position. Zhu Muzhao takes her to the pavilion of the chrysanthemum in Taishi Tower and tells her what to do next. Ren Qiming is still the junior supervisor. I want Madame Lu to be reinstated. With the two of them listening to you, even if there are people who don't agree, it won't affect the overall situation. It's all up to the Grand Secretary. It was not that Yu Shu did not have a plan in mind. The Directorate of Astronomy had 3 divisions and 2 bureaus. She had a handle on Exanya from the Records Bureau, Shui Xiui from the Astronomical Bureau was not a threat, and Bureau Kuanling had long been subdued by her. When she makes the commissioner, Zhong Jingxi will be in her pocket. Ren Qiming won't be able to ride over her. The only one left is Tai Qingxi. If Chao Zuoling is smart, he won't make things difficult for her. Zhu Muzhao looks with satisfaction at her steady temperament. He changes the topic and says to her earnestly, I'm not worried about other things. Your methods are not bad. It's not difficult to control the Celestial Commissioner. It's just that it's not early or late. What I'm afraid of is that you'll neglect your progress in the study of E because of your power and influence. You must know that the 3 words great advice are not only a supreme honor, but also a role model for millions of people in the world who learn E. If you want to control the imperial astronomer and assist the emperor, you must have the ability to be the best. Yu Shu listened to his advice and couldn't help but frown in thought. Zhu Muzhao says, if you have the Book of Fairy Maiden you won't have to worry. But you don't have that kind of ability. You need to learn from others and make up for your shortcomings. You do have a strange art of death, but it has many limits. You can't use it easily. It's not as good as my art of insight, which can be practiced to the extreme. I've been in office for more than 10 years. I've never slacked off. Not only the secret arts of the Zhu family, but I've also dabbled in the unique arts of other families. Don't look down on the families of the 12 prefectures. If they don't have something special, how can their ancestors help the divine ancestor to conquer the country? It's a pity that their descendants are mediocre and unambitious. They've wasted all kinds of rare arts and can't carry them forward. Yu Shu raised her head and looked at him with eyes like torches. Her eyes were filled with longing and expectation. Zhu Muzhao smiles and counts them one by one. The Lu family's Wind and Moon Treasured Mirror, the Fang family's Thousand Faces art, the Chui family's Spirit Speech art, the Ren family's 9 Geomancy art, the Qin family's Formula of Rain, the Kong family's 8 Formation Diagram, and finally my Zhu family's Art of Insight. I can make an exception and teach you one of these 12 arts. You can choose one. As for how far you can learn it, it'll depend on your fate." Hearing this, Yu Shu's face flushed red. She lost her composure and asked, "Is what the Grand Secretary said true? Why would I lie to you?" Yu Shu gets up and says, "Let me think about it." Zhu Muzhao waves his hand and lets her be. Yu Shu walks to the lakeside alone. She looks down at the blue water under her feet, which reflects her young but lifeless face. The fire in her heart is instantly extinguished. After calming down, she walks back to the pavilion. "Have you made up your mind?" Zhu Muzhao asks. Imperial Scripture, can I learn the Zhu family's art of insight? She can choose the arts from the 12 prefectures. It sounds very tempting, but with her talent, only by learning the art of insight could she have a chance to learn it under Zhu Muzhao's personal guidance. Similarly, without the help of the Book of Mystery Fairy's 6 Rens, Zhu Muzhao could intimidate the imperial court with the help of the big hole technique. Why did she have to find another way and give up what was close at hand for what was far away? With the Zhu family's art of insight and her time of calamity law, there might be an unexpected surprise. Zhu Muzhao doesn't look surprised at all. He nods and says to her kindly, "From tomorrow onwards, come to Taishi Tavern at 5 o'clock. Yu Shu thanks him. 3 days later, Situ Qinglan's appointment notice is sent from the Celestial Commissioner to the Taisher Library. Everyone is envious. Not to mention that the whole Fang family would cry and laugh when they heard the good news. Fang Zijing was very relieved. If it were not for the fact that the national mourning had not passed and they could not hold a big banquet, he would definitely celebrate for his granddaughter. Fang Zijing hears that Yu Shu is the matchmaker. When he gets home, he takes out 2 of his treasures and reluctantly gives them to Yu Shu. After thinking for a while, he writes a letter and sends it to Yu Shu to express his gratitude. He holds the letter sent by the Celestial Commissioner and reads it over and over again. He says to Situ Qinglan in private, "When you work in the Kunling Bureau in the future, don't forget your duty. This is a great opportunity that others can't even beg for. You should cherish it. Don't be arrogant and make your boss annoyed." Situ Qinglan says gently, "I understand grandfather's words. Although I am good friends with Lian Fang, when I come to the officialdom, we are just superiors and subordinates. I won't push my luck." Chapter 795. H2 Zhu Muzhao learned the Great Insight spell at the age of 15. After that, it took him another 5 years to reach the state where he could hear and see in all directions. By the time he was 35, the Great Insight spell had become his instinct. With a thought, he could see through the illusion in front of him. In terms of proficiency, even his father, the previous great teacher Zhu Chang, was not as good as him. There were only 2 kinds of people in the world who could lie in front of him. One was the people who wore the 7-star suns, such as the Emperor and Yun Hua. The other was the mute who could not speak at all. As the saying goes, the master leads the way and the practice is up to the individual. Zhu Muzhao spent 3 days teaching Yu Shu the 60 Nayan method, and another 3 days explaining the incantation to her. Finally, he spent 3 days teaching her the tricks to nourish her eyes and train her ears. In total, he forced the Great Insight spell into her brain like a force-feeding a duck. Yu Shu only thought that he was pulling the shoots to help them grow. She did not notice the hidden urgency in Zhu Muzhao's every move. Fortunately, the Great Insight spell was not like the 6-line mystical spell. It did not have strict requirements on the aptitude and comprehension of the practitioner. As long as she learned it, she could use it. She believed that she lacked talent, so she had to rely on hard work. Therefore, she had been studying very seriously these days. She had to memorize everything that Zhu Muzhao taught her that day, even if she had to stay up all night. The next day, when he tested her, she had to answer every question even if she couldn't answer fluently. Zhu Muzhao did not say it, but he was secretly surprised that she could barely keep up with his progress. Not to say that she understood everything immediately, but she could be said to be clever. Often, when he taught her something, she could draw inferences about other things the next day. It was really beyond his expectations. On the last day, he had nothing to teach her, so he took her to the top floor of Taishi Tower, a place she had never set foot in before. This was a secluded morning hall. There were a few plates of fresh fruits and pastries on the offering table. The surroundings were spotless. Yu Shu saw many tablets placed neatly on the table. She silently counted them. There were a total of 9 tablets. She saw that the leftmost tablet was blank, and the rightmost tablet was engraved with the words, "The 9th Celestial Commissioner Zhu Chang's Deity Tablet." She knew that these tablets were dedicated to the previous generations of Celestial Commissioners. Zhu Muzhao lit the candles on both sides of the sacrificial table, took out 3 sticks of incense and lit them. Then he signaled Yushu to take 2 steps back. He knelt down on the cattail hassock, raised the incense to his forehead and said in a deep voice, "The 10th Celestial Commissioner Zhu Muzhao apologizes to the ancestors. I have been in office for 15 years, but I have not been able to find the Book of Mystery Maiden Lu Ren, nor have I been able to make the Tai Bone. I have failed in my duty. Even if I die, I will not be able to absolve myself of the blame. In the future, I will accept my punishment in the underworld." After that, he raised the incense and kowtowed 3 times. He then got up and put the incense into the incense burner. He took out 3 more sticks of incense and handed them to Yushu. He said solemnly, "I have taught you everything that should be taught. From today onwards, I appoint you as the 11th Celestial Commissioner. Now kneel down and make a vow in front of the ancestral tablets. You must carry forward the Celestial Commissioner and find the Book of Mystery Maiden Lu Ren. Vow to live and die with the Celestial Commissioner. If you violate the vow, in your next life, you must be a cow or a horse and suffer the pain of an animal." Yushu's eyebrows were burning, but she took the 3 sticks of incense without batting an eyelid. She lifted the hem of her robe and knelt in front of the ancestral tablets. She imitated what he did just now. She raised the incense above her forehead and said in a deep voice, "The 11th Celestial Commissioner, Yushu, pays her respect to the ancestors. Today I swear that as long as I am alive, I will find the Book of Mystery Maiden Lu Ren and carry forward the Celestial Commissioner. I vow to live and die with the Celestial Commissioner. If I violate the vow, I will not be a human in my next life. I will be a cow or a horse and suffer the pain of an animal." Then she kowtowed and offered the incense. Zhu Muzhao's eyes were filled with gratification. He could tell that her words came from the bottom of her heart. "All right, you must make another vow to me. You must not teach the Zhu family's great insight technique to outsiders." Yushu obeyed his words and made another vow. Zhu Muzhao nodded and told her intentionally or unintentionally, "This morning hall was built about 200 years ago. It has always been effective. Rumor has it that a generation's great instructor leaked the secret of the Book of Mystery Maiden Lu Ren without permission. After he left office, he died suddenly within 10 days. Yushu felt a cold breeze on the back of her neck. She turned her head and looked at the 2 rows of black ancestral tablets on the altar. She couldn't help but shiver. She thought, how is this effective? It's obviously evil. Ever since Yushu learned how to use the Great Insight technique, she found a new hobby. Every day when she returned to the mansion, she would find someone to practice her eyesight and hearing skills. She would ask all kinds of questions, often making people dizzy and tongue-tied. The maids of the North Xiang had all suffered from her torment, but she never stopped enjoying it. Zhu Muzhao divided the Great Insight technique into 5 stages. The first stage was to observe people's words and expressions. The second stage was to hear and see clearly. The third stage was to have a deep understanding of the situation. Only then could one distinguish between truth and falsehood. And when one reached the 4th stage, hearing and seeing in all directions, one would be able to judge the truth from a few words. The last stage was A leaf signals autumn. He had practiced the Great Insight technique to perfection. It took him a full 20 years to reach the stage where he could use it as he pleased. Yushu originally thought that with her perception, even if she learned all of Zhu Muzhao's teachings and practiced tirelessly, it would take her at least 3 to 5 years to have a deep understanding of the technique. She didn't expect that after 7 days of learning, she would feel the realm of hearing and seeing clearly. This kind of change was very obvious. Her eyesight seemed to have become 10 times clearer in one night. She could even clearly see the small characters written on a piece of paper that was 30 feet away. Her hearing was also better than before. At night, through the door, she could hear the servant girls whispering to each other in the corridor. She was pleasantly surprised, but if something was out of the ordinary, it would be strange. She was afraid that she had gone mad. The next day, she went to Tai Shi Lu and told Zhu Muzhao about her change. Zhu Muzhao obviously didn't expect her to break through to the 2nd stage so quickly. After testing it on the spot, he confirmed that she had really reached the realm of hearing and seeing clearly. Seeing his strange expression, Yushu couldn't help thinking about the worst. Imperial Secretary, did I go wrong somewhere? Speaking of which, I've been having headaches lately. I'm a light sleeper and would wake up at the slightest movement. What was even stranger was that she didn't sleep well at night but didn't feel tired during the day. Zhu Muzhao frowned. His gaze fell on the scar between her eyebrows and he said, "The world is boundless and full of strange things. I've seen your situation in a book before. It's often said that people have 7 apertures and 8 apertures. The 7 apertures refer to the eyes, nose, ears and mouth. These 8 apertures are also on the head, but most of them don't open. Some people become smart overnight and some people become extremely strong overnight. This is what people call opening the apertures. I'm guessing that these changes of yours might be related to your previous encounter. Yu Shu subconsciously touched the bump on her forehead and said in a daze, "According to you, I've actually gained a blessing in disguise?" Zhu Muzhao smiled and comforted her. "It seems to be a good thing right now. You don't need to think too much. If you're really worried, I'll have Qingjue come over to take a look for you." Yu Shu was really worried. What if this was a side effect of her head injury? She said to him embarrassedly, "Then I'll have to trouble senior martial brother Zhu to make another trip." She had learned the skills of the Zhu family after all, so it wasn't wrong to call Zhu Qingjue senior martial brother. In the evening, Zhu Qingjue heard the news and came to the Celestial Commissioner. He already knew that his father had secretly taught the Great Insight technique to Yu Shu, so he had no objection. Now that he heard about Yu Shu's symptoms and Zhu Muzhao's suspicions, he suddenly said in amazement, "I've only heard from the opera that someone fell down and knocked his head, and then became smart. I didn't expect to meet a living person." In front of Zhu Muzhao, Yu Shu couldn't argue with him, so she stretched out her hand to let him take her pulse. Zhu Qingjue carefully examined her body and confirmed that there was nothing wrong with her body. In the end, he couldn't find the reason for her headache and light sleep. In the end, he could only attribute it to her sudden enlightenment and overexertion of her brain. Yu Shu accepted this explanation with skepticism. When she returned home, she burned incense and used the 6 lines to make a divination for herself. After knowing that it was a blessing and not a curse, she finally accepted the fact that she suddenly became smart. On a whim, she extinguished the Tihu incense. When the fragrance in the room dissipated, she used the 6 lines to make a divination. Unexpectedly, she successfully calculated the result. She tried 3 times in one go, but there was no empty hexagram. It should be known that in order to teach her the art of 6 lines to make up for her missing 8 characters, Qing Zheng made her play Go chess for many days and nights, only to improve her poor aptitude a little. She barely reached the threshold of learning the 6 lines, and she still couldn't make a divination for herself. Later, Xanya gave her the imitation Tai Ching cauldron and the Tihu incense, so she could use the 6 lines to make a divination for herself. Now, she didn't need to use the Tihu incense and could use the 6 lines freely. Have I really been enlightened? Yu Shu couldn't help but walk around the room. She wished she could roar to the sky to vent the joy in her heart. Iyun, fortune and misfortune depend on each other. She finally understood the true meaning of these 4 words today. Prince Xiang was locked up in the imperial court for half a month. He reached a private agreement with Zhu Muzhao. Zhu Muzhao arranged for his family of 3 to escape from the capital, and he would hand over the descendant of the previous generation's fate breaker and the child who was likely to have the fate bone to the Celestial Commissioner. Zhu Muzhao didn't mention this matter in front of Yu Shu, and she didn't ask about it. Until the day before the new emperor's coronation, Zhu Muzhao took her to an inconspicuous carriage and left quietly from the back door of the Celestial Commissioner's house. "Imperial Secretary, where are we going?" Yu Shu looked at the unfamiliar street outside through the screen window. Prince Xiang committed suicide last night to escape punishment. She was stunned for a moment. She turned around and met his calm eyes. She couldn't help but use the Grand Insight spell. Her pair of almond-shaped eyes instantly became empty. Is Prince Xiang really dead? Chapter 796. H2 Ning Wang was convicted and demoted to a commoner. In the 2 days that the Wang Fu was sealed, the women in the inner courtyard all cried. Silk, gold and jewels could not be taken away. They were lightly packed and sent onto the carriages heading to Pei County. Most of the servants in the Fu were dismissed, dozens of death warriors were arrested, and the rest were nowhere to be found. Pei County was less than 100 li from the capital. Even though it wasn't a poor and remote place, a small county was like a bird cage for a group of people who were used to enjoying life. When Lu Hao was released from the imperial court, he was sent to the residence where he would be imprisoned for the rest of his life. What greeted him was not the concubines who were dead set on him, nor the groups of loyal servants. There was only the resentful and dark gaze of Ning Wang Fei. Then Lu Hao discovered to his shock and anger that his Ru Wei Furen and his Shu eldest son had disappeared. He would never have dreamed that when he had been convicted by the Zhongzheng Si, taking advantage of the chaos in Ning Wang Fu, Ji Xingxuan and the child had been secretly taken out. Ji Xingxuan and Lu Hao were just using each other. There was no true affection between them. So when Lu Hao was in trouble, she left without any hesitation. Yet leaving Ning Wangfu was just changing to a different cage. She still didn't obtain freedom. She was placed in a remote residence in Anling. Other than the old woman who was responsible for cooking, there were 2 other female servants who knew martial arts who took turns guarding her day and night. They didn't allow her to take a step out of the door. It wasn't that she didn't think about escaping. But she was a criminal of the court who should have died a long time ago. With a child who wasn't even a year old, where could she escape to? Ji Xingxuan obediently stayed here. It wasn't just because she had nowhere else to go. She was willing to believe that her teacher who taught her would not abandon her, even if she had never seen his true face. In these 2 months she had distanced herself from the world and didn't have to feign civility with Lu Hao. It was a peace that she hadn't had in years. Unknowingly, her hatred and discontent were about to be smoothed out. Until one day a horse carriage stopped outside the gate. Ji Xingxuan had just coaxed the child to sleep when she heard movement outside. At first she thought it was a porter delivering firewood, so she lay on the bed without moving. After a while, the maid who was guarding her suddenly pushed the door open and said to her, "Madam, please get up. Someone is here to pick you up." Ji Xingxuan stared blankly for a moment, then abruptly sat up on the bed. She scrambled to put on her shoes, thinking, "Shifu must be here." She quickly walked to the door and immediately saw a tall figure standing in the courtyard with his back facing her. Bathed in the sunset, he was dressed in a beautiful and extraordinary robe. Her heart instantly jumped to her throat and she called out with difficulty, "Master!" The man turned around and revealed his true face. She stopped in astonishment. You are..." So her Shizuan was the celestial commissioner. Ji Xingxuan's mind was in a whirl, but before she could regain her composure, she saw another person walking out from behind the commissioner. She was wearing a jade robe and had her hair tied up. It was a cold and arrogant woman. "It's actually you." Yu Shu saw Ji Xingxuan, who was a few steps away, and was surprised. She knew that Ji Xingxuan was not dead, but she didn't expect her to be the last life-saving talisman that Prince Xiang left for her. After a year and a half, Ji Xingxuan almost couldn't recognize this old enemy of hers, Yu Shu. Yu Shu had really changed too much. The last time she saw Yu Shu was at the celebration banquet at the Xianchun Garden after the Shuangyang meeting. At that time, Yu Shu was just a female fortune teller who had just made a name for herself in the Deyan examination, and she had already ruined her family. Ji Xingxuan felt that fate was laughable more than once. Since young, her elders had always said that she was born with a vision and that her purple-gold fate was suitable for the princes and grandsons. She was destined to be a phoenix that soared to the sky. But in the end, she ended up with a ruined reputation, and death was not to be regretted. On the contrary, Yu Shu, who used to be a pile of mud in her eyes, soared day by day. When she was still in the inner courtyard of the prince's residence, she had heard many of her deeds. The title bestowed by the late emperor, the position of imperial officer of the Kunling Bureau, the title of aristocratic family, all of these incidents made her feel heart-wrenching pain in the dead of the night. In the end, she actually began to regret it. The corners of Ji Xingxuan's eyes quickly reddened. She looked back and forth between Zhu Muzhao and Yu Shu. With a glimmer of hope, she asked Zhu Muzhao, "Master, are you my master?" Zhu Muzhao replied indifferently, "Your master is no longer in this world. Pack up and come with me." He knew Ji Xingxuan's background better than Yu Shu. To him, her only value was that she had secretly left behind the late emperor's bloodline. In his eyes, she was equivalent to a dead person. There was no need to explain so much to her. "Impossible." Ji Xingxuan cried out, "How could my master die? You must be lying to me. I will not go with you." As she spoke, she turned and ran into the room to hug the child. However, the maid guarding her grabbed her from behind and forced her to kneel on the ground. Following that, another maid carried out the sleeping baby and presented it to Zhu Muzhao. They were the Prince of Xiang's death warriors. Since Zhu Muzhao had the Prince of Xiang's official seal and came here, they would listen to his instructions. Zhu Muzhao only lifted a corner of the swaddling cloth and glanced at the child. He then asked the maid to pass it to Yu Shu. "You carry him." Yu Shu hesitated for a moment and stretched out both hands to receive the swaddling cloth. She then heard Ji Xingxuan suddenly shouting in a frenzy, "Don't touch my son. You're not allowed to touch him. Let go of me, let go of me." Yu Shu frowned and firmly held the child in the crook of her arm. She raised her head and looked at her coldly. "If you want to wake the child, shout louder." The shouting stopped abruptly. Ji Xingxuan trembled all over and asked in a trembling voice, "What do you want? Why do you want to snatch my child?" Yu Shu instantly felt that she had become the villain. Her lips curled into a self-deprecating smile. She lowered her head and looked at the sweet sleeping face of the child. She did not answer her question. Ji Xingxuan had always been secretly helping the Prince of Xiang. She did not believe that she did not know anything. This child was clearly not Lu Hao's, but she was able to make Lu Hao wear this green hat. It could be seen that she had sold some unspeakable secrets to Lu Hao in exchange for a place to live. But she also had some doubts. For example, how did the Prince of Xiang convince a beautiful young girl like Ji Xingxuan to climb into Emperor Zhao Qing's bed? And how did she manage to hide it from everyone without being seen through? Take her away. Zhu Muzhao gave the order and the black-robed guards at the door ran in. They gagged Ji Xingxuan and tied her hands behind her back. She did not have the strength to struggle and could only watch in despair as Yu Shu carried her child and disappeared in front of her. Afterwards, Zhu Muzhao and Yu Shu sat on the horse carriage and returned to the Celestial Commissioner. On the way, Yu Shu raised her doubts and Zhu Muzhao told her everything in detail. The Prince of Xiang was actually a hidden De master. He was intelligent and eager to learn. When he was not able to become the crown prince, he was depressed and put all his energy into studying the Yi. Later on, he discovered the secret of the Book of Mystery Maiden's 6 Rens and set his mind on seizing the throne. He also found the descendants of the previous generation of the Ming Breaker. 100 years ago, the female General Gong Sun Jing's younger brother luckily escaped the calamity of his family being exterminated. He wandered to the south and changed his name. That was how the Yiyangji family came to be. Not long after Ji Xingxuan entered the capital, the Prince of Xiang set his eyes on her. Through a De shop under his name, he met her secretly and took her as his disciple. The goals of the Prince of Xiang and Xue Lingnan were very different. Xue Lingnan hated the Celestial Commissioner for killing his beloved son and wanted to destroy the power of the Celestial Commissioner. The Prince of Xiang wanted to take the Book of Mystery Maiden's 6 Rens for himself. So on one hand he confused Xue Lingnan about the true use of the Great and Calamity and the Ming Breaker, on the other hand he made Ji Xingxuan listen to him and tried to make her pregnant with Emperor Zhao Qing's flesh and blood. The incident happened on the 9th of the 2nd month of the previous year, the day of Lu Hao's birthday. The Prince of Xiang coaxed Emperor Zhao Qing into making a private visit and the two of them came to Ning Wangfu. There were spies in Ning Wangfu that came from the House of Offerings. They worked together and no one knew that Ji Xingxuan was tainted with Emperor Zhao Qing's reign and due. After the incident, Emperor Zhao Qing only thought it was a dream. Ji Xingxuan was pregnant. The Prince of Xiang originally wanted to send her to a safe place to hide. Who knew that he was one step too late and you ruined it? You discovered that she was related to the murder case in Taisha Shu Garden. Zhu Muzhao said. Ji Xingxuan was quick-witted and didn't reveal the mastermind behind it. Instead, she grabbed onto Lu Hao, this life-saving straw, and escaped with her life. To prevent his identity from being exposed, the Prince of Xiang broke off contact with her and pushed the boat with the current to have her stay in Ning Wangfu to hide. It wasn't until Lu Hao was convicted and Ning Wangfu was in chaos that the Prince of Xiang sent someone to take her mother and son away. Yu Shu frowned and said, Ji Xingxuan is not stupid. She should have long discovered that her so-called Shifu is using her. Why is she still so loyal? Could it be that she became stupid after giving birth? Zhu Muzhao smiled faintly. That is because you have not seen the methods that the Prince of Xiang uses to buy people's hearts. As long as he is willing, there will be people fighting to die for him at any time. I have told you about the unique skills of the aristocratic families of the 12 prefectures. Did you know that the Prince of Xiang had already learned the Chui family's spirit speech technique 10 years ago and can see through people's hearts? In terms of power, it is not inferior to my great insight technique. Yu Shu was dumbstruck. She had seen the Chui family's spirit speech technique at the Gentleman Hibiscus banquet. At that time, Chui Xian had used it and was able to guess the answer to a riddle written on a piece of paper. It could be said to be a mind-reading technique. It was no wonder that the Prince of Xiang was able to find out the secret of the fairy woman Lu Ren book. So the key was here. Now you should be able to clearly understand the power of the unique skills. The Prince of Xiang uses the spirit speech technique to control people's hearts. I can use the great insight technique to see through all lies and firmly control the Celestial Commissioner. Yun Hua is also relying on his unfathomable skills to appear and disappear unpredictably and play with the imperial court in the palm of his hand. It can be seen that if one wants to be above others and be above the common people, one must learn diligently and it cannot be separated from the word easy. Chapter 797. H2G Xingxuan was sent directly to the Imperial Guard's dungeon, and the child was carried back by Yu Shu. Zhu Muzhao told her that the only way to identify the Great Bone of Destiny was to use the yellow spring in the secret cave of the Imperial Mausoleum in the eastern suburbs. On the 9th day of the 5th month, the altar would be opened to worship the ancestors, and the entire skeleton would be soaked in the yellow spring. If it was a real bone, the bones would turn golden. If it was a fake bone, there would be no difference. Hearing this, Yu Shu looked down at the swaddle in her arms. The little guy had just woken up and was looking at her curiously with a pair of crystal-like eyes. His chubby cheeks were puffing up and down, and he was stupidly blowing bubbles. He was not afraid of strangers at all. "Then when should I take the bone?" she asked. "Anytime." Zhu Muzhao's eyes were slightly cold as he looked at the child. "A long delay may cause trouble. It's best to take the bone as soon as possible. Wait until the ancestral worship ceremony next year, and then you can do the identification. If it's useful, you won't have to worry about nurturing the Great Bone of Destiny." Yu Shu was silent for a moment, and then she raised her head and said, "Since it can only be verified next May, why don't I take the bone then? This child is innocent, so let him live for a few more months." How could Zhu Muzhao not see that she was soft-hearted? He shook his head and said, "I'm afraid you won't be able to do it then." Yu Shu sneered, "Why won't I be able to do it? I don't have the heart of a Buddha. Let's not talk about the fact that Ji Xingxuan and I are mortal enemies. If I don't kill this child, will I skin my own child and tear his bones apart in the future?" Zhu Muzhao stared into her eyes and confirmed that she was not bluffing. Yu Shu did not avoid his gaze, and her face darkened slightly. "It's fine if the Grand Secretary doesn't believe me. You can do whatever you want with this child." As she spoke, she walked over to the reclining chair at the side and casually put down the swaddling clothes. The little guy whimpered twice and stretched out his two little hands towards her. When he saw that she was ignoring him, he began to cry loudly. However, she didn't even look at him as she bowed to Zhu Muzhao and excused herself. "Wait," Zhu Muzhao called out to Yu Shu, who was walking to the door. He held his forehead and said, "It's not that I don't believe you, but I'm just being cautious. Forget it, you have an ill-fated relationship with this child. Since you are willing to plead for him, let him live for a few more days." He didn't want Yu Shu to think that she was just a puppet in his hands and provoke her rebellious heart. Moreover, what he needed was not a meek successor. The stronger she was, the more assured he was. Yu Shu stood still and touched the inconspicuous ring on her left index finger. She turned around and her face relaxed a little. She walked back and picked up the child again, ignoring his crying and hiccups, and said in a gentle tone, "Celestial Commissioner, I don't think there is a place to keep children, so I took him with me." Zhu Muzhao did not stop her this time and waved his hand to let her go. Listening to the sound of the child's crying fading away, he closed his eyes tiredly. As the day of the coronation approached, he was very aware of his own weakness. This weakness was not because of physical aging, but because of mental exhaustion. He could foresee that his days were numbered. Since the creation of the Book of Mystic Fairy Six Wrens, there were very few people who lived a long life. Usually, after a new emperor ascended the throne, they would pass away in less than a year. Some of them died suddenly, some of them had a relapse of an old disease, and some of them died unknowingly in their sleep. This was a riddle that could not be solved. Zhu Muzhao had always regarded it as a curse from Empress Ningxin, cursing those who violated her last words, gave birth to the Tai Bone of Fairy Maiden without authorization, and abused the Book of Fairy Maiden. In the morning hall on the top floor of Taishi Tower, there was only one memorial tablet that had no words engraved on it. That was actually Empress Ningxin's memorial tablet. They respected the woman who single-handedly established the Celestial Commissioner, and that blank memorial tablet represented their awe. Yu Shu returned home with the child. As soon as she entered the door, she had someone go to Zhao Hui's place to borrow a wet nurse. Yi Xiaochuan was more than a year old and could eat some rice paste. In addition, Zhao Hui was more willing to feed him herself, so the wet nurse was most likely a decoration. It just happened to save Yu Shu the trouble. When the maidservants of the North Chamber saw Yu Shu come back with a white and chubby baby, they were so shocked that their jaws dropped. Perhaps the child was hungry, his small hands tightly grabbing onto Yu Shu's collar, and he continuously arched towards her chest, whining pitifully. Exener and Lin Er looked at Yu Shu with a frown as she stared at the baby, afraid that if she became impatient she would throw the child out. "Miss, let this servant carry him. You should first go in and wipe your sweat and change your clothes." Yun Do really couldn't stand it anymore and reached out her hand. Yu Shu hesitated for a moment, and was about to hand the child over to Yun Do. who knew that the little fellow seemed to have recognized her, and with a forceful kick of his legs, he actually stood up from her embrace. His two lotus-like little arms tightly wrapped around her neck, and his mouth muttered, piu ma, not willing to come down. A wave of milk fragrance entered her nose. She blinked her eyes and laughed out loud. With this laugh, the frost on her face seemed to melt, and even the flame between her eyebrows softened a bit. This kind of innocent child who didn't know good from evil, how could she bear to strangle him? She had a sentence that deceived the big point. She indeed didn't have the heart of a bodhisattva, but she never did anything that went against her conscience. Forget it, I'll carry him. Yushu supported his little butt and waited. Thus, when Zhao Hui heard the news, she brought He Xiaochuan's wet nurse over. As soon as she entered the door, she saw a fat baby sitting on Yushu's lap. She held a small spoon in her hand and was feeding him water. Io, whose family's little darling is this? Let me take a look. Zhao Hui moved closer and stretched out her finger to gently rub the child's little face. Seeing that he was starving, she immediately had the wet nurse come forward to take him. Probably because the wet nurse had a milky smell, the little fellow didn't cling to Yushu this time. He turned his head and threw himself into the wet nurse's embrace. I picked him up. Yushu put down the small spoon and wiped the saliva on her collar in disgust. She said, nonsense. On the way back, I saw a big basket on the street. I heard the child crying fiercely, so I picked him up and brought him home. How could Zhao Hui believe her nonsense? She glared at her and turned to look at the child in the wet nurse's arms. He was about 8 or 9 months old and had a handle. He was white, tender, and very cute. However, seeing that he was wrapped in a thin and soft quilt, and the small clothes he wore were meticulously stitched, she knew that he couldn't be an abandoned baby. But if he wasn't an abandoned baby, who would trust others to take care of their child at such a young age? Zhao Hui stared at Yushu suspiciously. Tell me the truth, where did this child come from? Yushu stood up and stamped her numb legs. She sighed and told her, the child's father died and his mother ran away. No one wanted him, so I brought him back. God has mercy. Zhao Hui suddenly overflowed with motherly love. She no longer doubted her words. While helping the wet nurse pat the child's back, she asked Yushu, what's his name? Yushu tilted her head and thought for a moment. Yanghua. The child's father's surname is Yang? Zhao Hui looked at her doubtfully. No. Zhao Hui laughed and scolded her. Then why did you randomly give him a name? Is this a joke? Yushu snorted softly. She got up and went into the room to change her clothes. She stubbornly said, anyway, I saved his little life. I can call him whatever I want. I don't want to call him Yanghua. Let's call him Yugua. The maidservants in the same room as Zhao Hui stared at each other. Xiao Yugua lay on the wet nurse's chest and burped. She didn't know that she would have to change her name from now on. In the evening, He Fangji and Yu Xiaoxiu came back from the clinic. As soon as they entered the door, they heard that Yushu had adopted a baby who was not even 1 year old. Yu Xiaoxiu excitedly ran to the north to watch the fun, leaving Zhao Hui to sigh at He Fangji. She is an unmarried girl. How can she raise a child? If she wants to raise a child, then so be it. Why does she have to take her surname and raise him as a son? Is she not going to marry in the future? He Fangji was more open-minded than her. Let her be happy. If she can't marry, then she won't marry. Don't talk about it in her ears all day. It's not like you don't know how much she has suffered. There are some things that you don't like to hear. Now that she has such a high official position, ordinary men are not worthy of her. If you look further up, it will be the families of princes and marquises. But such a family, how can they tolerate her? Zhao Hui's heart ached for Yushu no less than his. After he said a few words, her heart softened. Compared to marrying or not, Yushu's life was more important. But she can't live alone for the rest of her life, right? In the future, Xiaoxiu will also have to marry and have children. When the two of us are old, she won't even have someone to accompany her. How can that be? Don't be anxious. Let's wait and see. Maybe it's not fate yet. Just like the two of us, didn't we only meet after half a lifetime of delay? He Fangji held Zhao Hui's hand and wrapped it around her shoulder. If fate comes, it won't be too late no matter how late it is. The husband and wife sat and worried, but Yu Xiaoxiu was smiling foolishly on the other side. There was no other reason. Yushu told him that she wanted to take Xiao Yu as her adopted son, so Yu Xiaoxiu was promoted to uncle in advance. He was different from their sworn brother, He Xiaochuan. They were a generation apart. Sister, can I really be his uncle? Yu Xiaoxiu knelt on the Luohan couch and stretched out his hands to protect Xiaoyu, who was crawling around. His eyes were bright. Yu Shu grabbed Xiaoyu with her long hands and let him sit on her lap. She pointed at Yu Xiaoxiu and said, "Call him uncle." It was unknown if Xiaoyu understood or not, but he grinned foolishly at Yu Xiaoxiu, revealing a few snow-white baby teeth. He said incoherently, "G." Yu Xiaoxiu immediately smiled. He reached out to hug Xiaoyu and lifted him up. "I'm an uncle, ha. G." Xiaoyu waved his small fists in cooperation. A few servant girls in the room covered their mouths and snickered. Yu Shu couldn't help but raise the corner of her mouth. Just like that, a lively night passed. When it was time to sleep, Yu Xiaoxiu reluctantly left. Not long after Yu Xiaoxiu left, Xiaoyu yawned and fell asleep on Yu Shu's lap. Only then did she call the wet nurse to carry him to sleep. There were still 2 empty rooms in the north wing. Before dinner, Yu Shu had people clean them up and use them as a nursery. She also asked He Xiaochuan's wet nurse, Mama Song, to come over and temporarily let her take care of the child for 2 days. When Yu Shu found a suitable wet nurse, she would let her go back. Chapter 798. H2 On the 8th day of the 9th month, the coronation ceremony was held as scheduled. Emperor Chongzhen Lu Tan announced the celebration. On the same day, the Golden Phoenix issued an edict conferring Lady Xiajiang as the Empress of the 6 Palaces. 3 days later, Emperor Chongzhen amended the 32 laws, abolished the left and right prime ministers, restored the 6 ministers, and demoted them from the first rank to the 3rd rank. Because the former right prime minister Xue Lingnan was convicted, the right prime minister Yin Tianhou retired and was conferred the title of Marquis. The prime minister was originally empty, but now he was abolished. However, from then on, only the celestial commissioner was promoted to the 1st rank. In the face of this situation, an unscrupulous censor suggested that since the celestial commissioner was demoted, not only the 6 ministers, but also the celestial commissioner. As soon as these words were spoken, the imperial court immediately turned into a vegetable market. A few officials from the imperial astronomer and a group of civil officials quarreled fiercely, while a few generals with military power watched from the sidelines. Zhu Muzhao, who had just left his post, did not say a word. Emperor Chongzhen, who had just sat on the dragon throne and had not even warmed his buttocks, sneered repeatedly. Soon, everyone realized that the emperor was unhappy. After arguing for a while, there was no sound. Emperor Chongzhen reprimanded with a stern face, "If you have the energy to talk nonsense, you have forgotten about the important affairs of the country. Jiang Huaying of the northeast has his own army and did not go abroad to mourn. He did not start a war and temporarily put this matter on hold. Now give me a plan. How are we going to punish the rebels?" The officials looked at each other. Prince Dongjing had hundreds of thousands of troops and horses. He had been entrenched in Liaodong for a long time. It would take more than a day to send troops to suppress him. Moreover, the Northeast Army was brave and good at fighting. No one had the confidence to win. If they volunteered and suffered a defeat, who could bear the responsibility? The group of people who were eloquent just now became mute. Emperor Chongzhen's face darkened. No emperor would want his officials to be a bunch of useless people. At this time, the left commander of the Yulin Royal Guards, Yin Yuanrong, stepped out and kneeled. He said loudly, "I am willing to lead the troops to the northeast to suppress the rebels." Yin Tianhou had retired from the imperial court, but he had left behind the grandson he was most proud of. Although Yin Yuanrong didn't have great talent or great strategy, he was a natural general who only lacked a few opportunities to gain experience. Emperor Chongzhen nodded slightly, looking at Yin Yuanrong with admiration in his eyes. He raised his hand indicating for him to stand up, but he did not approve his request. Following that, the aged Duke Jing Xuanwu, Great General Feng Xiao, the newly appointed Minister of War, and others all stepped forward to request for battle. Emperor Chongzhen did not comment. His cold eyes swept across the hall. His gaze fell on a group of people on the right. He asked in a low voice, "What does the Celestial Commissioner think?" Zhu Muzhao stood there without moving. A few steps behind him, Yu Shu, who was dressed in white, stepped forward. She lifted her robe and knelt beside the old officials. She lowered her eyebrows and said, "This official thinks that we can wait at ease for the exhausted." Emperor Chongzhen sat on his side and looked at her with interest. "What do you mean by waiting at ease for the exhausted?" Yu Shu said, "Reporting to your majesty, in addition to the death sentence technique, This official has a small success in the 6 trigrams technique. I can predict natural and man-made disasters and predict the rise and fall of a country. Last night, this official predicted that the Tartars in the north are ready to make trouble and will soon invade Liaodong. The Northeast Army will definitely not remain indifferent. When the two sides fight to the point where both sides are injured, Your Majesty will send troops to recruit them. If Jiang Huaying is tactful, then allow him to return to the capital to enjoy glory and wealth. If he stubbornly resists, then lead the troops to the north and take his life while he is sick. This is to wait at ease for the exhausted. Emperor Chongzhen's eyes lit up. The generals had a thoughtful look on their faces. Before they could say anything, someone jumped out to oppose. It was the civil officials who had argued about the change of the Celestial Commissioner's official rank. This official doesn't think it's appropriate. Let's not talk about how certain official use divination is. Even if there is really a war in the north and the Northeast Army and the Tartars fight to the point where both sides are injured, Jiang Huaying is still a meritorious service. Not to mention that the imperial court did not help, they also took advantage of the situation to send troops to suppress him. Wouldn't that attract criticism from the people of the world? Exactly. If you want to go on an expedition, you should do it early. Sending troops openly is the right way. Your Majesty has just ascended the throne, so you must not underestimate the people's hearts. In the face of a group of civil officials who spoke without thinking, Yu Shu only sneered and unceremoniously refuted them. Prince of Dongjing Jiang Huaying is an official of our great Yin. It is his duty to guard the border. No matter how great his merit is, it cannot cover up his crime of rebelling. Letting him use his merit to make up for his mistake is already benevolent. How can you say that you are taking advantage of him? Do you think the people of the world are as pedantic as you and can't distinguish right from wrong? A few civil officials blushed at her sarcasm. They had just opened their mouths to refute when they heard Emperor Chongzhen unhappily interrupt them. All right, all of you shut up. We will discuss the matter of suppressing the rebellion another day. I will give you 3 days to use your brains to think. With that, he retreated from the court. After the court was adjourned, a few old officials gathered together to discuss the meeting to be held at the government office. Someone invited Zhu Muzhao to go with them, and they saw the eunuch running over. The great advisor, please wait a moment. Official, you please wait a moment. His Majesty has invited the two of you to the study of Peaceful Peace Palace to talk. These 2 sentences were not spoken loudly, but the officials who were standing nearby and had not left in time all heard it. They exchanged glances and pondered over Emperor Chongzhen's thoughts. They watched with envy and jealousy as Zhu Muzhao and Yu Shu left with the eunuch. Yu Shu stayed in Peaceful Peace Palace for the whole afternoon. Lunch was an imperial meal given by the emperor. After the meal, Zhu Muzhao took his leave first, leaving her alone to accompany the emperor. Emperor Chongzhen was very interested in her strategy of waiting at ease for the exhausted, but he was worried that her divination would be wrong. If the court decided to ignore the Prince of Dongjing and the Tatars in the north did not make a move, it would become the biggest joke in the world. Yu Shu did not dare to guarantee that the Northeast Army would fight with the Tatars first. However, she suggested to Emperor Chongzhen that it would be better to postpone the war for 2 months and observe for a while. If the Tatars did not attack, it would not be too late to send troops. If another person was the emperor, they might not listen to the words of a woman like Yu Shu. However, Emperor Chongzhen was different. When he was still insignificant, he used Yu Shu to open up the situation at the Double Sun meeting. He had a special appreciation for her. Let me think about it carefully. Emperor Chongzhen was not in a hurry to make a decision. He changed the topic and asked the person beside Yu Shu, I have already ascended to the throne. Recently, there have been many memorials mentioning the great advisor's term. What do you think? For more than 200 years, there had not been a situation where the great advisor was re-elected, but this did not matter if Zhu Muzhao suddenly had this idea. Moreover, he had just abolished the position of 2 prime ministers. In the court, there was a phenomenon of the great advisor dominating the court. Would Zhu Muzhao be willing to let go of the power that was at its zenith? Compared to Zhu Muzhao, who was difficult to control, of course he would be more willing to use Yu Shu, who was easier to subdue. Hearing this, Yu Shu knew that Emperor Chongzhen was suspicious of Zhu Muzhao. She did not hesitate and said, A new emperor brings a new court of ministers. This is the rule of our ancestors. The great advisor is well versed in this. A few days ago he also mentioned the succession to me. What she meant was, don't worry, Lao Zhu will not refuse to leave. Emperor Chongzhen smiled slightly and looked much more relaxed. He seemed to be very satisfied with Yu Shu's quick understanding. He changed the topic and chatted with her about the selection of the harem. After the death of the late emperor, I dismissed the harem. In theory there should be a batch of new people. In the past, the selection was done in September. I just ascended to the throne and thought it was too hasty. In addition, the empress is pregnant. I do not want her to work hard for the selection. Xu Fei is not good, so I want to skip this year's selection and postpone it until next spring. Before he ascended to the throne, he did not have many women. Xia Jiangmin, his first wife, was naturally the empress. Rui Zizhu was given the title of Xu Fei because of the Rui family's contribution to the throne. There was also Mei Jiu. The others were not worth mentioning. As a close friend of the empress, Yu Shu of course agreed to skip this year's selection. But she knew that the officials in court would not agree. The selection involved everyone's interests. If the emperor insisted on skipping the selection, there would be people taking the opportunity to attack the unstable empress Xia Jiangmin. She thought for a moment and asked, "Has His Majesty discussed this with the empress?" This matter depended on what Xia Jiangmin thought. If she also agreed to skip the selection, then there was nothing else to say. The empress does not agree to skip the selection. Emperor Chongzhen shook his head helplessly. She said that the selection can be handed over to Xu Fei and Kunling Bureau, but the Hogong cannot be empty. The hearts of the people in court are not stable. Yu Shu sighed. Xia Jiangmin is no longer that naive and ignorant little girl. The position of the empress and the child in her stomach forced her to grow up overnight. The empress is right. This subject thinks that there is no harm in following the wishes of the empress and asking Xu Fei to temporarily preside over the selection. Kunling Bureau will assist from the side. That way, there will not be any delays and the hearts of the people can be comforted. Emperor Chongzhen hesitated again and again before nodding in agreement. He immediately called for a Taijian to draft an edict. One was sent to the Hogong, one to the Ministry of Rites, and the other was given directly to Yu Shu. As the sun set, Yu Shu came out of the palace. Sitting in the soft sedan, she was so tired that she did not want to move. To be trusted by the emperor was both a good thing and a bad thing. The next day, officials from the Ministry of Rites came to the Kunling Bureau to discuss the selection. Even though the Ministry of Rites had a minister and did not need to follow the Celestial Commissioner for everything, they could not immediately act alone. Habitually they still went to the Celestial Commissioner. The person from the Ministry of Rites was none other than Yu Shu's old acquaintance. He was the ceremonial officer responsible for guiding the people who held the vessel at the ancestral worship ceremony, Wang Darren. Now it was time to call him Assistant Minister Wang. This was because the original left Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Rites had been promoted to Minister. Wang Darren had also been promoted and became rich. It was easier to work with people he was familiar with. Wang Darren did not change his position and did not compete with the Kunling Bureau. He peacefully drafted the rules for the Hogong selection on the same day and sent it to the palace. He first had Empress Xia Jiang look over it and then passed it to Rui Xu Fei. Then he sent out official letters to all prefectures and counties to search for women of suitable age to enter the capital. Yu Shu did not think it was a big deal. The emperor did not want her to do it herself, so she asked Sidu Qinglan to keep an eye on it. Who knew that in less than 2 days someone from the palace sent a message. Rui Xu Fei summoned her to the palace for questioning, saying it was about the selection. When Yu Shu heard such a casual summon, she felt it was funny. Now even Empress Dowager Shui did not dare to order her around. Rui Zizhu, an unfavored concubine, actually dared to order her around with a feather. Chapter 799. H2 After Emperor Chongzhen ascended to the throne, the two Empress Dowagers moved out of their original palaces. Shiwu Palace was renamed Feng Zhao Palace and Xiajiang Empress moved in. Rui Xu Fei moved into Yongla Palace. It was probably because there were too many empty palaces in the inner palace that even Mei Ji was given her own Huazhang Palace. As the chief official of the Kunling Bureau, Yu Shu knew the concubines of the inner palace very well. This month the Book of Great Earth was being revised. No matter how few women there were in Emperor Chongzhen's inner palace, they had to follow the rules of their ancestors and were not allowed to ask for favor. So unless Rui Xu Fei wanted to die, no one would be stupid enough to offend her. Sitting in the side hall of Yongla Palace, Yu Shu examined the exquisite decorations around her. It was interesting to say that the two Xu Fei that had lived here had not been favored but had the support of their paternal families. The emperor had given them face and would not be too cold. Grand Tutorine was one of the best at court. When Ning Wang was in power he did not jump up and down. When the old emperor was seriously ill, he did not help his grandson take the throne. Instead, he worked diligently as the crown prince's grand tutor. Until the end, the new emperor remembered his kindness and did not put him in the same category as Ning Wang. He not only made him the Marquis of Rong-En, but also kept Yin Yuanrong. Even Yin Shufei was safely sent back to the Yin family. It could be said that he had done a good job. The Count of Loyalty and Bravery Rueang was someone who knew how to curry favor. Just from the incident of Xia Jiangmin startling the horse when she was the crown prince's concubine, it could be seen that he had great ambitions. In the future he might do foolish things again. It was likely that this Rui Shufei would not have a better ending than Yin Shufei. Yu Shu sat down and waited for a moment. Consort Rui Shu came late. She had lost her youthfulness and was even more beautiful than before. The weather had not yet turned cold, but she was wearing a lilac-embroidered dress with a string of white jade around her waist. It was hard to describe her nobility. Yu Shu slowly got up and nodded, "Greetings to honored Consort Shu." Consort Shu was a third-rank palace consort. She couldn't compare to the Empress and the Guifei, much less the two Empress dowagers. She didn't need to be submissive in front of her, she just needed to act. How could Consort Rui Shu not see her arrogance? She walked past her and sat down on a wide chair. She raised her head to look at her as she softly said, "Official Yu has been promoted. It's only been 3 days since we last met. You really should be looked at in a new light." Yu Shu heard the sarcasm in her words. She curled her lips and sat down. Although she didn't reply, it was clear from her eyes that she didn't take her seriously. Consort Rui Shu was annoyed at being snubbed. Yu Shu had relied on betraying the Shui family to climb up. In her eyes, she was purely a vile person who had achieved success. She looked down on her from the bottom of her heart. However, she was now in charge of the Kunling Bureau. As a concubine in the palace, she could not easily offend her. "Today I called you to the palace to talk about the selection. I have seen the rules submitted by the Kunling Bureau and the Ministry of Rights. Yesterday, I took it to consult the Empress Dowager and found that there were some inappropriate parts. I used a red brush to write them down. Take it back and change it." As she said this, she had the palace maid behind her take a booklet and give it to Yu Shu. Yu Shu flipped through it and saw that honored Consort Shu had expanded the number of girls from 2 good families from each county to 8. She had changed the age of the girls from 12 to 16 to 10 to 16. She had also reduced the pension for the palace maids from 20 taels to 10 taels. The changes were all in places that were not explicitly stated. It could be seen that honored Consort Shu was clever. Consort Shu didn't have such schemes, but she had a childless aunt who became the Empress Dowager's biological aunt. Yu Shu closed the booklet and looked coldly at Rui Zizhu, asking, "May I ask Consort Shu, is this your idea or the Empress Dowager's idea? Don't think that there were only a few changes, but there were many implications. If they really did as the higher-ups said, it would be fine if nothing happened. But if something happened, the emperor would definitely blame the Kunling Bureau." Consort Rui Shu hesitated and said without much confidence, "Naturally it is my idea. His Majesty's harem is empty and it is the first year of his ascension to the throne. It is time for a general election." Yu Shu instantly sneered and stood up to wave the selection rules in her hands. She asked mercilessly, "Does Consort Shu know how many prefectures and counties are under the rule of my dynasty? Do you know how old the daughters of the common people are? Do you know how much rice can be bought with 10 taels of silver?" Consort Rui Shu became mute from her questions. Yu Shu said coldly, "Our dynasty has 102 prefectures and 917 counties. If 8 girls are chosen from each place, that would be 8,152 people. In the past, many of the girls that were sent to the provinces died of illness along the way, so the number of people sent to the capital is far more than this. In the end, there will be at most 200 people left in the palace. Has Consort Shu thought about where the remaining 7,952 people will go? Let me tell you, they will either be expelled from the capital as refugees or sold to brothels for the entertainment of the rich. In the end, only half will be able to return home safely. You added 2 to 8 people and changed the number, but it is a few thousand lives." She didn't say a single harsh word, but made Consort Rui Shu's face turn red with shame, but she still insisted on being stubborn. "Then let's change it to 4 people. 4 people also won't do, at most 2. The emperor has already said that this year's selection will be simple. If Consort Shu is not convinced, you can find the emperor to judge. That number can be changed, right? 10-year-old girls should be sensible. If they are older, it will be hard to raise them in the palace." "Ah, presumably when Consort Shu is 10 years old, she can leave her father and mother without crying or making a fuss. Consort Rueshu secretly gritted her teeth and said angrily, that 20 taels of silver reduced to 10, it can save money on the national treasury. Although Ben Gong doesn't know how many stone of rice can be bought with 10 taels of silver, but I know that the women in the palace can enjoy it every month. Taking 10 more taels of silver isn't worth much. Yushu shook her head. Who does Consort Shu think these 20 taels of silver are for? That is money for parents to buy their lives. After taking these 20 taels of silver, they might not be able to see their daughter for the rest of their lives. In Consort Shu's heart, a living person's life isn't even worth 20 taels of silver? Consort Rueshu's face was so red that it was about to drip blood. Facing Yushu's undisguised ridicule, she suddenly remembered the night of the gentleman hibiscus banquet when she was scolded by Yushu as a gossipy woman. She finally couldn't bear it and was about to slap the table and stand up when she heard a sharp voice outside the door. Her Majesty the Empress has arrived. As the mistress of the 6 palaces, if the Empress wanted to enter a concubine's palace, it was unimpeded. There wasn't even a single person blocking the door. So Empress Xia Jiang, with her 6 or 7 months pregnant belly, was escorted straight in by people and came to the door of the side hall. Xia Jiangmin stood outside the door and looked in. She saw that the atmosphere inside wasn't good. She pretended not to know and said to Yushu with a smile, Ben Gong originally came to the Imperial Garden to get some fresh air. On the way, I heard that you came to the palace, so I wandered here. Then her smile faded a little and she said to Consort Rueshu, if sister has nothing serious, I'll take her away. After that, she didn't care if she agreed or not and reached out to Yushu. Yushu swept away her previous cold face and came forward to support her. Her Majesty's body is heavy. How can you run around? It's better to go back to Fengzhou Palace to rest. Xia Jiangmin touched her belly with a gentle expression and said, it's okay. My son is very obedient. The two walked away hand in hand as if there was no one else around, leaving Consort Rueshu with a belly full of anger. She almost fainted. Coming out of Yongla Palace, Xia Jiangmin sat on the phoenix carriage. She originally wanted to sit with Yushu but she refused. There are rules in the palace. Nyang is the mistress of the 6 palaces. How can you break the rules because of me and give yourself to others? Besides, this subject is young and healthy, it's just walking a few more steps. Xia Jiangmin could only have the people pulling the carriage slow down and let Yushu walk by her side. After an appointment, they returned to her Fengzhou Palace. After dismissing the miscellaneous people, Xia Jiangmin asked Yushu in amusement, what did Consort Shu talk to you about? I saw that you made her quite angry. Without outsiders, Yushu stopped pretending and spoke freely. What else could it be? Isn't it just that little matter of the selection? She wants to curry favor in front of His Majesty and wants to order me around like a fool. How could I do as she pleases? So she told her all the rotten ideas that Consort Rueshu and Empress Dowager Rue had come up with, intentionally instilling some principles into her. After listening, Xia Jiangmin was silent. After a while, she sighed with emotion. Born with wealth, how would one know the suffering of the common people? If I hadn't gone through those difficult times with you, I'm afraid I would be like her, treating human life like grass. She's not as good as you. Yushu spoke the truth. Taking off her boots, she lay down on Xiang Fei's bed. She casually picked up a red fruit from the tea table and took a bite. She wrinkled her nose and turned to look at Xia Jiangmin's face, asserting, this child of yours will definitely be a young imperial son. Xia Jiangmin instantly beamed with joy. His Majesty has always said it's a son. I wasn't sure before, but with your words I'm certain. Yushu saw her happy appearance and didn't want to spoil the mood, but she couldn't not say it. So she asked her vaguely, do you have Xiao Hu's palace servants in your palace? There should be. What about it? Yushu said lightly, there are a few Xiao Hus. Call them all here, let me see. Xia Jiangmin stopped laughing. She realized that the matter wasn't simple. Without asking more, she called in her trusted palace maid Ming-Er and gave her a few instructions. After a while, she brought 3 people to the outer room and called them in one by one for Yushu to see. Yushu asked each of them a question. In the end, she locked onto a little palace maid named Xiaoguang, gagged her mouth and threw her to the side. Then she ordered people to search her residence. After the time it took for a stick of incense to burn, Ming-Er ran back with an ashen face to report. Your Highness, I found a small bag of saffron in Xiaoguang's pillow. Saffron was an elixir that could promote blood circulation and remove blood stasis. It wasn't poisonous, but pregnant women could suffer from bleeding and miscarriage if they took it. It was very violent. And this Xiaoguang was the one in charge of serving food in Fengzhou Palace. She only needed to hide a little bit under her fingernail every time she served food. Over time, there was no fear that Xia Jiangmin wouldn't fall for it. Xia Jiangmin's face was full of anger. Yu Shu came forward to take the palm-sized sachet. Opening it to take a look, she confirmed that there was still a lot left inside. She said, "I think that she didn't have time to do anything to your food. But it's best to summon a Tai over." Xia Jiangmin glanced at her and quickly calmed down. She ordered in a heavy voice, "Summon the Tai, just say that Ben Gong caught a cold last night and isn't feeling well." Yu Shu nodded in agreement. Before the matter was clear, it was best not to alert the enemy. Ming Er went to summon the Tai and Xiaoguang was quietly taken away. Xia Jiangmin's legs softened as she sat down on the bed. She said to Yu Shu with lingering fear, "This Xiaoguang was someone I brought into the palace from Jingwang Fu. Who would have thought that she would be bribed? It's good that you're here. Otherwise, I would have unknowingly fallen into the evil person's trap. What if something happens to the child in my belly? How am I supposed to live?" Yu Shu said, "The tricks of the palace to harm people are always hard to guard against. In the future you have to be more cautious of things that enter your mouth." Xia Jiangmin nodded. She suddenly remembered to ask her, "That's right, how did you know that that girl wanted to harm me? Your art of disguise is already so powerful?" Yu Shu smiled but didn't speak. In the end she didn't expose her. Ever since she had opened her apertures, she had mastered everything in the art of disguise. Not only was the art of the 6 lines unobstructed, she even had a new breakthrough in the law of calamity, which had been stagnant for a long time. This time, when she used the law of calamity to predict Xia Jiangmin's safety, she predicted that someone wanted to harm her. Not only did she predict the zodiac of the culprit behind the scenes, she even predicted the little palace maid who was responsible for drugging her. Her Great Dongming art advanced by leaps and bounds. In just a month she had already reached the 3rd realm, integration. She could easily distinguish between truth and falsehood. Thus, after she asked the 3 palace maids who were born in the zodiac of the monkey, she knew who was lying and who was telling the truth. The one who was telling the truth might not be innocent, but the one who was telling the lie definitely was. As expected, she managed to find a little demon. Chapter 800. H2 What happened in Fengzhou Palace could not be hidden from Emperor Chongzhen. When Empress Xia Jiang summoned the imperial physician, he put down his government affairs and hurried over. After the imperial physician examined the empress, Xia Jiangmin took a dose of anti-miscarriage medicine and moved to the bedroom to sleep. Emperor Chongzhen asked the imperial physician and found out that the empress was only frightened and was fine. He let out a sigh of relief and did not wake her up. He called Yu Shu out to the side hall to talk. "Tell me everything, do not hide anything." Yu Shu then straightforwardly said that she divined that someone wanted to harm the dragon seed in the empress womb. Today she entered the palace to warn. Coincidentally, she found the kitchen maid who did not have time to act. She found a bag of saffron that was used to harm the baby. Emperor Chongzhen was very angry. He grabbed the teacup on the table several times but did not throw it out. The child in Xia Jiangmin's womb was of great significance to him. This was his first child. Whether it was a boy or a girl, it was the first good news after he became emperor. He did not know how much he looked forward to this child. Moreover, he had inherited the mess of the previous emperor. There were too many things to worry about in the previous court. These days there was only bad news. He needed the birth of this child to cheer people up. In the back palace, there is such a person with evil intentions. This person not only wants to harm the empress but also me. Damn it, damn it. He cursed a few times and raised his head to ask Yu Shu, "You can divinate the person who poisoned the empress. Can you also divinate the mastermind?" Yu Shu said with a wooden face, "This subject does not dare to make a rash judgment. Your Majesty, please let people interrogate the palace maid first and find out where she hid the saffron in her hand into the palace." She did have an idea in her heart, but she could not accuse the culprit with empty words. Emperor Chongzhen could see that she had some misgivings and had some bad guesses. He waved his hand to dismiss the palace maids. He lowered his voice and asked her, "Tell me the truth. Who do you suspect is plotting to harm the empress?" Yu Shu had followed Zhu Muzhao for the past few days and had found a way to accompany a ruler. She hesitated for a moment before lowering her head and revealing the secret. This subject only calculated that the person who bribed the palace maid to drug the empress is a woman. Emperor Chongzhen's expression turned cold. In the blink of an eye, he thought of the women in the back palace. Since they were born in the year of the rabbit, the only one who had the ability to subdue the palace maids of Fengzhou Palace and secretly drug them was the late Empress Dowager Rui. Of course, he would not blindly believe Yushu's words, but if he had to guess, the Empress Dowager was the most suspicious. Even though Empress Shu had the motive, she did not have the means. If it wasn't for Yushu seeing through it this time, when the Empress fell for it, the investigation wouldn't be able to find anything. At this moment he suddenly calmed down. Looking at Yushu in front of him, he couldn't help but rejoice that he had such a capable person at his disposal. Otherwise, it would be impossible to guard against her. Did you tell the Empress what I said just now? Your Majesty, I will not speak about things that have not been confirmed. Emperor Chongzhen nodded with satisfaction and said softly, very good. Don't say things that you shouldn't say. Zhen will thoroughly investigate this matter. As for you, Zhen will give you a task. You need to read the Empress's safety every day. You must ensure that she gives birth smoothly without any mistakes. I will obey. Yushu knew that the Emperor didn't want to make the matter bigger, so she had to cooperate. She also knew in her heart that it was impossible to take down the Empress Dowager based on this matter. The back palace couldn't withstand such a scandal. Emperor Chongzhen, who had just ascended to the throne, couldn't bear the reputation of being unfilial. Rather than openly denouncing the Empress Dowager, it was better to deal with it coldly and turn passivity into initiative. Only by making the Empress Dowager feel guilty could she be afraid and behave for a while. Yushu entered the palace empty-handed. When she left the palace in the evening, she brought back a cart of rewards. There were ancient books and slips given by Emperor Chongzhen, as well as the tribute satin and porcelain that Empress Xiajiang gave her. The palace was full of good things. She gained a lot from this trip. Fortunately, it was dark and not eye-catching. Otherwise, many people would be jealous of her imperial kindness. When she returned home, the family had already eaten dinner. Yushu didn't have an appetite, so she didn't let the kitchen people make more food. She just cooked a bowl of chicken soup with dragon whiskers noodles. The chicken soup had been simmered for several hours and was very fragrant. She also added several medicinal herbs such as angelica and licorice to nourish qi and blood. Since she escaped from death in prison, Zhao Hui often asked the kitchen to prepare a pot of medicinal soup or tonic soup. Sometimes it was stewed with old hens, sometimes it was stewed with pigeons. She tried to make her face look more rosy, but she didn't know why her face was frosty white and couldn't change back. After eating, Yushu's stomach was comfortable. She asked Abe Queasy to carry a lantern and go to Yongchun Court for a night trip. Last month, Xanya gave her 2 pots of night epiphyllum. It was about to bloom and she didn't want to miss it. The epiphyllum would wither after blooming for a couple of hours. She often heard that it was very beautiful when it bloomed, but she had never seen it with her own eyes. The 2 pots of epiphyllum were placed in the waterside pavilion. She didn't dare to put them outside for fear that they would be ruined by the pair of unruly white cranes in the garden. The moon was on the top of the tree and the room was ventilated. Abe Queasy rolled up the bamboo curtain, took out the teapot and teacups from the bamboo basket, and put a small golden-toed incense burner on it. Yushu sat on the rattan chair and looked up at the moon. When she looked down, she could see the 2 pots of beauty under the moonlight. She felt very relaxed. She didn't know when it started, but she started to like to quietly stay like this. She didn't need to think about anything, didn't need to do anything, didn't need to deceive others, and didn't need to be sentimental. She would feel very relaxed, as if all her worries had disappeared, and when she woke up, she would be able to regain her vitality. After watching for an hour, there was no movement from the 2 pots of epiphyllum. It seemed that they wouldn't bloom again tonight. Yushu yawned lazily and said to Abe Queasy, who was lying under the window and looking at the moon, "Let's go back. I'm sleepy." Abe Queasy packed up her things quickly and walked in front with the lantern. Suddenly, a figure ran over from the opposite corridor and stopped in front of them, panting and saying, Mrs. Xn has just arrived. She's waiting in the front yard. She said that she has an urgent matter to see you." Yushu frowned. She guessed that something had happened to Xi and Lu. She walked past them and went out. The 2 maids quickly followed her and trotted in front of her to lead the way. She heard Yushu ask, "Did Mrs. Xn say what happened?" She didn't say anything. "Oh, by the way, the little maid who delivered the message said that Mrs. Xn asked if Miss Lu was in our house when she came in. But Miss Lu didn't come today." Yushu couldn't help but speed up and rush to the front yard. As soon as she entered the living room, she was pulled by Mrs. Xn, who was looking forward to seeing her. Mrs. Xn anxiously pulled her inside. She didn't care whether she was rude or not and asked her in a low voice with a trembling voice, Lotus Room, has Miss Lu been to your house? Yu Shu shook her head and said with a serious look, Feifei is missing? What happened? Hearing this question, Mrs. Xan actually burst into tears. She held Xan Lu's hand and shook it. Then she began to tell her story. It turned out that half a month ago, Xanya suddenly regretted the marriage between Xan Lu and Gu Qi. She didn't allow her to marry into the Gu family. Xan Lu didn't agree, so she quarreled with her grandfather. Xanya was so angry that she locked her up and didn't allow her to step out of the room. She also sent someone to the Gu family to break off the engagement. Xan Lu threw a tantrum for a few days and was finally persuaded by Mrs. Xan. Seeing that she had given up, she didn't lock her up again. This morning, Xan Lu said that she wanted to go out for a walk. Mrs. Xan was afraid that something bad would happen to her these days, so she didn't lock her up. She sent 2 maids to go out with her. Who knew that in the evening only the 2 maids came back, but Xan Lu was nowhere to be seen. Anyone would think that Xan Lu had eloped with Gu Qi. Xanya was so angry that she fainted. The Xan family was now in a mess. Mrs. Xan did not believe that her daughter would do such a stupid thing. Thinking that Yu Shu was the closest to her daughter, she came to find her. After listening to the whole story, Yu Shu had a headache. She knew why Xanya broke off the engagement. The Gu family was originally under the command of Prince Xiang. When Prince Xiang's plan failed, the House of Concubines was closed down. The Taiheng Chamber of Commerce was also implicated. Pei Jing, the manager, was implicated and lost a lot of business, let alone the Gu family. Xanya had always known how to protect herself. How could she allow her granddaughter to marry into such a family and bring disaster upon herself? She first comforted Mrs. Xan. Feifei is a little willful, but she won't be so immature. The most important thing for us now is to find her. Once we find her, everything can be discussed. Mrs. Xan said repeatedly, yes, let's find her first. She wiped her tears and looked at her pitifully. In the Lotus House, one should not wash one's dirty linen in public. I did not treat you as an outsider. You have to help Feifei. You can't let her ruin her so carelessly. Yu Shu nodded and asked her to sit down first. She turned her head and ordered people to prepare the horse and carriage. She called for Lu Hong and Su Qing. She did not even have time to change her thin shirt and trousers. She added a cloak and went to the Gu family with Mrs. Xan to ask for her. The Gu family's mansion was also in the north of the city. It was a little far away. The horse carriage was very fast and they arrived there without stopping. Yu Shu did not ask Mrs. Xan to show up. She jumped out of the carriage and asked Lu Hong to knock on the door and report her name. After a while, the whole Gu family was alarmed. The housekeeper invited her in and asked her to serve tea and water in the living room. After a short while, she saw the head of the Gu family, Gu Gai. This was the first time she'd met this Oracle Gu who was once renowned for a time. According to Shui Rue, Gu Gai was rather arrogant when he was young, and when he passed the Oracle exam all those years ago, he went to the entrance of the imperial astronomer to wear mourning clothes and weep for a funeral. At present he seemed to be just a plain-looking middle-aged man. Although he was a generation younger, Gu Gai had to salute when he saw her. Lord Yu, what brings you here so late at night? Yu Shu did not move from the chair and looked at him coldly. It's not official business. Gu Swansea, you don't need to be so polite. May I ask your son to come out and see me? I have a few questions to ask him. Gu Gai did not seem to be in a hurry and did not refuse. He turned around and asked someone to find Gu Qi. Yu Shu and Gu Qi had only met a few times. They only exchanged a few words because of Pei Jing. At that time she felt that this guy was a bit shrewd. Now she had a sharp eye for people and felt that he was too shrewd. Seeing that his father was standing at the side, Gu Qi did not dare to neglect. He stepped forward and bowed to Yu Shu. Greetings, Lord Yu. Yu Shu looked at him coldly and asked, have you seen the 6th Miss of the Xan family today? Gu Qi raised his head and showed a blank expression. He shook his head and said, I have not seen her. Then there was bitterness in his voice. Lord Yu, I think you don't know how I can see her now that my marriage with the 6th Miss has been annulled. Yu Shu's ears moved slightly. Her eyes were like a deep pool. She asked him again, you said you have not seen her? Gu Qi tightened his jaw and shook his head again. Yu Shu's face darkened. She grabbed the teapot on the table and smashed it at his feet. Gu Qi trembled but did not dare to move. He heard her speak to his father in a soft voice. Gu Gai, I respect that you are a man of character in the past. I don't want to embarrass you. Bring her here now and I will pretend that nothing happened and forgive you and your father. If you want to play tricks in front of me you can try. Don't blame me for not warning you. I'm not a good person. If you offend me you will die. Gu Gai was silent for a while. He looked at the mess on the ground and then looked at Yushu's cold face. He could not help but sigh and said to Gu Qi, "Go and ask the sixth mist to come out." "Father, why are you still here?" Gu Qi pulled a long face and went reluctantly. Yushu waited for a moment, and then she saw him come in with Xen Lu. To her surprise, as soon as Xen Lu entered the door, he hurriedly rushed to her and hid behind her. He hugged her arm and looked at the father and son of the Gu family with a guarded face. He complained in her ear in a wronged voice, "They detained me in the lotus room and did not let me go. Fortunately you came to save me. I didn't expect them to be so bad." The Gu father and son looked embarrassed. Yushu sneered. She had probably guessed what happened. Gu Qi first tricked Xen Lu to his house and wanted to spend the night with him. The next day he would send him back to the Xian family. Xen Lu's reputation would be tarnished and the Xian family could only suffer in silence. The marriage would go through even if it was not successful. Yushu pointed at the father and son and did not say anything more. She took Xen Lu and left. She kept her promise and did not pursue the matter further. When they reached the carriage outside, Mrs. Xen let out a long sigh of relief when she saw that her precious daughter was back. Then she cried and reached out to hit her on the shoulder. She scolded, "You stupid girl, why are you so troublesome? Are you trying to piss me off? I raised you so hard and you ran away just like that." Wah. Xen Lu was hit a few times by her. He was in so much pain that he took a deep breath. "I didn't want to run away. Mother, I was wrong, I misjudged him. Today I secretly went to find him. I thought it was my fault to break off the engagement, I had to tell him personally. He coaxed me to elope with him but I didn't agree. Seeing that he couldn't coax me he locked me up. I was scared to death, I even thought I might as well just die. Mother, don't be angry. I was wrong." Sob, sob, sob. When Mrs. Xan heard this, she immediately stopped. She touched her little face and said nervously, "That brat didn't do anything to you, did he?" "No, he didn't dare to," Xen Lu sniffled and said, "If he dared to touch me, I would rather die than bring shame to our family." After saying that, the mother and daughter hugged each other and cried bitterly. Yushu pinched the bridge of her nose and said angrily and amusedly, "It's good that you're fine. Stop crying. It's not good if people hear you." The two immediately stopped crying obediently. Mrs. Xan thanked her profusely. Yushu waved her hand to stop them. She turned her head and scolded Xen Lu with a straight face, "It's not bad to say that you're stupid. Next time you sneak away I won't care about you." Xen Lu hurriedly said, "I won't dare. I won't dare to do it again." Then he looked at her with a face full of admiration and said, "Lotus Room, how did you know that I was locked up in his house?" Chapter 801. H-Tune Yushu sent Xen Lu and his daughter back to the Xan residence. Xania had just regained consciousness and when she heard the servant's report, she forced herself up from the bed. The mansion was brightly lit and second mistress Xen brought Xen Lu to ask for forgiveness from Xania. When they entered the courtyard, they saw second master Xen supporting Xania out of the room. When she saw them, Xania's ashen face flushed red. She shook off her second son and raised her hand towards Xen Lu. No one in the courtyard tried to stop her. Yushu was a distance behind when she heard a "pa" sound. Xen Lu covered his face and knelt down. Two bubbles of tears rolled down his cheeks but he did not dare to cry out loud. Xenia raised her hand and was about to slap him again when Yushu rushed forward and blocked her. She grabbed his wrist and supported half of his body while saying, Master Xen, quickly calm down. Why are you being so magnanimous? Didn't Feifei get bored a while ago and ran over to my place to relax? Didn't you tell your family? Look, didn't I rush to send her back to you?" These few words confirmed that Xen Lu went to her place today. Even if in the future people say that Xen Lu's behavior is improper, they still have to consider if they will offend her. Xenia was anxious and was awakened by her. He took a deep breath and glared at Xen Lu fiercely. He pulled Yushu back and sighed, "It was a false alarm, a false alarm." Yushu could understand his false alarm. This old fox was used to being shrewd. When Xen Lu disappeared, he should have guessed that the Gu father and son were up to no good. With Prince Xiang's death, the Gu family was doomed. The Xian family was the last piece of driftwood they could grab when they were drowning. How could they let it go so easily? He was afraid that Xen Lu had already suffered a loss and this unlucky marriage had to go through. "What are you all still standing here for? Go away, go away. Xania angrily pointed at the children and grandchildren gathered in the courtyard and chased them away, except for the 3 members of the second branch. He called them into the room and asked Xan Lu in detail. When he found out that she had been tricked by Gu Qi to return to the Gu family and was locked up, he was instantly enraged. Xan Lu was so frightened that she immediately knelt down and hugged his thigh while crying, saying, "I was wrong," over and over again. Xania could not bear to hit her again and could only tell her to shut up. In a flash, she had thought of hundreds of ways to deal with the Gu family. But she heard Yu Shu say, "Master Ye, listen to me. Do not provoke the Gu family again. I've seen Gu Gai today and he is a man who knows when to yield. He has nothing to lose. If we force him into a corner it will cause a lot more trouble." Xania knew that what she said was reasonable, but he could not swallow his anger. So he said, "We have to teach them a lesson, lest they think that the Xian family is a pushover." Yu Shu said this and did not try to persuade him anymore. She stood up and said, "It's the middle of the night, I should go back." Second Master Xen and Second Madame Xen quickly stood up to send her off and thanked her. "I am really sorry for making you run back and forth tonight. I will come back tomorrow to thank you." Yu Shu smiled and refused, "Please don't. If word gets out, it will mean that Feifei was having fun at my place. Why did you have to do this?" Xania was still dizzy, so she did not stand on ceremony. She waved her hand and asked her son and daughter-in-law to send her out. As for Xen Lu, he looked at Yu Shu pitifully as she left. After a night of noise, old academician Xan, who lived in the Jinyuan, was alarmed. He sent someone to ask questions in the middle of the night. Xania did not dare to hide it from the old man, so she asked the person to repeat what he said. Having an old man in the family was like having a treasure. Who knew that it was partly because of the old man that he was able to keep his position as the Celestial Commissioner safe and sound. The next day before Yu Shu went out, she received an invitation. It was from the mysterious old academician Xin, who invited her to his house to appraise his treasures. She was more than happy to accept. Nothing happened that day. The next afternoon, Yu Shu went home from the Celestial Commissioner. She changed into casual clothes, brought some good tea and went to the house. She did not go through the front door of the Xan family, but through the back door of the Beiyuan in the alley. A young boy was waiting for her. He led her all the way to the Jinyuan and directly into a 2-story library. She saw old academician Xn sitting under the window, cleaning antiques. "Here you are." Old academician Xn saw that she was not polite, so he pointed to the soft cushion opposite him and asked her to sit down. He put a jade on the ground and picked up a black copper scale. She did not know how old it was. He squinted his eyes and held it under the sun to take a closer look. Yu Shu was at ease. She sat cross-legged on the ground. She was not in a hurry to ask questions. Instead, she looked around with interest and identified the old things on the ground. Some of them were treasures she had seen in the list of strange and rare objects, and some were small things that could be seen everywhere in the market. Old academician Xang glanced at her and said casually, "What do you want to see me for?" Yu Shu was stunned. He was the one who invited her here. "Humph, didn't you coax that silly girl Lu to see me? Why can't you remember?" Hearing this, Yu Shu slapped her forehead as she recalled that there was indeed such a matter. A few months ago, she had mentioned to Xan Lu that she wanted to meet the old master. Later, after the ancestral worship ceremony, she was busy with other matters and had forgotten about it. Old academician's eyes are sharp. "Nothing can be hidden from you. I do have something to ask." "Sharp eyes? You don't have to suck up to me. This time you've saved the Xian family from a crisis. I should be thanking you. If there's anything you want to say, just say it. I don't have any other skills, but I've lived for a long time, so I've seen and heard more things than others." Xen Qing smiled and said, "I think you're just blind from old age. You don't have to flatter me, you little girl." Yu Shu smiled. She liked to talk to people directly. Old academician Xian's temper was much more to her liking than Xian Ya's. "Old man, do you still remember that 2 years ago I met you at Xian Ri Reguang Di store?" Old academician Xian stared at her and recalled, "I do. Back then you were still a silly little girl. You didn't have the courage you have now. You were with that kid from the Shui family." Seeing that he had such a good memory, Yu Shu also recalled the scene that day. Her eyes couldn't help but become gloomy and she began to think about Shui Rui. They used to be together, but now they were in different places. She could tell if he was safe or not, but she couldn't tell if his thoughts were the same as hers. "Why did you stop?" Old academician Xian called her back to reality. Yu Shu collected her thoughts and looked into his eyes. She asked in a slow voice. Do you remember? I mentioned a sword to you at that time. The sword was 1 foot and 8 inches long. It was full of copper rust. Under the night sky it looked like it was glowing red. There was an ancient character engraved on the handle. Old academician Xian's eyes narrowed into slits. He put down the copper scale in his hand. He dipped his finger in his saliva and drew a character on the ground. He asked her, Is that so? Yushu nodded. Now she was sure that the old man knew the origin of that ancient sword. Otherwise he wouldn't have remembered it so clearly. You told me that it wasn't a sword, but you wouldn't tell me what it was. Today I want to ask you, can you tell me the origin of that sword? Old academician Xian raised his head and crossed his arms in front of his chest. He looked a little absent-minded. He seemed to be lost in his memories. He didn't say anything for a long time. Just when Yushu couldn't help but ask again, she suddenly heard him sigh. Of course it wasn't a sword. It was the 6 founding weapons of our dynasty. Yushu's body stiffened. Her eyes widened in disbelief. The 6 founding weapons? A sword and the 6 founding weapons. Isn't it Chunjun's sword? That's the Chunjun sword. Old academician Xian said to himself. 100 years ago, Emperor Shizong was on the throne. He had a son, Prince Yunjing. Although he was talented, he was a rebel. He married a female general. Later, the female general committed a serious crime. Prince Yunjing broke out of prison for her. He took her to escape from the pursuers and escaped into the imperial mausoleum in the eastern suburbs. It was said that he mistakenly entered the tomb of Empress Ningxin and stole the Chunjun sword. With the acquired divine power, he broke out of the tomb with his wife. They fought their way out of the encirclement and disappeared without a trace. The Chunjun sword has been missing since then. Yushu had heard the story of the female general and the prince more than once. Old academician Xian's version was not the most true, but it was the one that shocked her the most. She adjusted her breathing a few times to hide her panic and tried to test him. In that case, how do you know what the Chunjun sword looks like? Old academician Xian snorted coldly and looked at her in disdain. Little girl, do you know where our Xian family's wonderful and rare objects list came from? 300 years ago, among the meritorious ministers who followed the holy emperor to conquer the country, there was an ancestor of the Xian family. He drew the shape of the 6 treasures of the founding dynasty on a piece of paper and recorded it in the wonderful treasures list. How could I not know what the Chunjun sword looks like? Then he asked her suspiciously, But you, where did you hear about the appearance of the Chunjun sword? Yushu's heart was beating like thunder. She put her hands into her sleeves and clenched them into fists. Facing his question, she casually made up a lie. I can tell you, but you have to swear to keep your mouth shut. Otherwise I won't tell you. Old academician Xian's eyes twinkled. He excitedly straightened his back and immediately made an oath to urge her to tell him quickly. Yushu took a breath and told him in a low voice, You should know Jing Chen. He is the son of Yunhua Yi and Princess Liue Royal. He was sent to Longhu Mountain to cultivate when he was young. Later, when he returned to the capital, he was conferred the title of Daozi by the late emperor. Old academician Xian squinted at her. I know him. He is the boy who almost married you but ran away on the day of the wedding. Yushu was speechless. She thought that this old man had lived in seclusion. How could he know about her gossip? She organized her words and said, Yes, it is him. I've known Jingchen for a long time. Before he came to the capital, I met him in Yang County. At that time, I saw him carrying a sword like that. But later on, when he was being hunted down, he lost the sword. I have always been curious about what treasure it was. I asked him, but he refused to tell me. After that, I met you in Day's store, so I asked. Old academician Xian had a look of sudden realization. He nodded and said, I see. Yushu said nervously, You can't tell anyone. Otherwise there will be trouble. It is not a small matter to lose the 6 treasures of the founding dynasty. Old academician Xian rolled his eyes and said, In your eyes, the old man is not trustworthy. Even if you tell others, it is not certain whether people will believe you. I will not say it. If I say it, my whole family will die. Is that okay? Yushu laughed dryly. She stood up and bowed to him. Thank you for your guidance. If there is nothing else, I will leave first. Old academician Xian waved his sleeves. He did not want her to stay any longer. He turned around and picked up his treasure and wiped it. Yushu walked out of the library with steady steps. She left the Xian family with a calm expression. After sitting in the carriage, she wiped her sweaty palms on her knees. She was so excited that her teeth were chattering. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.